struggling to find peace in a forgotten forest under a flowering tree, Qin Xuan heard many voices telling him one thing: declare yourself emperor again. Become an immortal. But one thing no one realized was that if things continued like this, he would be buried here. Having been in this place for far too long, the emperor was only now beginning to realize that time existed at all. But for him, it was now expired. Who's gonna stop him now? No one. Any words would be useless here, for he had no control over it now. Today, I, the Immortal Emperor, am ascending to heaven and will blossom there in full light. Thus we found ourselves in an ordinary school in modern China, where a lesson was being taught right now. That verse was once written by a Tang Dynasty poet. So many centuries had passed, and still that verse was filled with something special and liked by many people. The poem Chrysanthemum was written by the poet Huang Chao back in ancient times. He was the one who established the regime of Daka power by being a powerful man, and also opened the curtain of the Tang Dynasty, which of course the Reborn Emperor knew about. Reincarnation seemed like something unrealistic, but nevertheless, Qin Xuan was quite aware of the situation he was in. His Immortal Emperor's soul had indeed been reborn after several centuries, although he was expected to become a god. But eventually, he ended up in some city where he now found himself a student of the school, left with his memories and life, as well as the memories of the body's predecessor. Other than his memories and the similarities in his eyes, there was nothing else. But it wasn't so bad after all. The prettiest girl in the school, Mu Chair, was imposing toward him. His predecessor of the body was not a popular boy, a catcher, or a nerd, but he nevertheless bathed from time to time in the rays of attention of this girl who tried to find common ground with him. There were even rumors in the class that Qin Xuan himself was stalking Mu Chair, and she was only too happy to do so. In fact, the girl wanted to invite Qin Xuan to her party, which would be organized because of her birthday, at 8 o'clock in the evening. The former emperor was the last to be interested in such mundane trivialities. He didn't care about his predecessor's past life and relationships with other people. No wonder he was extremely cold with Mu Chair right now. Normally, the predecessor was happy for Mu Chair's company and showed sympathy. Therefore, today's coldness was very embarrassing to Mu Chair. Yes, and in general, many people were seeking her attention since she was popular in school. But now the guy didn't even have to do anything but reciprocate. It wasn't that simple either. Mu Chair had managed to lose the bet with Xiao Wu, so now she had to find a boyfriend. There were better candidates, such as Wang Jiahao, but her friend didn't understand why Mu Chair had chosen Qin Xuan, a poor man. As a friend, the girl wished the best for Mu Chair and sincerely didn't understand why her friend had chosen this loser. Friday evening, Lake Minxin. The concentration of aura here was minuscule, but it was enough to start cultivating. Even after his rebirth, Qin Xuan didn't lose hope and continued to cultivate hard, reveling in the fact that this body wouldn't be so decrepit for his strength. Perfection was divided into 8 realms: Chuji, Jingdang, Husheng, Yuanying, Wushu, Hedao, Dacheng, Dojie, and each realm was divided into 3 parts. The basic idea among them was to merge the aura of heaven and earth by combining them into one's body. Of course, the stages could be extended, but to do so, special spells were cast that were not available to everyone. On this day, Qin Xuan had successfully completed Juki, the first realm of refinement. This time, it was 10 years earlier than in his previous life. In his previous life, he lacked intelligence, and his Immortal Emperor body had been captured and suffered a lot of damage. But in this world, Qin Xuan was willing to make this body perfect by putting in all possible efforts and spared no resources to do so. Cultivation required time. Having come to the lake back in the afternoon, Qin Xuan had already caught the night. It was necessary to return. Suddenly looking at this old man, Qin Xuan had a question. Did cultivators exist on Earth? Looking at this man, one could never tell that he had practiced martial arts. This man's body was too weak and his footsteps too hollow. It felt as if he was injured. As if in a dream, Qin Xuan blocked the man's path, asking a personal question if he had any wounds. Judging from the old man's reaction, Qin Xuan was right. Qin Xuan was enveloped by a gust of beneficence. For some reason he looked at this person, he wanted to help, and of course, just for fun, from the bottom of his heart. Apparently, the man was not a simple old man, but already a wealthy man, because the guards were constantly watching over the old man's safety. Yes, only Qin Xuan didn't realize it, and in general, he didn't care. But he didn't allow himself to be pawed and shouted at by strangers. The blow was powerful, and after all, the young man had just swung his arm, but the man was left feeling as if it had actually been a blow. It seemed like not everyone here was familiar with cultivation. The master had already guessed that the young man was going to improve his inner strength. It was indeed surprising, as the young man looked very young for such a practice. He looked like a genius. Indeed, Qin Xuan possessed great inner strength, and to realize how much of that strength the stranger had, he only needed to touch it. The old man's ki was too weak compared to his. The gap was not small. There were several lesions in the stranger's meridians that caused obstruction with and often caused him a tingling sensation. This also led to the stranger's kidneys not functioning properly. There was also an accumulation of gas throughout the year that produced various illnesses. This diagnosis stirred up old memories in the stranger. For once the same diagnosis had been told to him by his old friend, word for word. Since Qin Xuan dared to approach this unfamiliar gentleman, he also decided to help solve this problem. At least with meridians he was able to handle. Being sick, the Lord could feel all that power and strength of Qin Xuan. Undoubtedly, he was a genius in his eyes. But the help didn't end there. Qin Xuan wanted to give another prescription and have the Lord take the medicine from him. Qin Xuan was willing to help the stranger refine some medicinal herbs and take them to cure himself. The master was amazed that the resemblance between this young man and his old friend was high. After all, only his old friend could delay this disease, and the young master was ready to cure it completely. Of course, he could faintly believe it. But Qin Xuan didn't look like some kind of cheat or trickster. His confidence was trustworthy. And besides, he already knew about the disease, and he knew what he was doing. Just by looking at a person, he was able to tell so much. These factors were enough for the unfamiliar gentleman to make a decision and ask to bring Xiao Yi a paper. Xiao Yi was still very much afraid for his master Mo Lao, and urged him not to believe the stranger. But alas, no one asked the guard's opinion, and besides, he shouldn't have disrespected the young gentleman. So all he had to do was bring the paper as requested. Before continuing the conversation, Mr. Mo Lao asked what the young master's name was. They were in Jingshui City. The city was small, and many people here knew each other. Mo Lao analyzed that there was no noble family in the city that bore the Qin surname. This was food for thought. Waiting for Xiao for a while, and they stood in silence. But finally a paper was brought to them. There, Qin Xuan could also leave his details and how to contact him. After receiving the medicinal herbs, Mr. Mo Lao and should contact Qin Xuan. It was quite late, and the vehicles were no longer running. So Mr. Mo Lao offered to give the young man a ride to thank him for his attention. But he deigned to go by himself. Mr. Mo Lao was from a family of feudal lords, hence his underling Xiao, and completely did not understand how such a cautious person could trust a strange boy whose origin was not even known. In Jingshui City, Mo Lao had been away for about 10 years. He absolutely did not expect that he would meet such a person when he returned to this city. Xiao Yi had to remember one thing: young Master Qin Xuan might turn out to be an outstanding person in the future. Meanwhile, at Qin Xuan's home, his family was very worried about him. Usually at this time he was already home, but now he was still missing. This made the girls nervous. Qin Xuan was quite an adult, but his sister had been asked to take care of him, so she was worried. If something happened to him, how would she explain it to her elders later? But fortunately, there was no need to worry anymore as Qin Xuan finally returned home. Sister Ho Yu was ready to pounce on her brother with excitement. After all, these hours had passed in sheer excitement. It was as if the brother wanted his sister dead. Late returns were really not his style. That's why the girl assumed that something had already happened. Ho Yu was quite mature and the eldest behind Qin Xuan. But even so, she still continued to treat him like a small child. Qin Xuan, on the other hand, was still so shy. But the thing that interested Ho Yu the most right now was what his brother had been doing since he had returned so late. But he didn't really want to answer that question. Instead of an answer, an apology for his late return followed. But that seemed to be enough. Earlier at this time, and Sis usually slept in, so they decided to say goodbye and go to bed. Qin Xuan had never apologized before, so it was no wonder that the words "sorry" struck her sister so much. She was still pondering. Could it be that it seemed like it? Entering the room, Qin Xuan was enveloped by an unexplainable melancholy. He could not take his eyes off the picture of him and his parents. His father, Qin Wende, was a native of the Qinling family. His mother, Shen Xingshu, was a senior lecturer in the Faculty of Finance. Despite his family's objection, his father married his mother against all odds and left Qinling's family as a consequence of starting to earn money on his own. But as for Qin Xuan himself, he was left to his elder auntie Ho Yu, who became like a sister to him, but that was why he hated his parents. Those years didn't go by afterward. In 3 years, my mother managed to become a business legend with over 100 million in assets, and my father became the leader of the underground in Jiangnan City. One day, a turning point happened. Qin Xuan insulted the Chen Xiao family. As a result, his parents' entire life was ruined by the Chen family. Qin Xuan's parents' 3 years of painstaking labors were destroyed by the Chen family in an instant. The Qin family not only became impoverished, but also lost all their credibility. At his father's funeral, Qin Ling's family actually signed a document to make it look like Qin Xuan's father wasn't even in the family at all. As for Qin Xuan himself, he had received a huge amount of humiliation. But one day, he promised that he would face these pseudo-relatives one-on-one. The enemy tried in vain to throw Qin Xuan into the abyss of hell. But this would not go unpunished. Without any regret, he would do anything to take revenge on his hated family. It would be the true wrath of the Azure Emperor. In the sunroom, Qin Xuan was practicing cultivation and had no time to sleep. The magic tempering map that Qin Xuan used was very productive and useful for cultivation. Our protagonist has taken his physical condition to a new level. His physical and also spiritual condition improved many times over. He had to use the techniques he had learned in his past life, and they were still relevant today. After a useful cultivation, the former emperor leaves his room. In order to take a shower, Qin Xuan opens the door to the bathroom, where he is greeted by his embarrassed girlfriend with a loud cry. After an awkward silence, the girl kicks him out of the bathroom. From the outside, it looked as if Xinzi expected a different answer from our protagonist, but Qin Xuan was silent and left her humbly. Outside, Qin Xuan was waiting for a car with Mo Lao's ward beside him. He notified the young man that all the preparations with medicines were ready, which extremely surprised him. Without hesitating long, Brother Qin states his desire to set out on his journey. Arriving at Yuemin's suburban imperial estate, Mo Lao's ward shows his hospitality. On the way to the imperial manor, our protagonist chatted with Xiao Yi and realized that old Mo's real name was Mo Zhendofeng, who in turn was the family master of Linhai province. He is excited that their meeting will be so soon. Upon entering the manor, guests are greeted by Mo Zhengdu, who was the grandfather of the Mo family and part-time master of the province next to Linhai. Despite his respectful age, Mo Zhengdu was very courteous to Qin Xuan and greeted him with due respect. Brother Qin did not forget about the main purpose of arrival, and immediately went to the main issue of the readiness of all the medicinal components, to which Mo Zhengdu replied in no uncertain terms about the full readiness of everything ordered in advance. With a confident smile on his face, Brother Qin asks for a room to start preparing for the treatment process. Without thinking for a long time, Mo Zhengdu asked him to follow him, as the room was also ready. In the center of the spacious room, Qin Xuan began his medicinal cultivation with basic techniques to strengthen the body and purify internal energy, QI. He had reached significant heights in his cultivation, allowing him to activate the Eternal Youth spell. Charging all the necessary medicinal ingredients with his Qi energy, Qin Xuan prepared the potion that Mo Zhengdu had promised him. Being completely bewildered by what he saw, Mo Zhengdu has nothing else to do but awkwardly offer his helping hand, to which our Qin Xuan simply handed him a healing potion charged with his healing qi. The speed of preparation of this potion had so impressed everyone present that it was clear from their facial expressions what they were thinking right now. Mo Zhengdu expresses his surprise that the elixir masters wouldn't be able to do everything so quickly. This in turn offended Qin Xuan, for they had questioned everything they had seen a few moments ago. Realizing his mistake, Mo Zhengdu rectifies the situation by explaining his words of amazement at our protagonist's amazing methods. Yinling, Mo Zhengdu's granddaughter, enters the room with a scream. Having snatched the elixir from the hands of her grandfather, the girl begins to express her discontent about the situation, as if she does not like that her grandfather naively believes all sorts of boys. Without thinking for a long time, Mo Zhengdu takes away the elixir and reprimands his granddaughter for her inappropriate behavior and rudeness towards our protagonist. Yinling accuses Qin Xuan of cheating without any argument or evidence, which in turn displeases the young man. Knowing who the protagonist is, and in order to make sure of his abilities without any ceremony, calls Qin Xuan for a duel, which our young man agrees to without a second thought. In anticipation of the fight, the self-assured Yinling allows herself to speak with pathos, something like whether our young man will be able to withstand her blows. The girl had a fighting spirit and was self-confident, however she could be understood, because not everyone possessed inner strength, and she was trained in it. Without any further ado, Yinling prepared to attack as promised. Surprisingly, even in such a situation, Qin Xuan felt quite confident and calm. Didn't he see the girl as an opponent? Qin Xuan placed an energy block just in time. not even dignifying the honor of turning around to look at his opponent. The sensation was as if Yinling's hand had hit an iron plate. Were these really all the girl's skills? In any case, there was nothing special about these skills, and against Qin Xuan's strength, her strength was useless. But the girl still did not give up, for she would only accept her defeat if Qin Xuan defeated her. Qin Xuan was so confident that he was willing to defeat the girl with just one finger. Although Mo Zhengdu understood that his granddaughter had started this fight by herself, but he was very worried about her, afraid that Qin Xuan might hurt her. The young man kept his word, and indeed by touching her heart with one finger he was able to affect her directly. After one touch, any of her strength or resistance would not help her. Her heart began to beat rapidly, but at the same time, it was as if it was enveloped in another space, a darker space. This was clearly felt on Yinling's well-being, as her confusion could be seen on her face. The defeat was understandable. The only thing left to do was to admit his defeat out loud. Or else Qin Xuan would have to continue proving his strength that the girl had so refused to believe in before. Mo Zhengdu still continued to worry about his granddaughter, and asked for leniency from the young master. Attacking with just one finger was very dangerous, and a weak opponent might even be injured. Mo Zhengdu realized that this kind of attack was something he wouldn't even be able to withstand. But surprisingly, the granddaughter was still conscious, even though she had to fall to the floor. At this moment, Mo Zhengdu realized that he was a young master who could be considered a Neijin master, that is, a master of inner strength. This strength had to be respected and not cross Qin Xuan's path, or else he would have to pay dearly. But right now, Qin Xuan was favorable to this family, which was to their advantage. Being a rather stubborn girl, Yinling still admitted her defeat in front of everyone. These were necessary measures, albeit a bit harsh. The girl had asked for them herself, to accurately test Qin Xuan's strength. Maybe finally now she believed. Instead of his granddaughter's reply, the grandfather himself preferred to answer, as he was greatly admiring Mr. Qin Xuan's strength. Even at their first meeting, Mr. Maul had realized the brilliance of this person, and now he was finally convinced that Qin Xuan was definitely an outstanding person, and would definitely become famous. Of course, after such a thing, no one could not help but believe in the actual power and promises that Qin Xuan had spoken. After all, what he promised was within his power. Undoubtedly, Mo Zhengdu drank the medicine. There was not a single doubt in him that the young master might be some kind of rogue, although he had not even had the thought of it originally. The first stage of the treatment had been completed. Now Qin Xuan would help the medicine digest as promised. With this power, the digestion will be much more efficient, and several times faster. For Qin Xuan, it was just a drop in his powerful aura, but for the old master it was a vital treatment. Qin Xuan was extremely disposed towards the old man, so he not only healed his internal injuries, but also enlarged his channels. Mr. Mo would need to rest for a few more days to fully recover. The old man was incredibly grateful to his savior, a favor no one else could have done for him, so he would never forget Qin Xuan's kindness. But that wasn't the end of the treatment. Qin Xuan noticed during the treatment that Mr. Mo's cultivation methods had defects, which of course had a bad effect on his health. The old man still couldn't stop marveling at the young master's skill and attentiveness. Some healers would have to spend a lot of time on this, and he noticed it so fleetingly. Besides, Qin Xuan could prescribe a new cultivation method that would be much more effective than the old ones. Mo Zhengdu was incredibly grateful to the young man at this moment. Originally believing him, he did not doubt his choice in the slightest, even though others thought otherwise. But he didn't want to give thanks on mere words, so he suggested that if Qin Xuan needed anything, he would be willing to make any sacrifice to do it for the young man. But it turns out that Qin Xuan doesn't need anything from the Mo family. He was more focused on treating the Lord and wanted to learn more information about modern cultivation methods. It was known that martial arts had flourished in China since ancient times. In modern China, martial artists were divided into new 4 levels: Neijin, Neili, Shantian, Dixian. The last level was equivalent to a celestial on Earth. A cultivator who reached it lived forever and had incredible supernatural abilities. There was also a level after Dixian, but Mo Zhengdu didn't know about it. Qin Xuan's body hardening was at the lowest stage of Neijin, but he had probably already reached the middle stage. In addition, his supernatural abilities could be considered at the Neili level. So Dixian on Earth was like Jingdan in the ancient world. The time was already late. After learning all the information, Qin Xuan hurriedly said goodbye to the Mo family. After all, he still had things to do. Now everyone was clearly convinced that behind the outer shell was a real sleeping dragon. Qin Xuan's life has turned out in a way he never expected. But who knows? Without becoming a deity, perhaps he will be able to seriously affect the lives of people on Earth and have more power than the deity himself. Mo Zhengdu didn't want to let Qin Xuan go empty-handed, so he decided to thank him by giving him all of Mojia's businesses that belonged to Mo Long. On top of that, decided to give away the keys to this villa as well. The young master stationed himself at Mingxing Lake. Xiao Yi immediately found him and conveyed Mr. Mo's will. What was important now was to settle the formalities of transferring the enterprises to Juyun Xuan, as well as the Han Shui Palace, the TK Bar, and the key to the Pearl of the Moon Sea. Mr. Qin Xuan was skeptical, but he still decided to take a look. In the afternoon, he decided to go with Xiao Yi to Juyun Xuan's office. The news that a lot of businesses would be taken over, the boy spread very quickly. No one understood what old man Mo was up to. But there was no need to sweat. Long Ji decided that he would get rid of this boy right away, no matter what it cost him. Besides, it was probably just a worthless boy. Zhang Hu immediately rushed to report to his boss that Xiao An arrived with some boy. The guy didn't expect his opponent to come so quickly at all. He even jumped up from his chair with excitement. But he was still gone. Long Ji was about to order the boy to be brought back. But there was no need for that. Qin Xuan was already here. To think it was Mr. Qin. This boy's hair hadn't even grown back yet and he was given so much company. Xiao Yi hurriedly said something in response so as not to heat up the conflict, but Qin Xuan was not offended and felt confident. He immediately realized that the one in front of him was that Jing Shui authority, Mo Yunlong. He couldn't understand what Mo Zhengdu was thinking. He learned one thing, that the thought that Juyun Xuan's enterprise would not fall into Qin Xuan's hands. However, the young lord didn't seek this. He didn't need the businesses themselves. He just needed a hat to help him manage Jing Shui. The guard was completely enraged after all. His master's reputation was at stake. Qin Xuan had blatantly insulted Long Jie and should have gotten what he deserved. But it's not that easy to do so. No matter how pumped up the bulky man was, his punch was worthless against Qin Xuan, resulting in the same situation as Yin Ling. The man also failed to prove anything but Qin Xuan's strength. The conflict didn't end there. Long Jie decided to use dirty methods and simply shoot Qin Xuan without any ceremony. Xiaoan promised that if even a hair of Mr. Qin fell from his head, Mo Zhengdu would personally kill Long Jie. Even in such a critical situation, Qin Xuan felt confident, and he didn't need the protection of an outsider. To injure him with a weapon, that was super ridiculous. Oh, well, whatever the child wants. Qin Xuan still continued to stand still straight, and the bullet had already been launched. Long Ji intended to kill Qin Xuan. But was it possible? With just 2 fingers, the flying bullet was caught at a tremendous speed. Qin Xuan was only asking for a mutt, but it was very badly received by Long Jie. Maybe after that he'll get it. Thinking that he could get rid of the enemy with just a bullet, the so-called authority of the company screwed up big time. If Mr. Qin was able to stop the bullet with his bare hand, it would not be difficult for him to kill Long Jie, and after that, he would probably not be harmed. Long Ge had to think it over, and finally he willingly agreed to become Mr. Qin's mutt. However, it would save his life and he would still be in power, albeit ghostly. Long Ge Qin Xuan remembered Long Ge's words well, and yet to trust this man. But otherwise, what would happen if someone dared to go against him is not hard to guess. After such an introduction, Long would hardly want to go against the new master. Soon after the formalities were resolved, the guys returned to Yuemingbi Park. Xiao Yi had to go back to Mo Zhengdu and tell him that he would have a job in 3 days. The following days passed by as usual. Qin Xuan still continued to cultivate in the Moon Sea Pearl Villa, for his strength was not yet perfect, although it was already much better than others. But an insistent call interrupted his cultivation. Mu Sher's classmate called. She would be waiting for him at Juyun Xuan at 5 o'clock. Qin Xuan was in no hurry to gather. The situation he had was very interesting and resembled a coincidence. Only a similar situation had once happened not in Juyun Xuan. In the past, this place was definitely not Juyun Xuan. The butterfly effect was just beginning. Once such a nice meeting was planned at the hotel, then as today was Mu Sher's birthday. There was unexpected news waiting for him there, although the party hadn't even started. Mu Cher, a classmate who had shown sympathy for him because of an argument, had decided to break up with him right at the birthday party. Qin Xuan was shocked at the time, because he had been courting this girl for so long and had been trying his best to win her favor. Everyone scoffed at their relationship, as the gap in social status was large. Mu Cher in turn probably expected such a calm reaction, but she knew that there was a hurricane going on in the guy's soul. Who but she knew how much the guy loved her. The whole situation was very much played out by Mucher herself, because everyone present was familiar to Mucher. It was as if the girl was trying to make her ex-boyfriend laugh, which she succeeded, though you couldn't tell from him that it hurt him. At the moment, Mucher was preparing for her birthday, and she and Xiaoyu decided to go shopping and buy some clothes. The friend also continued to condemn Mucher for inviting Qin Xuan to her birthday party, because the previous Qin Xuan had chased after Mucher while being a starving man, and in the end, the roles were reversed. Although he wasn't even a hair's breadth worthy of Mucher. In any case, Mucher might have lost the argument with Xiaowu, which would affect her reputation in school. Business was still going on. Qin Xuan arrived at the Juyuan Xuandongmei Pavilion where Mucher had invited all her guests, and the news of Qin Xuan's arrival spread immediately. All the cream of society had gathered in this place. If they weren't here today, Li Feng wouldn't have asked his father for permission to go to Dongmei Pavilion. Here, the guests were having fun, chatting with each other, forgetting all business, but remaining alert. Qin Xuan was especially attentive. One of Long Jie's maids immediately noticed her new master. Ignoring him would be a bad choice based on past events. On normal days in Juyuan Xuan, one would not expect such courteous ethics from these ladies. It was extremely unusual to see so many manners. Han Dong could be seen very cleverly taking advantage of his position and respect, enjoying himself in the company of these ladies. Besides, he didn't hide it and was even proud of it. Qin Xuan fleetingly listened to the various conversations but found nothing of interest. Everything was the usual costs of etiquette and no new information. With each passing day, the information that Qin Xuan had become the new owner of Juyuan Xuan was spreading more and more. Now this was no longer an ordinary rumor. His appearance here caused even more whispers between other people. Besides him, with Qin Xuan, Wang Jiahao also noticed Han Wei. Han Wei was a respected man and the chairman of Qingshan Construction Company, but he rarely appeared at such celebrations. The interlocutor thought that Han Dun was really lucky, because the ceremonial girls thought that he was one of the best and most attractive people. It was quite boring. So the young master decided to muster up the courage to call Qin Xuan a slacker and invite him to the table. Qin Xuan was always very courteous, so he responded extremely coldly to such harsh remarks. Well, the provocation was unsuccessful. Li Feng had no choice but to let Qin Xuan have his fun and then watch when and how he would get his way. To prevent the conflict between the guys from developing, Mucher hurriedly called out to her guest, but he in turn just said a few words to Mucher's boyfriend. Did it really hurt her? The only person who hadn't made fun of Qin Xuan in the past was Xiaowu. This girl finally decided to confess in confidence that she, Xiaowu, and Mucher had made a bet earlier, and they in turn had to be prepared mentally. The very factor of the argument should have been a secret, but Qin Xuan understood exactly why Mucher was so courteous to him. In turn, knowledge of the dispute raised questions, but discussing it here wasn't the best idea. Mucher's birthday celebration had already started. She was happy and grateful for everyone's congratulations, and because of the presence of all the guests. Now it's time to give the birthday girl her presents. Wang Jiahao wanted to be the first to start and honor the birthday girl with his prepared gift. As a gift, he chose a jade jewelry that must have cost a lot. Even Li Feng, who was not a poor man, appreciated this gift, for it was quite expensive. Jade itself is expensive. Mucher was extremely impressed by such a precious gift, and she thought it was worth at least 100,000. In fact, Wang Jiahao was not modest and revealed the price tag. The jade itself, given to a beautiful girl that was only 100,000, and the engraving on it was 18,000. For such a rich man, it was nothing. The only question left for Li Feng was when he would give his girlfriend such a gift. So he'll have to wait for her birthday, then she'll get the same gift. Let's hope so. Li Feng hurriedly switched to Mucher's boyfriend. Everyone was extremely curious. What would Qin Xuan give as a gift? Since he was her boyfriend, the gift should be expensive. Hadn't he even prepared anything for her birthday? Is the gift so pathetic that Qin Xuan doesn't even want to show it and didn't bring it with him? Of course, Qin Xuan knew very well where he was going and that he would be mocked here, so he had prepared a special gift. The gift itself was sealed in an envelope, and one that the girl will remember for a long time. There were chuckles from the girls and guys at the table, all speculating what was in that envelope. A check or some kind of love letter? One Xiaowu was taking this situation normally and did not change her attitude towards Qin Xuan. Furthermore, she proudly pointed out that Qin Xuan didn't care at all about the ridicule in his direction. Qin Xuan's new maid was extremely surprised to see her master here. She certainly didn't think he would be here. At the same time, she brought wine to her guests as a sign of respect from Juyuan Xuan. Chumi still had things to do, and she wished the guests a pleasant time. Everyone immediately recognized this girl. for she was the girlfriend of the ringleader in Jing Shui Mo. The guests themselves did not expect to be presented with wine so unexpectedly. It was a rarity. To lighten things up, the friend would like to make a toast to herself and Li Feng. But the confusion of some of the guests still did not pass. Li Feng could only guess why Chu Mei had served them wine. He could only hope that his father had nothing to do with it. But rejecting such a gift was not something the guests wanted to do, so they happily opted to drink such an expensive wine. It was toast time, but before anyone would say a toast, Mu Cher turned to her boyfriend. All the guests and Qin Xuan, being familiarized with the situation of the relationship between Mu Cher and Qin Xuan, realized that an interesting performance was about to happen. Finally, Mu Cher decided to dot all the dots between their relationship and confess honestly that she was Qin Xuan's girlfriend, only because she had made a bet with Xiao Wu. If she dumps Qin Xuan within a month, then she wins. And if Qin Xuan does it before her, then she lost. Apparently, Mu Cher had won now. This whole relationship with Qin Xuan was just for fun and entertainment. If it wasn't for Mu Cher, Qin Xuan would have never even entered the Zhu Yunshuan building. The pair were from different worlds. Qin Xuan was no match for Mu Cher in terms of status, something she and everyone else kept telling him. Qin Xuan does not deserve Mu Cher in any way. She should have ended this relationship a long time ago so as not to waste her energy. In any case, Mu Cher remembered all the kindness Qin Xuan had done to her in 2 years. But alas, this is what happens when two people's paths diverge. But why was the girl so sure she had won? Mu Cher still hadn't opened the gift that Qin Xuan had given her. And she should have done so first before jumping to such conclusions. The girl had already assumed that the guy couldn't believe their breakup and was delaying the moment. But she also mentally realized how pathetic Qin Xuan was. Her pride, the knowledge of how superior she was, kept her from looking more deeply into things. When she read the letter, she was shocked. It said goodbye. He had broken up with her even earlier. The argument was lost. On this birthday, Qin Xuan had only come to break off all relations with Mu Cher. The girl only lived by flaunting her beauty in front of those she exalted. In Qin Xuan's opinion, these people were worthless specks of dust. Besides, Mu Cher was really right when she said that they were both from different worlds. Mu Cher wasn't even worthy of sitting next to Qin Xuan, let alone being his girlfriend. Such words made the girl stunned and angry. A penniless worm dared to say such a thing to the most beautiful girl. A battle broke out. Li Feng, being the impulsive person that he was, decided to stand up for Mu Cher Yi and thus stretch his bones. However, his attacks didn't harm Qin Xuan at all, but he was quite hurt that the guys caught him. But the fight didn't end there. Other people who wanted to stand up for the girl joined in. Qin Xuan would start hitting them, and even before they would hurt him. On this day, he would not allow anyone to mock him, and certainly not let them bring him physical pain. This was not the past Qin Xuan who would obediently chase after a girl. As soon as the noise was heard, the other guests and Long Ji immediately ran over to the noise. Li Feng was happy to see Long Ge appear, hoping that he would be the one to kick Qin Xuan out of here. But how shocked they would be when they found out that Qin Xuan was Mr. Long Ge. Long Ge couldn't do anything to Mr. Qin because he was afraid, and as a consequence, others would wonder if Qin Xuan should be afraid. There was a silent scene. No one dared to even move after that, but Qin Xuan sipped his wine as if nothing had happened. Li Feng finally came to his senses. The entire situation appeared in front of his face, but his common sense still couldn't realize that Long Jie himself was tiptoeing in front of what they previously thought was a beggar Qin Xuan. I remember Mu Cher and even earlier said that Qin Xuan would never have gotten into Zhu Yunshuan without her. So today everything has changed and the entire famous Zhu Yunshuan belongs entirely to Qin Xuan. At this moment, Madame Mo also walked in. Li Feng hoped to complain to her at least, and that Qin Xuan would at least have someone punish him for his beating. But he said it in vain, for he got the addition of a hematoma under his eye and 2 lost teeth. Yingling as well as the other maids still couldn't understand what Master Qin had forgotten among these people. Li Feng was too late to realize his mistake, for he only now realized that even Lady Mo was serving Qin Xuan. Maybe he wasn't known well enough before. Otherwise, how could Qin Xuan have so much money and so many influential people around him? Mr. Qin in turn was surprised that the worm Li Feng appeared to know Madame Mo. But in fact, knowing this person was actually besmirching Yinling's name. Mo Yinling bowed to Mu Cher's ex-boyfriend. To think about it, the girl was racked with incredible disappointment. After all, if she was Qin Xuan's real girlfriend, if she behaved better, then surely her status would be higher as well. Well, it's too late now. To Qin Xuan, this pretty girl at school is now exactly nothing. All her good looks are just a cheap wrapper that can be purchased elsewhere. Now Qin Xuan really had nothing to do here amongst this rabble. Nothing to surprise his servants with his presence amongst these lowly people. Great things should always wait when there is school. The next day, as usual, student Qin Xuan was once again at the school desk, where his classmate was trying to call out to him. The classmate was rather pleasantly annoying, and I had to respond to his calls at least somehow. The news that he and Mu Cher broke up spread throughout the school, as the girl was quite famous for her looks. Especially such a scandalous breakup could not be kept within the four walls. To support his favorite classmate, the guy offered to go and take a walk in the evening, thus reminding him that Qin Xuan was not alone. Qin Xuan refused, for he was upset. After all, the body's predecessor had spent quite a lot of time with Mu Cher. There were some good memories, so it was a bit sad. But refusal meant as much to this young man as consent. Finally, it was break time. Qin Xuan could meet his girlfriend Xiao Wu on the way to another class. It became known that Mu Cher had transferred to another school. Qin Xuan decided to ignore this news. After all, he didn't care about this girl anymore. The book that Xiao Wu was holding caught his attention. It turns out that the girl liked Buddhism. Qin Xuan promised that one day he would give her a Buddhist canon. Did Qin Xuan really like Buddhist sutras too? In fact, he didn't know much about them at all. After chatting with Xiao Wu, the boy bumped into Meng Day. The latter was excited to see where he and Xuanqi would go tonight. It would be impossible to get rid of this annoying guy, so Qin Xuan suggested going to TK's bar. It was definitely a good choice. Qin Xuan knew a lot about bars. Standing at the exit by the cool car was Meng Day's girlfriend, Li Meng. Meng Di borrowed this car from his father. That's the Audi they'll use to go to the bar. They arrived pretty quickly. Bar TK took up almost the entire second floor and was a pretty famous bar in this town. To relax at least a little, they decided to drink wine, as it was great for relaxing. Suddenly, the company's attention was caught by some young man. Many knew him as Tsu Jie. Before he even got in, he was already hitting on some girl. For her part, she recognized him immediately, but couldn't seem to counter him with anything. Meng Di was curious about Qin Xuan's opinion on this situation, but he immediately warned that it was better not to attract attention, because this kid Tsu Ji was the director of the TK bar. Basically, even so, no one cared about the situation anyway. Don't you care? His older sister Chu Mei is the girlfriend of the authority figure of this town, Long Ge. But the guys still came here to distract themselves. Meng Day in turn turning his friend's attention to the bar where the hottie was sitting. Qin Xuan was interested in her. She had quite an attractive figure. This girl's name was Su Yun Yue. But aside from her beautiful figure, Qin Xuan was more attracted to the crystal shower on her cleavage. This rare piece of jewelry was worn by a girl who was just having a drink in a bar. It was rare to find such a thing. She probably didn't even realize what crystal she owned, showing it off to the public. Su Yunye had a little too much to drink, it could be seen. But in order not to make a mess, she hurriedly went out. Only, the men blocked her way. Kuijai had apparently failed miserably with another girl, and decided to escort Su Yunye personally home even though she refused. To ignore something like this, Qin Xuan couldn't and wouldn't. It was the girl that interested him. But who dares to meddle in Su Jie's affairs? That person must be immortal. It smelled like a showdown, and God only knew how it would end up. Kuijie didn't want to lose his authority in the eyes of others, but Qin Xuan wouldn't give in either. Of course, Kuijie wouldn't get his hands dirty himself. After all, he had his own guards for that, who he allowed to do whatever he wanted to Qin Xuan. But would he be able to? The poor guy didn't even have time to do anything before Qin Xuan knocked him out with his foot. You shouldn't be messing around with the boss. This was not the end of the fight, for there were still many followers of Kuijie. Counting on the fact that they would be able to defeat Qin Xuan alone in a crowd, they rushed into the fight recklessly. But alas, thinking is not their thing. And neither was waving their fists. They were all scattered around the club, and because of them the club had been trashed, and now visitors were unlikely to come here until the place was cleaned up. The scum weren't lucky enough to stumble upon Qin Xuan, but now they saw real strength and put on a good show for the visitors. Unlike the crowd, Qin Xuan knew how to fight, although this fight was unequal. Xuan didn't care. After all, he was stronger than them by several times. Kuijie was slightly disappointed with his charges, who were indeed scum who couldn't even deal with a single boy. But he hoped that Qin Xuan didn't expect him to get away with such insolence. Qin Xuan's demands were as follows. Kuijie had to kneel in front of the girl and lay on the floor 3 times begging for forgiveness. Only Kuijie felt that he wouldn't be with himself if he didn't kick Qin Xuan's ass. Fortunately, he had other people who were willing to stand up for him. Unfortunately, he himself was incapable of fighting. But he was able to give orders, even though he was not good for anything. What these guys were doing right now was utter recklessness. It was obvious other people's lessons they learned very poorly. But Qin Xuan would have no difficulty teaching them a personal lesson for life. No muscles would have any strength if one didn't know how to use them. Qin Xuan knew how to use not only his body, but also his internal energy, making him simply invincible in front of such scum. And to crush a huge crowd of people, he only needed a drop of energy and not a single scratch on his body. No one even had time to touch him before all those who wanted to harm him were unable to do so. It was as if Qin Xuan was not a simple person, but some kind of monster. His fighting style, his strength and composure in such a situation, it was something superhuman. This time, Qiji's confidence had gone somewhere. His entire mind and body were anxious. How would he respond again now? Qin Xuan gave him a chance to break up quietly. But he didn't. He wanted to show who was the boss, and ended up proving wrong, and turned out to be a complete fool. The last thing Tsuji could threaten to do was to attack Qin's family in case he touched him. Luckily, Big Sister Chu Mei came, or else some creep is making a mess here. The situation was getting out of hand. The show was on. The visitors were in anticipation of the continuation. The sister was waiting for a story. Tsuji narrated that some scumbag had trashed the bar, and the brother was now demanding to call Xiao and have him help deal with the guy. Before doing anything, Chu Mei wanted to start by seeing who this headstrong brat was. She finally saw her master and sincerely hoped that her brother wasn't talking about this man. But unfortunately, this was the person Tsuji was referring to. Her brother had already gotten into trouble. He didn't realize who he was taking it out on. And now he got it from his sister, embarrassed in front of all the customers. Tsuji still didn't quite understand why his sister had hit him and what was going on. He was so corrupted by money that it was hard to understand his guilt. The situation was extraordinary. Chu Mei had to handle everything herself, so that her brother would not make the situation worse. For the Lord would not joke around and tolerate it for long. Chu Mei made the most beautiful look she could. She was grateful that Mr. Qin visited this bar, therefore offered him more services for VIP customers. But he didn't want her to do him any favors. He'd rather she just leave. From the first time he met her, he couldn't stand Chu Mei, and now she's trying to cover up for her brother, who was hiding behind her skirt. Few people allowed themselves to address Chu Mei as you and tell her to piss off. People were just shocked at how bold this guy was, and the girl couldn't say anything back. The girl immediately realized the situation and how much trouble she was in. Those problems were brewed by Tsu Jie. Accordingly, he had to solve them now, for no matter how much she wanted to, she could not help it. Tsuze, if he didn't want to die, he should kneel down now. His sister was an authority to him, so he obeyed her unconditionally. And besides, he had no other choice but to bow down to the master. Qijai kneeling before Qin Xuan seemed like a dream to the guys. Everyone knew this man as a proud and authoritative man, and now he was apologizing on his knees in front of a schoolboy, whose power was not yet known to everyone. In any case, Qin Xuan didn't want to see this scum here anymore, and demanded that he get out of here. Or maybe Chu Mei had some objections. The sister had to obey against all odds. Qin Xuan was just passing by, but the girl was already shaking with fear. Of course, she would obey his every will. Qin Xuan was very grateful that Mengde kept him company and helped him have fun. But before leaving, and so as not to leave his friend puzzled, Qin Xuan clarified that Bartek belonged to him. The bar girl Qin Xuan took with him to the Pearl of the Moon Sea, and was able to put her to bed. But as we remember, he had his eye on her not because of her body or beauty, but because of her soul crystal jewelry. It wasn't that he wanted to steal the soul crystal from Su Yun. Let's consider it as payment for saving her. The soul crystal itself was useful in that it revealed the secret of eternal youth and was effective in cultivation. Qin Xuan had a whole night for everything, approximately how long the girl would sleep. This was enough time for him to immerse himself in his space. Like an evergreen secret art, these spiritual forces permeating the lands, Qin Xuan launched a circular cycle attached to the Dantian. Xuan's spirit was immersed in the Dantian, and each cycle contained the pure essence of spiritual power flowing into the spiritual sea, causing it to grow. The azure-colored spiritual sea was expanding. As time passed, it split into two realms, and there was almost no trace of waves in the azure-colored sea. Qin Xuan had managed to reach the second Zhang. With the help of the soul crystal, he could get double the result by offering only half the effort. All he had to do was get his hands on the secret of eternal youth. After all, for the body, the human race itself had a disadvantage compared to the beast race. Very few humans were willing to neglect the root and pursue the top body-hardening cult. The dragon and phoenix monster race had high physical stats at birth, It could tear up tigers and leopards, eat plankton, and command respect from all creatures. The method of refining the body was strengthened, perseverance was restored, and the suffering Qin Xuan endured was beyond ordinary cultivation. One had to overcome suffering to know the fruits of heaven. A drop of blood gradually condensed in his heart. Amidst the secret art of eternal green, the body's qi energy was channeled into it like a stream floating on its own path. Blood circulation has improved by leaps and bounds. The body stopped harder than it had before. Qin Xuan felt an unknown strength within himself. This cultivation was successful and also very hard, but it was definitely worth it. Qin Xuan absorbed all the energy of the crystal Yi. Now this crystal was useless. Suddenly there was a scream from the girl. She woke up. Su Yun had been so drunk last night that she must have been very confused now, noticing herself in some unknown room and also without an amulet. The girl had absolutely no recollection of what had happened yesterday, so she expected at least some information from Qin Xuan. First of all, he clarified that nothing had happened between them, although the girl had been hitting on him all evening. Besides, Qin Xuan reminded, Su Yun wanted to pay him back with this amulet here, but he didn't need it, so he was returning it. And now it was time for the young gentleman to head off to his schoolwork. She still didn't fully understand the situation and asked him to stay. But he had already left. She was very angry and wanted to find out who this man was. But what would she do to him? After all, she didn't even remember yesterday. But luckily, she had already gotten calls from other suitors, who you could ask a favor of and get her out of here as soon as possible. Finally, as agreed, 3 days later, Qin Xuan had fixed Mo Zhengdu's cultivation technique. Now he could take it away and study it. The matter progressed very quickly, which surprised the old man. Without wasting a second, he decided to leave now. A few minutes, and he was already near the Moon Sea Pearl Villa, where Qin Xuan had been residing for a while. The young master gave Mo Zhengdu an entire notebook with everything detailed on what to do and how to do it. Before parting ways, Mo Zhengdu reminded that there was an auction of ritual items being held today, so the old master offered to attend with Qin Xuan. There was free time, so Qin Xuan happily agreed. What if something else interesting was still there? The auction was held at Jingshui Villa. Upon arrival, it hadn't started yet, so you could relax a bit and drink wine. Qin Xuan waited patiently and looked boredly at the wine, until he was called out. It was his good acquaintance, and it seems as if she didn't have another book. Qin Xuan remarked with a smile that not everyone was gifted with. Xiaowu admitted honestly that there was no other book, and straight up, it was her favorite book. But as we remember, Qin Xuan promised the girl a new book, so he made it clear that he would send her a new one tomorrow. Lu Yun suddenly decided to ask if Qin Xuan understood something about Buddhism. It was obvious that the girl was also a follower of Buddhism, and couldn't wait to find out what Qin Xuan knew about it. He also answered honestly, for he had no knowledge of Buddhism and knew nothing about it. This answer was like an insult. The girl hurriedly warned Xiaowu not to listen to the guy. After all, he only knew how to crack wise. Moving away from this topic, some of the guests were wondering how Qin Xuan managed to get into Jingshui Villa in the first place. Did he get through the fence? Somebody got into a fight. Qin Xuan was characterized by a peculiar equanimity and indifference, so as if nothing had happened, he completely calmly replied that he had been invited. But only more and more people got involved in this conflict, because who could invite such a ragamuffin? The guests and made it clear that no one here was happy with Qin Xuan, and he should get the hell out of here nicely. While the young ones were quarreling, the old men were watching them. After all, that boy was Lao Lu's grandson. He did not resent him, for he understood his grandson. The boy was young and full of vigor, and the old men saw themselves as young. That was right. Besides, the Lu family held more than half of the market shares. Hardly anyone would dare to quarrel with them. In response to which Lao Lu only laughed because compared to him, his disciples were much more influential than the Lu family. Still, to keep the conflict from randomly crossing the line, the man offered to send Zhang away to keep an eye on them. The young men hoped that Qin Xuan would obey them and still leave in the end. They pressed with authority in their family, but Qin Xuan didn't care about that. He could only submit to the real strength of a man and the nobility that the young men lacked. In the end, the sent Zhang tried something to resolve the conflict. Zhang was the principal here. As if to the saving straw, the Lu family's descendant pounced on him and started accusing Qin Xuan of illegally sneaking in here and demanded that this person be kicked out of here. Meanwhile, Qin Xuan had already been approached by Xiao Yi, who had something to say. Everything had already been prepared. Mr. Mo Zhengdu was calling Qin Xuan over to his place. Mr. Zhang didn't even have time to do anything before Qin Xuan ignored everyone and walked away. In the end, he got taunts thrown at his back, saying this asshole is walking away with his tail between his legs. This is what happens to those who come where they don't belong. Shame on you. The only one who understood where Qin Xuan was going was Xiao Wu. Only she didn't know what kind of relationship he had with Mo Lao. She could only guess about it. Together with Xiao, and they walked to the backyard, where there was a completely different atmosphere. There, Qin Xuan could meet the feng shui master Mr. Li Wentao. Plus, all of today's auction items belonged to him. It was an extremely unfortunate encounter. Mo Zhengdou wanted to smooth things over initially, but he was unable to do so. Somehow, subconsciously, these people didn't like each other. But while a silent scene hung between the people, other guests came up. Among them, Wu Xiong could be seen in the middle. This man was the head of the Wu family. This is the most prolific aristocratic family. The influence of the Wu family spread throughout Jingshui City, owned various businesses from small cab companies, Jingshui Airport. Some Wu family figures were installed by the power. The heads of the other families didn't expect to see a guy they didn't know, who was most likely even an ancestor, so they threw such judgmental and dissatisfied glances in his direction. In addition, they didn't understand why he was sitting, and Mo Yingling was standing behind him. The girl in turn hurriedly told him about them. They were the heads of the Lu and Lu families. Their names were the same, but they themselves were completely different, although they were very strong in Linhai. While everyone was chatting with each other, an unfamiliar man caught their attention with his appearance and his coughing. It had been a long time since he had been here, and also a long time since he had seen the gentleman. It was the head of the Zhou family, Zhou Guqin. His appearance was completely unexpected. Unexpected because he wasn't even invited to tonight's auction. He was actually invited by Li Wentao, which he hurriedly announced to avoid any awkwardness. However, Mr. Zhou had little interest in such formal costs. He had come here to see the item he had been promised as soon as possible. Everyone was in place, so we could get started. The first item to be auctioned was a blue dragon with a pearl. It was a harbinger of wealth. The blue dragon was indeed very beautiful, and caused a reaction accordingly. Without even thinking and looking over the item completely, Zhou Guqin immediately made a decision to buy it. But he was asked to take his time, for there were even more interesting things to do. Besides the blue dragon, several yin and yang symbols could be seen, as well as a money talisman. All the items looked luxurious and had an attractive appearance. But what did Mr. Qin Xuan think about it, Mo Zhengdou wondered. Qin Xuan threw a glance at all these things without even looking at them as a follow. And as if a sentence, he said that it was all useless junk. Qin Xuan's judgment was extremely harsh and tactless, but it was honest on his part. However, this honesty was very offensive to his master. There was a silver lining, for such boldness commanded Mr. Zhou's respect. Such a young man had the courage to speak out like this. One must also give credit to Mr. Mo Lao, for he already had an eye for such unusual people. In any case, Mr. Zhou's decision didn't change, and besides, he had decided to take all these things and was expecting the appointed price. Of course, everyone present was surprised, or maybe they wanted to compete with Zhou Guqing. Everyone was on pins and needles, and especially Zhou and Li Wentao. The others present were simply surprised at such an unexpected decision by the Lord. Mo Zhengdou in turn suggested that we dispense with the conflict, and that everyone should choose one or two things. Qin Xuan still continued to stand his ground. To make sure of his words, he even went over and examined the things closer. His opinion remained unchanged. All the things were useless junk, and nothing would change if Zhou Gu took it away. Unless Li Wentao makes a big profit. Mr. Zhou Gu was excited to see where Mo Lao had found such a joker. Li Wentao was not going to be silent, for he considered himself a great master, and accordingly, he boldly called his artifacts incredibly powerful. How could some little kid come here and insult their master? Mo Zhengdou decided to still trust his new friend. If he had helped him before, it was unlikely that Qin Xuan would make a mistake now. Therefore, he boldly gave up all the artifacts. The others thought that Mo Lao had lost his head, believing what that chicken had said. Ignoring everything that happened, Li Wentao was not going to ignore it, and promised that he would report everything that happened today to his head. But that's for later. Now the auction. The total value of all the artifacts was 50 million yuan. So there was nothing to be embarrassed about here. Zhou Guqin could safely take his goods. This price suited the gentleman. He did not even bargain for these goods. He wanted to take his catch and leave as soon as possible. But Qin Xuan didn't want to just let the Lord go, something he really didn't like. The gentleman continued to be more and more surprised by Qin Xuan's insolence, for he was quite cocky for his age, even more so in such a group. But it was clearly visible that he was not at all embarrassed by his own behavior. He did what he thought was right, and was absolutely sure of his actions. Chogu Qin wanted to still listen to Qin Xuan about what he had to say. He repeated what he had said earlier for the third time. All these goods are just trash, and for this trash, Jogu wants to fork out as much as 50 million. Isn't this silly, even considering the gentleman's not small fortune? The underling hurriedly defended his master's honor, for Qin Xuan was not going to be ceremonious, and quite honestly and rudely replied. It turns out that Qin Xuan, and even more brazen than what Jogu Qin expected. The master did not do anything in turn, but to begin with, she simply warned the little guy to be more careful with this in the future, for he was playing with fire. In any case, Qin Xuan had gotten his way. He was given the opportunity to demonstrate how he determined that these things were junk. His words were not empty. He knew what he was talking about and demonstrating it. And him was easy enough. Just a touch of a finger was enough. He clearly showed all the masters how the aura of attraction disappeared in an instant. And after that, the dragon itself turned black. And it was as if all the aura had been sucked out somewhere. Li Wentou became blacker than a cloud, for the goods were now completely ruined. And so was his reputation. There wasn't any magic in it either. Qin Xuan had simply removed the external magic and returned the original appearance of this artifact. Now all claims were against Li Wentou. How would he now explain himself for such defective goods? He didn't know how to explain it, and as a consequence, he began to lash out at the boy who had ruined his business. Although Li Wentou was old, but he was still raging with fury, now he would show the true art of feng shui. The feng shui technique that was wind and water was killer. It could already be felt by the aura. In order for there to be no calamity, Old Man Mo hurriedly calmed down the furious lord to stop. But it was too late. Qin Xuan was struck by lightning straight from the sky. The lightning pierced his entire body, but he continued to stand with his perfectly straight posture and didn't even move. After such a blow, one would have thought the young man was dead. But if he had died, he would have fallen. But Qin Xuan and still had the mood to mock how much nothingness and technique Li Wentou possessed. How dare he demonstrate it to Qin Xuan? This strike was calculated by a force that could only foresee a flying outcome, but the guy remained alive and sane. Li Wentou's reaction was justified, for he had never seen anything like this in his entire life. Therefore, Qin Xuan would do you a favor and introduce him to the divine Dao technique. Before he wanted to do that, the old master's blow should have come to his back. How dishonorable! Yinling was very afraid for her master and tried to warn him. But even without any warning, he felt everything around him, and even more so the danger. The blow came from behind, he didn't even turn around, but he stopped it with his skill. Again, the impact was simply negligible. Qin Xuan felt Spanish shame, for compared to the Dao's strength, it was like a drop in the ocean. Who knows? Maybe after Qin Xuan showed him his true strength, Li Wentou would be interested in improving his fighting style, if he survived, of course. Today, the old man was going to be introduced to a divine Dao technique that was hidden in the form of a dragon. A majestic dragon was hiding within Qin Xuan's simple body. It was rare for him to display something like this. But this time, he would do him a favor. The dragon could have destroyed the place and everyone around it, but it only stopped close to Li Wentou, who was dying of fear, the fear of his death. With this action, Qin Xuan not only showed how strong and how powerful the Dao technique was, but also clearly demonstrated how insignificant Li Wentou was. Now everyone realized that he was not just some brash and stupid young man, but a man who was responsible for his words and had more power than everyone here combined. No one said anything, as words were completely unnecessary right now. Everyone present began to look at Qin Xuan differently. Some of them were afraid of him and probably didn't want to antagonize him. But at the same time, there was also some respect. Qin Xuan easily defeated the feng shui technique. Maybe Li Wentou wanted to show our hero something else as well? The fight was perfectly fair, the old man accordingly humbly admitting his defeat. Today, Qin Xuan had repeatedly stated that Li Wentou's artifacts were junk, but he kept objecting. Finally, after this situation, he admitted his wrongness. For these things were indeed complete junk. In that case, Qin Xuan ordered Li Wentou to kneel down and beat his head on the ground until it bled. Will he obey? No, he won't. Li Wentou will never disobey young master again after this incident. The old man was in complete agreement that his feng shui technique wasn't worth anything either. The gentleman after that was as if they had an epiphany. They finally understood what Qin Xuan wanted to convey to them. All of the artifacts had been personally modified by Li Wentou, with the goal that they would definitely want to be bought. The evidence was in plain sight. The gentlemen are extremely angry. Let them not forget to pay their 50 million yuan now. Some people laughed at this situation, and some people were almost costly. Zhou Guqin must have felt foolish for falling for such a scam so easily. If the auction was over, Qin Xuan already wanted to leave. But before he left, there were still things for sale. He was shown a water crystal. It had been found in the ocean quite some time ago, but no one could determine what material it was made of. Everyone hoped that Mr. Qin might be interested. Besides, they were offering a South African diamond the size of a goose egg. There were so many offers, and they were all from different people, plus they gave a guarantee that these items were ancient. Amongst all this unnecessary rubbish, Qin Xuan found something that he would actually find useful. It was a starstone. When a star died, it accumulated, and its accumulated energy over thousands of years shrank into not a big rock. That's how the starstone was created. And now it belonged to Mr. Mo. Qin Xuan was very interested and wanted to pay. But Mr. Mo saw that this stone was to his liking, so he gave it to Mr. Qing for free. In his previous life, Xuan had never encountered an artifact of such great power. It was an incredible fortune for him. The starstone could serve as a material to process other artifacts. Qin Xuan in turn wanted to offer Mr. Mo his sympathy in return for this stone. It was fortunate after all. The sympathy of someone like Qin Xuan was undoubtedly worth much more compared to the disposition of anyone. Once again, Qin Xuan returned to his school days, where life was flowing. Suddenly, Xiao Wu wanted to have a one-on-one conversation with him. He was extremely interested in this girl's attention, but it was more like they had a friendly sympathy than anything more. Maybe. He'd always appreciated what she'd done for his predecessor in the past and tried to thank her in some way. Because as promised, he had already sent a book on Buddhism. Xiao Wu was amazed at this gift. This book was much better than the last one. It was more understandable and it had a lot of important details. This book couldn't be compared to anything else. She was extremely curious to know where he had gotten such a book. It turned out that Qin Xuan had written it personally. In fact, he was very happy that the girl liked it. Qin Xuan couldn't have given her some trinket. He also said he had no interest in Buddhism. Did you hear the news? It seems Xiao Wu has fallen in love, and the guy is Qin Xuan. The rumors of that meeting spread very quickly. Mengde wanted to know the details of their relationship in person, but Qin Xuan objected because they hadn't even met. Xiao Wu was indeed very beautiful, but Qin Xuan and her, they didn't fit together. Mengde in turn rushed to support his friend, because sooner or later he will definitely meet his soulmate. But school was about to end, which meant some sort of celebration had to be organized. Before everyone could disperse, Xiao Wu seemed to have decided to visit Qin Xuan once again. Suddenly, she thought that she and Qin Xuan weren't even friends, so she decided to return the book to him. But Qin Xuan wasn't in the habit of taking back his gifts, and if the girl didn't want it, then let her throw it away. Qin Xuan himself had written this book, but that didn't mean anything. The girl was free to do whatever she wanted with it. After all, it belonged to her. But Sumna decided to intrude into their conversation and interrupted them loudly, addressing Qin Xuan. He started hitting on the guy to stay away from Xiao Wu. But Lu Yunfang was no one to Xiao Wu. Everyone knew that this kid was just hopelessly in love with her and was trying to show off now. But in the end, in order not to give away his sympathy for the girl, he simply introduced himself as Xiao Wu's friend. If he suddenly, so what did he care about Xiao Wu and Qin Xuan's relationship? Even if they were to meet, what would Lu Yunfang be able to counter them? This was blatantly provocative. Qin Xuan liked to provoke others and watch them get angry. Besides, this provocation was working. But the boy was completely powerless. In any case, his goal was not to start a new conflict. So he took the girl away. After all, he did not want to disgrace her in front of others. Before they separated, Qin Xuan apologized. After all, he didn't want that incident. Although who is he kidding? He really wanted it since he did. The truth was much nicer, and Xiao Wu appreciated it. Even after admitting to such a prank, Qin Xuan understood that it was unworthy of the girl, so he sincerely apologized to her. He would really like the girl to keep the book as his apology for what had just happened. An apology? How much longer would Qin Xuan surprise Xiao Wu? Qin Xuan's girls had already returned home from their long-awaited vacation. And surprisingly, they were tired, but most likely from the road. Hou Yu left her friend Su Yun alone in Jingxi. But even after that, she didn't say a word to her. And now, after all this, she's asking for help? But Sis still felt like she was on vacation. As an apology for the incident, she promised Su Yun to cook a delicious dinner. Besides, Qin Xuan would be back very soon. He had started his vacation. Su Yun shouldn't have shocked him. The girl decided to leave to go shopping, and suggested her friend to rest, who was remembering who Qin Xuan was. On the way out, Ho Yu decided to dial her little one to come over in time for dinner. She also made it clear that there was an insolent girl at home. So, let Qin Xuan ignore her when she returns. That's unfortunate. Sister had returned vacation so early. Now Qin Xuan would have to postpone his training in the Pearl. When he arrived home, it wasn't his sister who was waiting for him, but her saucy friend. She even had the nerve to ask what Qin Xuan was doing here, finally realizing that he, that TK bar owner, was Ho Yu's brother. Since there was such a situation, the girl suggested calling her auntie. Yes, only Qin Xuan was not in the mood and asked this woman to leave him alone. Wow, he'd pissed that woman off. Now she wanted to teach him a lesson. But then Sister Shinze came in, who couldn't wait to see Sister Yu from her vacation. She wasn't here, but it was only for the best since she wanted to talk to Qin Xuan. The sister had a grudge against the guy because she was Xiao Wu's friend, and this bastard was stalking her. Let him not think that he can date Xiao Wu after that scene. Qin Xuan and Xiao Wu were completely from different worlds. The guy won't even be able to give her what she needs. But why should she care about their relationship, even if she is a sister and friend? Xiao Wu wasn't a bad person. But to Qin Xuan, she was just an ordinary plastered fashionista. All Shinzi was talking about was the status of money. If Xiao Wu is like that, then Qin Xuan doesn't need her. If the girl was done, she should have left his room and not pestered him again about such nonsense. Su Wen was practically caught eavesdropping as it was, but to somehow make up for this situation, she admitted that she had come to ask if the guys were hungry. It was unknown how about the others, but Qin Xuan was definitely not hungry. And this boy had a temper. But nothing let him wait a little while, and later he would be avenged by Su Yun auntie for his boorish behavior. The girl only wanted to warn Qin Xuan, and he ended up getting angry. Xiao Wu was an illegitimate child, but no matter how much ordinary people tried, they would never reach her level. There would always remain people who were destined to look down on others. Finally, Sister Ho Yu had already returned with the groceries and promised to feed everyone. She was happy, but above all she wanted to still see her baby brother. But he was in the room for now. Sis Blue was very young and already knew how to cook. Su Yun can't go to her. They can only rest and enjoy the silence while others work. Even without knowing how to cook, this life was established at Su Yun's place. But things couldn't go smoothly either. If it wasn't her, it was her family. Suddenly, Sister Ho Yu couldn't hold on and collapsed on the floor, as if her strength was beginning to leave her. Qin Xuan immediately came running at the noise. All hope was on him, as he could at least put the girl on the bed while an ambulance would be called. Somehow, she still managed to stand up and was in her conscious mind. Qin Yuan began to realize that Sister Ho Yu seemed to be sick, and immediately demanded for the girls to move away, because they were only ruining everything. When he started touching his sister, his girlfriends asked him to back off, because he wouldn't be of any help here. Before they continued to bicker further, Qin Xuan wanted to know when Ho Yu fell ill, something that they had so carefully hidden. The girl had gone completely pale even though she could sit up. But you could see how much pain she was in. Her whole body was shaking. The very temperature in her body was very high. It was frightening to watch her suffer. The pain was very piercing. It was amazing that she was still conscious. Qin Xuan didn't look at it anymore. After thinking of a plan on what to do, he decided to cure his sister. The girlfriends still continued to rebel, threatening that they wouldn't let Qin Xuan near Ho Yu because he might hurt her. But he didn't listen to anyone, because he knew perfectly well what he was doing, and some losers would tell him how to be. The girls didn't know much about Qin Xuan. Besides worrying about Ho Yu, their reaction was also quite understandable. But Qin Xuan was still related to Ho Yu. He was also worried. But he preferred to cure his sister instead. Even Su Yun realized that what Qin Xuan was doing was actually helping Ho Yu, while Shinji continued to rebel. The girl did feel much better. The fever had gone away, but it was as if she was drifting into sleep. During this time, Qin Xuan realized that Ho Yu's several qi channels had been corrupted, plus it was man-made. The channels had been corrupted for a very long time. It had already even started to fester. The question remained unanswered. When did Ho Yu get sick after all? Instead, the girls were more concerned about whether Qin Xuan could heal. Su Yun finally admitted that Ho Yu's illness started about 5 years ago. But she promised to tell the rest later. It was very good that Qin Xuan was around. 5 years ago. Back then, Ho Yu was only 19 years old, and she was still practicing with damaged channels. What kind of strain she was putting herself through. Ho Yu wanted to get up as soon as she woke up, but her brother ordered her not to move at all. Even though she was worried, she wondered if she had frightened her little brother. The damaged channels were no good, but thanks to the secret of eternal youth, Qin Xuan would be able to comprehend the true knowledge that would help restore Ho Yu's qi channels. By combining this knowledge with the art of acupuncture, the desired effect could be achieved. But Ho Yu's channels had been damaged for a very long time. The situation was getting more complicated by the day. We had to hurry. Although sister didn't even recognize it or simply didn't know it, she was certain that it was just a cold. Qin Xuan was indeed very worried after all. His sister's qi channels had been destroyed, and she was telling him not to worry. It was simply impossible to joke around with such things. But what impressed the girls more was that Qin Xuan possessed knowledge of inner strength. Of course, he was well aware of this, so he gave the following instructions. Huo Yu was to stop all her training and give him 1 month. During this time, Qin Xuan would find a way to restore the qi channels. The young man must have decided to make a joke right now, because no one could help Ho Yu, including the Supreme Masters. And if they couldn't, then how can this little guy promise that he can do it in 1 month? What nonsense. Did Qin Xuan even understand what he was talking about and what promises he was making? It was about qi channels, not a simple cold. In order for little brother not to worry, Huo Yu hurriedly reassured him, for as is, the girl was fine now. But it was really nothing like that. She just didn't want to bother her brother. When the disease first started, Ho Yu traveled all over the world to find someone to help her. But even at the Xintao hospital, they couldn't help her. Qin Xuan was quite young and inexperienced. So how could he possibly know about the qi channel recovery technique? But right now, Su Yun had something to say to Qin Xuan. Qin Xuan, although he was related to Ho Yu, but he didn't know how all this happened, Su Yun decided to tell him about it. Even someone as ignorant as Qin Xuan should have known the He family from Jiangnan province. It was a family whose power extended everywhere from trade to politics. The fame of their disciples has reached these parts. Ho Yu was a disciple of He Sheng. She had been cultivating since she was in diapers. She had talent, and the progress from her training was tremendous. Every year, the He family organized a grand event, a martial arts competition. 5 years ago was the first time Ho Yu could participate. In her years, she had such power and ability that there wasn't a single family from Jiangnan who didn't envy her. That day, she went to the competition even though she was discouraged. But she was sure that everything would go smoothly. But unfortunately, there was an accident in the last battle. Su Yun was also there to support Ho Yu. If only she knew what was going to happen, she would have tried to stop her. But Ho Yu had met a very strong opponent. The green gang fighter was Ling. As soon as the third gong struck, the opponent rushed towards Ho Yu and overpowered her in one move. It was later revealed what he had done, destroyed her meridians. Linga is a green gang fighter, a Dao master with great inner strength. His fame has spread to these parts. In his past life, he was the one responsible for Qin Xuan's father's misfortune. Because of him, his father had to retreat and leave Jiangnan. In the end, the father had to escape, or else he would have been destroyed too. Now Linga has ruined his sister's life. This story had an effect on Qin Xuan. He would probably want to take revenge on this scoundrel. He had caused so much trouble to his family. And for what? Destroying Ho Yu's meridians? His past life has caused so much trouble. Qin Xuan won't rest until he's done with Linga for good. Zhou Gu along with his ward Zhang Hu were waiting for his master, who the servant said would be able to defeat Qin Xuan. It was said that with his abilities, the master would be able to take down Qin Xuan with one left. The master was especially appreciative, forcing the others to equal him. Not even Zhang Hu could reach such power. The weather was perfectly calm. But suddenly a strong wind blew in, blowing dust into my eyes. This was how Zhang Hu's mentor appeared. His appearance was very spectacular. The apprentice was extremely fascinated by his mentor, for indeed he was something to look up to. He was very strong. The apprenticeship was divided into 2 sub-orders. There was a senior master and under him better apprentices. So the senior master addressed this task to one of the better apprentices. Han Fei in turn was Zhang Hu's mentor. The disciple was certain that his mentor possessed such strength that Qin Xuan was a mere magician in comparison. Zhou Gu could only laugh because Han Fei looked like a ragamuffin and hardly deserved the status of a mentor. In any case, the master decided to welcome the man. In order not to appear tactless, Han Fei had just prepared a gift for Mr. Zhou and really hoped that he would like it. In addition, on the way to the forest, Han Fei had decided the fate of one handsome boy who was in this bag. In order to show who Han Fei had caught, he had to cut the bag to shreds, which wasn't too difficult for him. The sack was very heavy, as if an elephant could fit in it, because it rattled very loudly. In front of the lord lay a huge tiger that stood out for its special size. One of its paws was half the height of Mr. Zhou himself. If you looked closely, you could see a mark on his forehead. So this huge tiger was defeated with just one blow. Still, Han Fei managed to impress the Lord. It was evident on his face. With such a master this time, no one will stop Zhou Gu from doing his business. They just wouldn't dare to. Zhou immediately changed his mind about this ragged man. If this little fellow could take down an entire tiger with his bare fist, then what was there to say about Qin Xuan? Old man Mo will see his entire family die very soon. Finally, dinner began. At the table, Qin Xuan dared to say that he wanted to move to another house. And here's my sister's reaction to it. She was clearly against the move, and she didn't think it was possible. And yet she was the first to give in. Qin Xuan had once decided to never call his parents again, even if they were on their deathbed. But now he had so easily decided to live on his own. Still, Qin Xuan should have thought it over better. After all, he didn't have such a large stipend to live on his own. Besides, Huo Yu was very worried about him. Su Wen didn't understand what scholarship we were even talking about. This guy had a huge mansion in Jiangnan, and his own sister didn't even know about it. Well, the friend was not in a hurry to go through with it. Qin Xuan decided to tell everything himself about it. Besides, that mansion they could all move in and settle there perfectly. And this house could be rented out and no longer worry about money. The mansions in Yuming District were worth at least 10 million, so where did Qin Xuan get this money from? The older the guy got, the crazier he got. His sister didn't believe him, so he decided to work things out on his own. After all, he was a summer boy and didn't want to prove anything to Ho Yu. It had already been a few days, but Qin Xuan and Xiao Wu were still discussing, and their relationship, the fact that they were walking hand in hand, was proof of that. But it seemed like someone didn't care about this very much. At any given moment, Qin Xuan was most worried about his cultivation. He didn't have a soul crystal anymore, and if he did, he could cultivate faster. He would use up the crystal's internal energy to cultivate in 3 days. There was a lot of energy in nature, and this affected his cultivation speed. Qin Xuan was walking his way, but suddenly the high school students wanted to chat with him. In his past life, Lu Yunfang had often bullied him using his strength, and now he was prying at Qin Xuan again. The situation was clear to everyone that Lu Yunfan had just sicked on Qin Xuan to teach him a lesson. Last time, Xuan had roughly disagreed with Liu Ming, and now he would get his ass kicked, even knowing the situation. The classmates didn't get involved in this fight. Lu Yunfan was also concerned about Qin Xuan's relationship with Xiao Wu, which was why he was now lashing out at the young man. But even so, what did they care who was dating who? Yes, only Qin Xuan had gotten caught up in his games, so he was now receiving a hello from Liu Ming. What a pity that Qin Xuan didn't need this greeting at all. Qin Xuan was not the kind of boy in the past who could be mocked and insulted. Now he was able to respond to any unflattering remarks towards him. Everyone had to respect everyone's personal space. And in order to make this clearly clear, Qin Xuan had to make this clear. The cheers didn't end there. His companions also wanted to smash Qin Xuan, moreover, to avenge their friend. Only they didn't have the strength to retaliate. Qin Xuan scattered all those scum with one right. Maybe after that, they would realize something. Qin Xuan's strength was very huge and did not leave the spectators indifferent, for no one had ever seen him like this before, single-handedly taking down 5 senior guys in a few seconds. This guy was definitely a worthy opponent for Liu Min. In addition, Qin Xuan turned out to be a dark horse. This rabble hasn't helped Liu Ming in any way. Sooner or later he'll have to figure it out on his own. Mole, if Qin Xuan was lucky now, then let him not think that it would be okay next time. Xiao Wu in turn felt guilty because she was making the guy uncomfortable with her appearances to him. But if you look at these guys, could it have been an inconvenience? What's there? Let Lu Yunfang also say hello to Liu Ming. Why be beaten up for nothing? Liu Ming decided to do what he wanted to do, through other people's hands, but ended up defeated, through his own stupidity. This situation served as a lesson to many. Qin Xuan's authority was greatly enhanced. It was unlikely that anyone would dare to just molest him now. But just as Liu Ming promised, he kept his word. He would not let Qin Xuan get away with this disgrace. This time, our hero was challenged to a fight by Zhao Mingyu. If he is not a coward, he should come out to fight. The proof of the summoning was a letter. The news excited every disciple, but Qin Xuan took the invitation quite normally. Now everyone will switch from gossiping about his relationship with Xiao Wu to his upcoming fight with Zhao Ming, as Meng De's friend immediately begged him not to agree to this fight. Because this guy Zhao Ming was a taekwondo master, and besides, he could take down 8 people in a second. Once a gang of 10 people showed up at the school. All of them were looking for Zhao Minyu. But in the end, they paid for it, because he scattered them. and they could not oppose him anything else. Zhao Ming was known to Qin Xuan because he was running around and seeking attention from Shinji. Taekwondo compared to the Tao technique should be nothing. Tao was much deeper and more diverse than any invented technique. Therefore, this gave Qin Xuan confidence. Just as Qin Xuan was remembering his sister, that was how she appeared looking for him. Usually besides the notations, the girl couldn't say anything to him. So Qin Xuan immediately warned her to leave, and if she came for that. The news that a duel was brewing between him and Zhao Minyu spread quickly and reached his sister who was against the fight. Was Shinji really so afraid that her brother would beat up her suitor? The girl wasn't really worried about him, but about Qin Xuan. This guy was annoying her, and he was giving her a hard time. And as for Qin Xuan, if that fool harmed him, then everyone would be in trouble from Huoyu. Originally, Qin Xuan had actually thought of ignoring Zhao Ming's challenge. But now his decision had changed. He dares to molest Shinzi, the sister of his future lord. Now he has a reason to go to this duel. Qin Xuan finally decided to come out, and warned his sister that this creep wouldn't even have time to injure him before he would win already. Shinzi tried to counter something, but her brother proposed a bet. If he wins, Shinzi will never tell him what to do again. But if he loses, then he will study hard. The bet was made. Qin Xuan was not the best student. There were 730 students in the school. Among these children, Qin Xuan was ranked 727th. It would indeed need some coaching. Everyone was extremely curious whether Qin Xuan would still show up or not. Rumor had it that as soon as this guy saw the envelope, he immediately shit himself with fear. If Qin Xuan was able to defeat Lu Yunfan, then he must not be that easy. And if Qin Xuan doesn't come to the duel, then he is not worthy of being Zhao Ming's opponent at all. Although this guy already has the courage to have an affair with Xiao Wu herself. But once he shows up for the fight, Zhao Ming promised that he was doing it properly, and Qin Xuan wouldn't even make it to the hospital in time. More than half an hour had already passed and Qin Xuan still hadn't shown up. Not only Zhao Ming was waiting for him, but also the other disciples were all curious to see this fight. Even Liu Ming had a better opinion of him. What kind of coward Xiao Wu had chosen. The guys were already cheering that they had overestimated the kid and his courage because he didn't even dare to show up for the fight. But it wasn't evening yet. Qin Xuan had originally decided to come, so he came, even though he was a little late. But a deity is allowed to come, right? The girls were excited. They were very worried about Qin Xuan, and the disciples started to chatter more and more that Qin Xuan didn't chicken out and came after all. In addition, quite a bit of attention was also paid to the girls who had come to support Qin Xuan. Shinzi had of course come to cheer for Qin Xuan, and Zhao Ming had already expected that she had come to see him. What disappointment awaited him that he had deceived himself. Meanwhile, Qin Xuan gazed into the faces of Liu Ming and Zhao Ming, as if remembering something. But still unable to find the answers in his head, he just decided to ask which one? And where is that Zhao Ming? To think a guy dares to come here without even knowing his opponent? Is he sure he's not crazy? Finally, that same famous Zhao Ming dared to appear right in front of Qin Xuan's face, who looked down on him. Zhao Ming did not call Qin Xuan to fight, but to teach him a lesson. Besides, as far as he knew, Shinzi didn't like Qin Xuan, and mentally, Zhao Ming was dedicating this fight to her. But she wouldn't be rooting for him. This pompous boor showed himself long ago and did not deserve attention from this girl. No one knew whether Qin Xuan would win or lose, and yet the girls trusted that he would win. Some scum had once again decided to remind the social status for Qin Xuan, and the difference between the scum and the upper class. You couldn't think that if someone knew how to swing his fists a little, he was immediately allowed to do anything. Master Zhao Ming had always told him that politeness was a sign of respect for one's opponent. But Qin Xuan was not an opponent. Therefore, Zhao Ming had nothing to respect him for. But I wonder if Zhao Ming always said such nonsense before a fight. Oh, or maybe the master taught him how to talk such nonsense. This was the last straw. Now Zhao Ming had something to kick Qin Xuan's ass for. I wonder how he would be able to do that. The Tao was perfect. It didn't require any unnecessary movements, like in Taekwondo. At the same time, the blows had a special power. The higher the strength level of the Tao follower, the more effective and less energy-consuming were the blows themselves. Would the opponent dare to continue fighting after this, or would he admit defeat? This fight was a clear indication of the perfection of Tao technique. Zhao Ming made so many unnecessary movements before striking, while Qin Xuan didn't even move. Sis, on the other hand, just found out that her brother had learned how to fight. Zhao Ming, a master Taekwondo athlete, was defeated in one punch by an unremarkable junior high school boy. But Zhao Ming's stubbornness prevented him from finishing the fight. Now, after such a blow, Qin Xuan would have to pay double. A new fight broke out. Zhao Ming began to stomp in one place like a chicken on a chicken. thus demonstrating his professionalism in fighting. Finally, after a while, the opponent deigned to do a somersault and flew towards Qin Xuan, who had continued to watch him the entire time. It seemed like his landing would not be very soft. Qin Xuan didn't even deign to extend his hands from his pockets, for he only needed one leg to ward off the blow. Perhaps this show could have lasted longer, thus fueling the interest of the spectators. But unfortunately, Qin Xuan's opponent preferred pathos-based strikes that were not particularly effective. Because of this, his defeat was proven a second time, and many disciples witnessed it, realizing how much Qin Xuan's strength exceeded that of a taekwondo master. Before starting the fight, Zhao Ming had thrown around so many pathos phrases, thereby showing off his bright rooster feathers, that Liu Ming ended up having to complain to Qin Xuan for punching too hard. This was just a competition, but Liu Ming probably wouldn't even be able to survive the punches Zhao Ming received. The victory was in his face, although it was small, but it was still nice. Now Sister Xin wouldn't be bothering him with her lectures. Shinzai was really happy that he was the one who won, even though she was so afraid that he would lose. In any case, since he had won, he could at least hit lighter and take pity on his opponent. By the way, Zhao Ming was already spitting blood. The girl had completely forgotten about their argument, but she caught herself just in time to start pointing at her brother. Xiao Wu was happy to congratulate Qin Xuan on his victory. After all, she was rooting for him. Zhao Ming, this piece of shit wasn't even worthy of consolation. Qin Xuan's technique could easily kill a mere human. Besides, this kid can still be in the hospital for a long time, and while he's lying there, he wouldn't dare to bother Xinzi. This phrase made many things clear. Qin Xuan was not fighting for his honor, but for his sister's safety. Still, her little brother was very worried about her, as even Xiao Wu could notice. Only, his sister couldn't admit it and thought, or at least covered up, that this fight was because of Xiao Wu. These two were not badly acquainted, but still, Xiao Wu still didn't understand what this guy's secret was. Meanwhile, after school, Liu Ming hurriedly approached Mr. Liu, who was busy playing billiards. Without wasting a second of the gentleman's precious time, Liu Ming immediately broke the not comforting news that Zhao Ming had been defeated by Qin Xuan. What is it but a curse? First Lu Yunfang and now this one. Where did an ordinary kid get such strength from? This kid was from the Qin family, which spoke of his lowly position. Who does he think he is now? Zhao Mingyu was still the pride of Han Feng School, and Qin Xuan had made a mess of things. Now Master Han Feng would not be left out. Besides, Zhao Mingyu's father was the strongest in this city. Even if Qin Xuan escaped from the master, he wouldn't be able to escape from his furious father. Generally speaking, Qin Xuan had already been given a death sentence, and Zhao Mingyu's father Zhao would do all the dirty work for them. It won't be long before the fun begins. The important thing is to relay all the news to Han Feng's school. Zhao Ming's master, Li Shisheng, was the winner of the regional martial arts competition. He was definitely very dangerous, and could break a wall with a single swipe of his finger. Qin Xuan, although he knew how to fight, but he was no match for Li Shisheng. Xinzi still continued to ponder over Qin Xuan's past action. Moreover, she did not expect him to fell her ex with one hand at all. Thoughts that this fight was for her sake, and that her brother had managed to beat her annoying earner, warmed her. Not everything was spent in the relationship between Qin Xuan and Xinzi, but one had to come to one's senses. Although Qin Xuan could fight, but would his fists be able to feed him? His grades were the worst. Sister already regretted agreeing to this bet at all, but she couldn't keep her word either. If Qin Xuan was not diligent in his studies, the gap between him and the others would only widen. There were some things that were not solved by fighting. Qin Xuan was able to kill Zhao Ming himself with a single limb. Moreover, such a powerful man. But on the other hand, how could he lose to some taekwondo? Meng De thought in his head that anyone who looked down on taekwondo did not live long. But looking at Qin Xuan, who was really strong and also rich and powerful, one could change his opinion. Qin Xuan, on the other hand, received a new letter on the same day after the first battle. Who was it? He received a challenge from Han Feng School. Since their top student had lost, the school needed to restore their reputation, which was not surprising. Where had this Qin Xuan gotten himself into? After all, Han Feng School was full of strong fighters. But alas, Qin Xuan was not interested in this challenge. He had nothing to fight against those dead people. But in general, it seemed impossible not to accept someone else's challenge, according to Liu Ming's logic. Or else you would be considered a coward. If Qin Xuan refused, then he was automatically counted as a defeat, which meant he would bring change to Zhao Ming and the entire school. To which Meng De immediately protested. but no one talked to him. Or was it that he was so matured because Qin Xuan was his friend? Either way, in Liu Ming's opinion, they were both brats. Mengdi seemed to be ready to rush over and punch this Liu Ming in the face, but Qin Xuan called out to him. After all, this scoundrel wasn't worth wasting time on him. But that annoying fly, he couldn't get away. Qin Xuan wanted to break up with him nicely, but he had already turned into a blatant threat. Qin Xuan had to explain the situation clearly, so that Liu Ming would properly remember who he was addressing and how. It was too much chatter, but next time if this happened again, Qin Xuan would have to slap this asshole even harder than his beloved Zhao Ming. Oh well, how dare he hit him? Qin Xuan only stroked Liu Ming's head, that's all. What kind of punches were we talking about? In any case, if Liu Ming approaches Qin Xuan again, he's screwed. This puppy should have gotten his stuff and gotten the hell out of here as fast as possible before he ran into more trouble. However, as it happened, the impudent man ran away with his tail between his legs, or His Majesty will punish him again. Mengda, on the other hand, was still afraid of whether Qin Xuan was still going to accept that challenge after all. In fact, there was nothing to worry about for his friend, because such trifles did not interest him. Not his level. The Hanfeng school had quite a few excellent fighters who were Zhao Ming. In addition, his master was the martial arts champion of this city, Li Shisheng. Mengdi could only guess who had a grudge against his friend, but no matter what, Li Shisheng was a very fearsome opponent. Everyone was immersed in their own thoughts. Qin Xuan began to remember about spiritual sight. It was supreme knowledge, just like the path of 1,000 nights. He had learned so many things, but here was the path of immortals. This was his unfulfilled dream. He could only visualize it in his mind. The Thunder Palm, the Heavenly Seal. This was what he could study at his current level. Thunder Palm was an ancestral art. The training for this technique is very severe. It required hard training to incandescent one's palms with qi to the very limit. But then, it was possible to create an entire storm with just one palm. In the past, cultivators with low qi control could blow themselves up when learning this technique. It was dangerous to a technician's health if they didn't know how to handle qi. In his past life, Qin Xuan had trained this technique for several decades, but still managed to reach perfection. The Thunder Palm had 3 levels: Jade Palm, Thunder Bone, and Purple Thunder. Right now, Qin Xuan's skills weren't as good compared to the past, but he knew this technique thoroughly. He just needed to tune in and enter the right state. The ability of the Jade Palm was to sweep away mountains. Qin Xuan would start with this. As for the Heaven Seal, it was one of the 3 most important spiritual phenomena. As for the Heavenly Seal, it was one of the top 3 most important spiritual phenomena. But if one did not know how to use it, and the owner did not concentrate properly, the power of the seal would sweep away everything in its path. Knowing all these details, Qin Xuan would be able to improve faster than in his previous life. There was a noise along the corridor. It was Xinzi shouting and calling for help. Something had happened to Xiao Wu. The girl was attacked. Qin Xuan, without even recognizing any details, immediately rushed over to his friend. She was sitting near some tree, and many students were crowded around her. Everyone kept saying that it was all because of Qin Xuan. You see, he came, and he should be ashamed that he couldn't even protect his girlfriend. Xiao Wu had not talked to anyone before this, but Qin Xuan finally told her that his gift book had been stolen. No one could do anything. Everyone was just watching the girl, and now Qin Xuan judging how bad he was. Realizing the whole situation, he asked the girl not to move. After bending down, he took her in his arms like a little girl. Qin Xuan was not afraid to do such things in public. He was more concerned with the girl's condition. Qin Xuan noticed that his friend was slightly injured, and so that she wouldn't have trouble walking, he decided to personally carry her to the hospital. But from Xinzi's side, it looked like he wanted to grope her. But really, this moment was quite intimate for both of them, although Qin Xuan tried not to show any of his feelings. Xuan completely, in a gentlemanly manner, carried the girl to the hospital, helped her take off her shoes there, and decided to personally handle the treatment. But the sister didn't change, and continued to give her admonition to stop harassing Xiao Wu. But it was as if he didn't hear her, but did his own thing. Using his abilities, he skillfully treated Xiao Wu's leg, who was so embarrassed by the intimacy created between them. Although it was a necessity, they probably enjoyed interacting with each other. But the most surprising discovery for Xiao Wu was that the guy had learned how to heal. Xiao Wu's ankle felt much better in an instant. It was asked how did he do it. It would not make much sense if I went into detail, so he answered briefly and clearly that he knew about medical techniques. Having dealt with the most important things, one could also move on to the secondary matters. Qin Xuan wanted to find out who had stolen the book. In this life, anyone who dares to touch Qin Xuan's friends and family will not live long in this world. Did Xiao Wu know whether or not this guy was from Hanfeng School? But it was clear to an idiot that he only wanted to provoke Qin Xuan. That was why her friend asked that Qin Xuan didn't fall for such provocations. Besides, she was already fine since the injury was minor. But it was as if he didn't hear the girl and immediately dialed the number of his mutt Longgay. He, in turn, heard about Hanfeng High School. Longgay was given only 1 day for this place to be leveled. That's how business people's affairs were handled, and you didn't have to get your hands dirty. Meanwhile, at the school itself, Zhao and Gaoteng returned to training. Masters give assignments to their apprentices who have already completed them. You know what kind of assignment is meant. It is very mean of masters to teach such things to their children. Zhao Mink was now considered a weakling in Hanfeng, and yet the school still wanted revenge. After all, it was her reputation. The guys felt bad for beating the girl. After all, she was still very pretty, but what could they do? Their target was Qin Xuan, and then Xiao Wu happened to fall into their hands. But finally, the master covered everyone's mouths, because Zhao Ming had lost. If they avenged him this time, what if the whole school avenged everyone else? Hu Hai had been learning taekwondo since he was in diapers. He was currently a black belt, and had also won gold medals in international competitions. But the other master asked Hu Hai not to be so strict, even though it was quite fair. Shin Bison was a black belt in taekwondo, and a man of ill repute. He participated in international competitions, where his opponents were eliminated under secret circumstances. He had not won a single bout by fair means, but the headmaster was of a completely different opinion. The masters were only angry for nothing after all. Zhao Ming had only lost the fight because he was weak, and there was no place for weaklings here. The master grew stronger and more ferocious every day. The disciples even suspected that he was not human. No matter how weak Zhao Ming was, his opponent dared to insult their martial art. Now, will every lowlife insult the school in taekwondo? Master won't allow it. But their enthusiastic speeches were interrupted by a broken window into which our hero literally flew. Mr. Qin, this is now the only way Qin Xuan will present himself to others. Everyone should respect him, for there is a reason why. Now Qin Xuan wanted to get to the point. What kind of jerk dared to steal his book? The disciples were jubilant that their bait had worked after all, and Qin Xuan had come running to them. But how long would they be happy about it? Qin Xuan was strong enough to blow this entire school to pieces and sizzle everyone with his gaze. He wasn't going to endure any humiliation. Maybe he could write thousands of such books. But this was about his reputation and the safety of his friends. If he let this transgression go, what would happen next? So, to prevent such a thing from happening, he answered all his enemies and was ruthless to every one of them. Qin Xuan stood calmly, but his hands were tense and his eyes were focused. He sensed every movement of his opponents so that he would be ready to attack at any moment. The school children were scared, but also angry. They surrounded him in a semicircle, blocking the paths of retreat. But Qin Xuan didn't even think of retreating. Rather, retreating tactics would be needed by these unfortunate taekwondists. Numbers did not always determine the outcome of a battle. Qin Xuan dared to attack first while they were catching flies. The Dao technique allowed Qin Xuan to easily adapt to his opponent's fighting style, thus surpassing him. Qin Xuan also used his ability to remain calm and concentrated to demoralize his opponent. His confidence and equanimity could cause doubts and fear in taekwondists, which often led to them making mistakes and losing control of the fight. Every taekwondist realized that he still had a lot to learn. It was unlikely that anyone would dare to join Qin Xuan in a new bout, except for a madman or a fool. Disciples were scattered all over the hall, but would Qin Xuan be able to defeat their masters? As the saying goes, until we test it, we won't know. As a result of all the factors mentioned above, Qin Xuan came out victorious in an uneven battle against taekwondo opponents, demonstrating the superiority of his Dao technique. And the old men were just sitting around. Now we'd have to see how many seconds Qin Xuan could handle this old thing. Qin Xuan was not at all pissed off by one of the masters, who was ready to sizzle Qin Xuan. At the same time, the girls came up to the school, watching the fight with tension, afraid that nothing would happen to their boy. Somehow, so-called Master Qin Xuan's technique was not very impressive. It was enough to put up a defense with one hand so that the master couldn't advance any further. Afterwards, he fell down and whimpered from the pain he felt. Mind you, this man wasn't even beaten by Qin Xuan. Our hero just put up a block and nothing more. But even this block felt at such a speed, as if the man had slammed into an iron concrete wall. Fists and legs came together in the fight. Anatomically, the arms were much weaker than the legs, but since Qin Xuan's fist was able to defeat Hu Hai, how dangerous was he? This was the first time even a senior master had seen such a talent. Although he was already quite old, he would surely have a lot to learn from Qin Xuan. As usual, Master would like to settle things amicably, saying that Qin Xuan had done such a bad thing. He came to the school and beat up so many people because of his anger, thus causing a lot of suffering. He should apologize for the pain he caused. That would be the right thing to do. It was a good joke, wasn't it? Qin Xuan could at least laugh for this entire day. Something was going on in the hall. The master flew around Qin Xuan as he stood there, waiting for the right moment to strike. What was the disappointment that this master had wasted so much effort on some mirage? And in general, the mirage technique was very powerful, and said a lot about the opponent. It should be an honor to see such a powerful technique used on one's opponent. But the outcome, of course, was appropriate. This master, as well as the last one, paid for their self-confidence and lack of professionalism in battle. Master had been defeated. Now it was unlikely that he would dare to throw a challenge to Qin Xuan again, or joke with him like this, talking about some kind of apology. Li Shisheng didn't expect to meet such a talented opponent like Qin Xuan at all, so he hoped that he wouldn't waste his time on him now. But was Li Xingxuang worthy of being called Qin Xuan's opponent? Was he even worthy of judging the Tao? A limited man? Did he know the true power of the Tao? What did he know about the number of followers? Li Xingxuang was completely wallowing in ignorance and pathos. Was this man worth Qin Xuan's time? It seems that because of cheeky brats like Qin Xuan, the Tao had fallen into disrepair, Li Xingxuang thought. But now the old man was ready to show the true art of Taekwondo, which he seemed to possess. What a fool he is, of course, but what can you do? Qin Xuan will have to stay late. Li Xingxuang was extremely offended by this young man looking down on him. Now he wished for revenge. He certainly didn't want to kill Qin Xuan, but at the very least, he wanted to cripple him. To do so, he even decided to attack from the back so that he wouldn't miss with a blow for sure. He had put so much power and anger into his palm that he might have never had to use such power before. But only all of this was completely in vain, because even without flying, the Li master hovered in midair, unable to resist Qin Xuan's strength. The Taekwondo master had the honor of experiencing the Thunder Palm technique. So far it was only the first level of the Jade Palm, but even that was enough for such a weak master. Qin Xuan repelled his attack with one left hand. Seemingly, how was this even possible? Surprisingly, Master Li did not even fall down like his predecessors, but managed to stand on his two legs. Li Xingxuang now realized who he was dealing with. This was a real cultivator. The kind of cultivator he had yet to grow up to. But will he give up so quickly? He'd better give up if he's thinking of attacking again. But his self-preservation instincts weren't working, or didn't exist at all. It was about his reputation, his big name as a great master. How could he give up with so many students? Qin Xuan preferred to continue using the Thunder Palm technique. But Master Li had to refer to his greatest strength, or else he risked losing, with the most shameful outcome. But he had already lost long ago once he decided to enter this fight. Qin Xuan's strength was many times greater. No wonder some master was defeated. The great Taekwondo master, winner of the 3rd regional competition, lost to Qin Xuan. Now our young hero is a star. No matter what the fighting style was, Qin Xuan could beat anyone. Hopefully, Master Li has finally realized the meaning of the Tao. But what's the point, since his limited mind won't even allow him to use the technique? Mengdi had seen the middle of the fight, but it was enough for him to be completely shocked. Words were unnecessary, for his friend had defeated the one that everyone whispered about and feared. But in the end, the purpose of this fight was the book, and his and Xiao Wu's honor. The girl still couldn't believe that the guy had gotten into such a fight for her. It was only a book. But if Xiao Wu loses it again, it's not a problem. Qin Xuan will be happy to write her another one. 1 man against 100. Qin Xuan had completely dispersed the entire Hanfeng school. The entire school could see those taekwondists running away from the hall to avoid being caught in the hot hand. The rumors were different, but the fate was the same. Qin Xuan, and it was best not to quarrel with him. And most importantly, he stood up for Xiao Wu. How can they not be considered a couple now? There were few times when a normal friend would agree to go to such a fight for his girlfriend. But it was true. Meanwhile, on the same day, Hanfeng Taekwondo School. No, there was no construction here. It was a building being completely demolished. Qin Xuan didn't throw words around, and Long Ge couldn't disobey him. As promised in one day, this place was leveled in one day. As the saying goes, man said, man did. Qin Xuan may have looked like an ordinary child with a poorly developed intellect before, but now the people close to him had rethought it and realized that they had been completely wrong about him. With the special items, Qin Xuan's spirit power increased tenfold. But the problem was that there were very few such items in this world. Qin Xuan could believe that he had collected almost half of the available ones. The Thunder Palm technique was not mastered in a day. To master it, one had to harness the power of thunder, and to do so, one had to harden one's palms so that they could withstand this power. With the help of the Secret of Youth and similar training, Qin Xuan could already use the first stage, which was the Jade Palm. The progress of his training was making a difference. The limit seemed to have been exhausted, and it was unlikely that Qin Xuan would be able to use this technique for another month. Too bad our hero was planning to reach the Thunderbone. To do that, we needed to store the energy of natural thunder. Mere electricity wouldn't do much for that. At school, Qin Xuan practically became a star. The girls were enamored of him, a real prince, and the guys admired him and his strength. Qin Xuan was about to leave when he was jumped on by Meng De, who wanted to give him a letter, a friendly letter. It wasn't a love letter, but our hero did not want to accept this letter and asked to throw it away. Really, why would he do that? He had a girlfriend, Xiao Wu. Why would he accept a love letter? While Meng De was trying to persuade them to take the letter, their path was blocked. Some men were looking for Qin Xuan. There was no way out, so I had to give myself away. The men immediately started with threats, saying if the road of life, then Qin Xuan had to go with them. Of course, Qin Xuan had to do so, and he ordered Meng De to return. Meng De wasn't a fighter, so he wouldn't be of much help to him, and he didn't want to involve his friends in such matters. Zhao Mingyu had friends among the criminals. Many believed that these guys had come after Qin Xuan because of the former's fault. These guys were local authorities. They were feared by everyone. Would Qin Xuan get out of this mess? As usual, Xinzi couldn't turn a blind eye and let her brother go. After all, she was responsible for him. The thugs already wanted to do something to this girl, but Qin Xuan made it clear to them that it was none of her business. Besides, if these pseudo-authorities had something to say, they should say it now. Sister Blue was horrified to realize what her brother had gotten himself into. And unfortunately, she couldn't help him either. You could feel the panic and fear in her eyes, in her body. But before all of this could come out, his brother hurriedly reassured Xinzi not to worry. It was unlikely that anyone would dare to do anything bad to Qin Xuan. There was simply not enough strength. From the looks of these criminals, it seemed like this guy had lost his fear. He insulted the Zhao family and now he's disrespecting them. They'll make him regret it. Qin Xuan was eventually brought to some abandoned place where there was no one around. The room he found himself in was like an interrogation room. No one was allowed in here without the boss's permission. It was actually the father of the negligent Zhao Ming who decided to defend his son's reputation. These people thought they were judges and decided to determine Qin Xuan's fate on their own, but they lacked justice. Their pompousness and pathos prevented them from seeing things as they were. The son of these authority figures wanted to swing his legs around, and then he wanted to fight. If he wanted to fight, he got what was right. You didn't have to get cocky. But his father planned to handicap Qin Xuan and hit him back several times harder than he hit his son. As they say, there's always bigger fish to fry. But I guess they didn't know they were just eggs in the sea. The two thugs immediately attacked with their nunchucks at Qin Xuan, who was cornered. But for such an experienced Dao cultivator, this was no problem at all. The first thing Qin Xuan did was to take away their weapons that they didn't even know how to hold. Our hero was getting more and more fed up with these situations, but he was also getting tougher as he did so. No mercy for the enemy. He wasn't going to kill them, of course, but maim them. Why not? These under-authoritarians need to rethink this whole situation. Not that Xuan Xuan took pleasure in hitting someone, but when a person deserved it, he would do it with a special spirit. Zhao Ming's father was left alone. Now he had no one to ask for help. As they say, they caged the tiger. Right, now we have to pay for it. His last chance was some poor stun gun, nervously. But the man could threaten them with the hope that he wouldn't get one. But hope is always the last to die. This stun gun won't even leave a scratch on Qin Xuan, but the kidnapper will pay for his stupidity. There was a tremendous amount of tension in the room. The man visibly decided to recharge Qin Xuan a bit, trusting that it would do him harm. Originally, Qin Xuan had already thought of letting this poor man go, but he himself was so intent on death, so let him not blame Xuan now. No weapons, no strength, no skills Zhao father had, and all of it would be completely meaningless against the young man. The son and the father were both so insolent and petty, capable only of talking about nothing. Danger hung in the air like that. The man decided then to get out of here quickly so he wouldn't get hurt after all. But people like him never change. They're just worthless people, attacking a high school student in broad daylight. Now, they're going to get Kara. Now this poor man will learn what electricity is, and know the power and strength of Mr. Qin. There was nothing left of these people, whether they were still alive or not. Was still unknown, and what did it matter? It was better to get rid of such lowlifes, which was what Qin Xuan wanted. Yinling was a little late with her help, but she apologized to her master. Anyway, everything turned out fine, and Qin Xuan did fine. He hadn't really expected to see the girl here. It must have been a serious matter for her to come like that. Yinling appeared because of Li Wentao, that artifact seller. A few days after the auction ended, his corpse was found in a field. It was most likely the work of Zhou Guqin. Let's say the information was interesting, but what did Qin Xuan care about it? The main thing here was that his mentor was a revered master of the art of feng shui, Chen Fuyun. That Zhou had killed Li Wentao was understood by everyone. In addition, Chen Fuyun had learned that Qin Xuan had exposed his disciples' lies, and now he was looking for Qin Xuan to fight. This was an interesting situation. This hermit had suddenly returned to the world and was looking for Qin Xuan to fight him. And actually, Chen Fuyun was on a completely different level from the same Wentao. Their strength was in a big gap. Chen Fuyun was one of the strongest masters of the art of feng shui. One day, he used his technique to kill the outstanding practitioner Chen Jibai. If one were to compare this master to Grandpa Mo, Chen Fuyun had a much better understanding of the way of Tao. Chen Jibai was truly a worthy practitioner. He had excellent abilities. What Li Wentao used was remotely similar to the true skill of the feng shui current hermits, so Chen Fuyun might actually prove to be a strong opponent. Qin Xuan was curious to test his skills on another practitioner. Hence, it was necessary to return to the Moon Sea Pearl as soon as possible. It was only a pity that there were no more artifacts left. But perhaps Chen Fuyun would have some yes. Now the question is how much time is left in this fight. Exactly 10 days later on the Qin Haohao liner, a battle will be fought. This liner was the property of Chen Fuyun himself. With this battle, he wanted to start his journey of conquering Linhai. The old man wanted to show his greatness at Qin Xuan's expense. Comfortably, of course, he tried to fit in. It's funny, over the centuries, various talents had come to Qin Xuan to defeat him in battle, but all they were left with was dust and bones. This was why Qin Xuan was a great ruler in the past. This status was not given for nothing. But it turns out there are still people who try to assert themselves at the expense of a great ruler. It won't be long before the world realizes who will be their leader. It's him, Emperor Qin Xuan. The time given to him before the fight, our hero had spent in cultivation. During this time, he was able to increase his skills by 3 steps. If he increased by 1 more, he would be able to train the way of Tao at a higher level. With this, he would be able to accumulate so much qi that it would be enough to create a golden body. The golden body would essentially turn Qin Xuan's body into a kind of magical artifact, making it strong and even bulletproof. The golden body was an element of modern self-defense like body armor. Although it showed skillful practice, it was still a long way away from Qin Xuan's true Tao. Shaowen quickly brought his master to the liner. Jingshui was the liner's 3rd stop. The next one would be at night in Gunhai. The liner was operating normally. Xiao Yi also hurriedly notified the master that Mo Zhengdu had started cultivating in seclusion since he obtained the Linshu formula. The 2nd master was also present today. If Mr. Qin wished, he could meet with him. Besides, Qin Xuan could always turn to Xiao Yi if he needed anything. Not only Qin Xuan was on the liner, but also his friends. This beautiful Xiao Wu dazzled not only men but also girls with her beauty. Her attendant Liu Yun sincerely hoped that Xiao Wu liked the liner. After all, he was the best entertaining vessel. But the girl didn't seem to be very impressed. Suddenly among the crowd, she saw Qin Xuan, who was impossible to reach. Liu Yun was already getting worried, and assumed that the girl had imagined it. After all, this place was not for poor people like Qin Xuan. It was unlikely that he would be able to get in here. Well, Xiao Wu would soon know the difference between him and Qin Xuan. To think that a high society girl fell in love with a beggar is a fairy tale. Moreover, Xiao Wu was the real princess of the Xiao family. No one could allow her to hang around with some poor man. In another part of the liner, father and brother were discussing Yin Ling, who had come to Jingshui. Father was unhappy with her behavior, as this girl was letting herself go too much. Despite her age, she showed no interest in the family business at all. Yinling didn't understand anything about martial arts, but she was still flitting between influential personalities. But the uncle rushed to protect his niece. After all, Yinling still had a predisposition to cultivation, even though she didn't notice it. Besides, Mr. Sun Lao had promised to take her to Jingshui together with Mo Zhengdou. By the way, there were also some rumors about what had happened in Jingshui. It was known that a stranger had cured the wound of Mr. Mo Zhendau's father, but whether it was true or not, no one knew. Only it wasn't the stranger, but Master Qin. It was rumored that he was incredibly strong and could control thunder. Master Qin broke Li Wentao's technique and scared Zhou to death. It was because of this that it became obvious that such a master technician could easily heal Mo Zhengdou. This information turned out to be as in magnification or misinformation. It was hard to believe that such a master even existed at this time. He knew of only one person who could do such a thing, and his name was Chen Fu Yun. But Chen Fu had practiced for many years to reach this level. Today, he would fight Master Qin, and then he would put the insolent man in his place. Chen Fu Yun's killing technique is so powerful that even an internal force expert will be defeated. Only a legendary inner strength master would be able to defeat Chen Fu Yun. Therefore, the interlocutor really hoped that Mo Zhengdou would give him a helping hand in an emergency. However, if something were to happen to Master Qin, Father would most likely be extremely displeased. While they were discussing Mr. Qin, he just came to them. The man immediately noticed a very important detail, that this young man had a very confident expression on his face. Xiao Yi still observed such formalities towards the second master, which he was pleased with. They could finally see Mr. Qin of Jingshui in person, about whom there had been so many rumors lately. But only his indifferent and disinterested gaze could be caught in response. No one expected Master Qin to be so young. Surely everyone must have thought that they would see some old man. Therefore, their reactions were forgivable. One could even assume that Qin Xuan had been practicing martial arts since birth. So what? Chen Fuyun was still a genius amongst the other masters. If this young man came face to face with Chen Fuyun, he would surely be the end of him. Being masters, they noticed that Mr. Qin's strength was much stronger than Mo Zhenfeng's. It was almost as dense and strong as steel, which was quite entertaining. All this time the men were silent. But finally, the senior master decided to break the silence and express what everyone was thinking now. Why is Master Qin so young and so strong? Was Mr. Qin familiar with Chen Fuyun's real strength? The second master kept emphasizing on Qin Xuan's age, besides his father. That is, Mo Zhengdou treated him very well, so he asked him not to risk his life because of anger. Who the hell was Chen Fuyun? In Qin Xuan's opinion, it was just a clown who had escaped from the circus. Just think about it. How could this youngster talk so impudently about Chen Fuyun? That he's some kind of immortal martial artist? It seems that Master Qin really didn't know Chen Fuyun's true strength since he was so arrogant. If Mo Zhengdou valued Xuan, then he was hastily warned. 5 years ago, Chen Fu had managed to defeat an inner strength expert with his killer feng shui technique. What to speak of Qin Xuan? Even the master behind didn't dare to say such a thing about Chen Fuyun. How could this youngster even know about Chen Fuyun's true strength? If he was so confident, then let Song Lao test him, suggested the second master. If Qin Xuan lost, he would hide in the liner and give up the battle with Chen Fuyun. Oh, why did second master make Song Lao hurt Qin Xuan? But anyway, why not? At least Qin Xuan will have some fun before the fight. And it is true what they say, that a newborn calf is not afraid of the tiger. But who is the calf and who is the tiger remains to be seen. The rumor that Master Qin possessed the Thunder Palm technique had reached these old men. Song Lao was excited to see this technique in action. Just in time for this event, Yin Ling had arrived, although she wasn't expected to be here. And yet her mischievous and cheerful mood was transmitted to everyone. It was as if she had removed the tension between the men. Suddenly remembering that there was also Mr. Qin here, she immediately showed him the proper respect and bowed to him. Father was admittedly very surprised by this attitude of Yin Ling towards Qin Xuan. In order for Dad not to be so surprised, Yin Ling hurriedly explained everything to him and where this respect came from. Not only had Qin Xuan cured Grandpa, but he had also corrected his cultivation technique, which was worthy of respect. But the father had already heard about him after all. His daughter talked about Master Qin very often. Later, Song Lao would fight Qin Xuan, then the father would want to see his daughter's reaction to what that pseudo-master was worth. The father hoped that once Qin Xuan lost in this battle and his daughter saw the true face of the master, all her feelings would go away as well. Therefore, he asked his daughter to stay. The battle was about to begin. There was nothing to delay. But before it started, Qin Xuan warned that once he started, Master Song Lao wouldn't stand a chance. And Sun Lao wanted to give him a chance to win. Oh, that Qin Xuan has angered the master. He should be in trouble now. Even the other spectators appreciated the power of Sun Lao's punch. It was obvious that he was trying hard and wanted to defeat his opponent. But then again, even the old masters found it very difficult, if not impossible. Qin Xuan easily put out his hand and formed an invisible block, against which Sun Lao could no longer do anything. The punch was completely blocked. If Song Lao had hit harder, he would have surely fallen, but he managed to stay on his feet. His technique was capable of piercing through a sheet of steel 3 fingers thick, and Qin Xuan playfully stopped it with his hand. Master Qin's defense was very strong. But didn't he specialize in medicine and cultivation techniques? Song Lao, who had so much inner strength, was defeated with one hand. Master Qin truly deserved respect. Yet Song Lao found himself using only a third of his true strength. This time, he decided not to hold back, which Qin Xuan was glad about. This time, he really had to strain to muster all the strength he could. Maybe this time he would at least bring some damage to Qin Xuan? It could very well feel that Song Lao Watu attack had stacked all his strength. He hadn't condensed his inner strength yet, but how would he be able to use a gust of qi? Looks like Master Qin was really good. Although Qin Xuan's inner strength was very powerful, he hadn't reached the outer qi level. He was most likely using some kind of artifact. Qin Xuan didn't even start attacking. For the second time already, Song Lao decided to attack first, hopefully gaining some advantage from it. Yinling in turn was very worried about Qin Xuan. After all, this was her uncle's strongest attack. Would Qin Xuan be able to block it? Qin Xuan kept everyone in suspense with his demeanor, but he himself acted as if he was detached from the battle. In terms of self-confidence and strength, he was already winning against his opponent. However, in terms of strength, he was several times better than Sun Lao. Now the master would finally see the thunder palm he had been longing to see. This palm was capable of shattering the heavens. What was there to say about any opponent? Unfortunately, Sun Lao didn't even have time to put up a defense or at least dodge this blow. The palm literally imprinted on his body, thus throwing him far away. The verdict was that Sun Lao had lost, and all 3 of them saw it. Fortunately, the old man was not very infirm, so he did not fall unconscious and could even get up on his own. Who would have thought that this youngster had such great strength? Did they, the old men, judge whether he would be able to defeat Chen Fuyun? Yinling's father in turn admitted his wrongdoing and immediately apologized for his misjudgment of Master Qing. Song Lao was also grateful to the master for sparing him and forgiving his impertinence, and hoped that he would be useful to Qin Xuan in the future. Fast as thunder, calm as water. He had a very ordinary appearance, but behind that appearance he hid a terrifying power. In any case, Qin Xuan didn't hold a grudge against anyone. And this incident once again proved to Yinling how beautiful Qin Xuan was not to be admired. Now the father was not surprised why his daughter was so respectful to Qin Xuan. Yinling already wanted to go with Qin Xuan, but her father warned her to help him if he needed anything. If Master Qin Xuan really likes Yinling, it would be a real blessing for both the girl and the Mo family. Sun Lao felt guilty for letting the second master down, but Qin Xuan's strength was truly beyond comprehension. Who would have thought that the dragon that landed by the sea would turn out to be this young man? Sun Lao thought that this person would be able to reach enlightenment, a powerful master with incredible inner strength. Even in the whole of China, people like him could be counted on one's fingers. Sun Lao was absolutely right. Today's incident served as a lesson for everyone. Yinling's father in turn thought that he was able to recognize people's abilities and understand them. He was so sure of this that he didn't pay any deeper attention to Qin Xuan. Yet, the young man's attitude had changed drastically. One should never judge by appearances alone, as it could be deceitful. However, it was unlikely that Qin Xuan would reveal himself so immediately. The girl had already finished listening to the conversation and made certain conclusions for herself. She had learned quite a lot about Master Qin and decided that it was probably okay for him to join the game. The guys walked around the ship. Yinling was well aware of it and shared some information with Qin Xuan. Jingho had 5 floors, where the 5th floor would have a questionnaire hall. You could taste food and drinks from all over the world there. If the gentleman was interested, it was also possible to go down to the 3rd floor where there were many entertainment venues. Qin Xuan was about to agree, but suddenly someone called out to him. Xiao Wu was finally able to meet Qin Xuan, whose presence she was surprised by, but her companion Liu Yun was extremely displeased. Still thinking Qin Xuan was a poor man, the guy kept wondering, how did this scum manage to get here? Yinling also tensed up when she saw the Xiu family. Xiao Wu's reaction was appropriate to Mo Yingling. In the situation created, the only Qin Xuan was completely calmly accepting everyone and not surprised by anything. After all, he was primarily interested in talking to his friend, so he struck up the first conversation. Liu Yun tried to stand between them and prevent this conversation, but he failed as usual. Xiao Wu already wanted to answer the question of when she arrived here, but she was rudely interrupted by Liu Yun, addressing Qin Xuan in an impolite tone. The one kept pressing his status and insinuating what a poor man Qin Xuan was, and that he didn't belong in places like this. Observing this situation, Yinling literally flared up and became angry. After all, she was quite aware of Qin Xuan's power. Qin Xuan completely ignored Liu Yunfan's provocations. In the end, Yinling stood up for him. How could the person invited by Mo Yinling do such a thing? Not only did that ragamuffin like Xiao Wu, but he was also hitting on other girls. How dare he? Unfortunately, Liu Yun didn't even know who he had the honor of talking to. The girl still had to introduce herself as Mo Yinling. Maybe her name would finally tell him something? Mo Yinling, a girl from the Mo family, the same family from Lin Hai. That guy's confused, of course. Had to slow down a bit with the hit and runs now. Liu Yun didn't even realize how much trouble he could get into with his nasty temper. But fortunately, Yinling was kind and warned for the first time that Qin Xuan is her guest. But if Liu Ming let himself be treated disrespectfully by Qin Xuan, even Liu's family won't save him. Qin Xuan turned out to be the Mo family's honored guest. How come? Had he and his friends despised the wrong person all this time? While some were chatting and some were contemplating their behavior, one girl manager showed up to them. She appeared specifically to Qin Xuan to inquire if this gentleman was interested in the most exciting game of this cruise. Yinling seemed to be aware of this girl, and her gaze was not kind. This girl's name was Lena. She had a very mysterious past. She was now the manager of the cruise ship. Accordingly, she was the boss here. Yinling didn't know her real identity, but the workers on the ship didn't dare to provoke her. There were even rumors that a tycoon tried to woo her. But all his attempts failed, and the next day, he disappeared from the ship. No one from high society even dared to express their displeasure. But before making any decision, Qin Xuan still wondered what the point of the game was. To learn the rules of the game, you had to follow Lena. The guys walked to the floor that was hidden under the table. Yinling couldn't even guess that such a thing even existed here. But Yinling knew otherwise. Qing Hao had cooperated with Chen Feiyun and the overseas army to build this ship. After all the rumors were now confirmed, Qin Xuan tried to woo Xiao Wu a bit, which made Liu Yunfan very angry. But he wasn't going to let him get away with it, even if he had Mo Yinling's support. At last, a staircase led them to a spacious hall, which was expensively decorated. And there it was, the arena itself. Here people were divided into two teams, red and blue. After half an hour, two fighters appeared on the screen. It was pretty simple because it's like modern Japanese martial arts. Two fighters will fight to the death. Win or lose, the outcome is the same. That was the profile of a participant. Of course, if anyone wanted to, they could join the battle where lives were at stake. The rules were quite brutal and did not scare not only the girls, but also Liu Yunfan. But as for Qin Xuan, he was interested in the offer and wanted to pick up his opponent. The first one he came across was Chang Hu, a master of overseas martial arts, trained as an apprentice to Master Lin Ge. The mere image of this bald uncle caused Yinling to have a negative effect. She didn't expect to see him here. It was easy to guess that the girl hated this man, and it was not for nothing, because this bald man had harmed the Mo family, specifically their business and property. If it wasn't for Yinling's father's teacher, it was quite possible that the Mo family would have lost a lot more, and not only money, but also reputation. It looks like Qin Xuan has found an opponent. Before Qin Yuan would speak, a man who was already quite old entered the arena first. This old man's name was Wu Xiaofei. He was from the White Sea faction that the Wu family had taken possession of. It was said that 10 years ago, Wu Xiaofei was an inner strength martial artist, but now he was halfway to the peak stage of inner strength. But the strength of the Wu family was small. They dominated the White Sea city, but they couldn't get the necessary resources to cultivate. Hence, Old Man Wu was still at this stage. Wu Xiaofei could already notice his opponent, who was Chang Hu. He could appreciate how strong his opponent was, as he had something to compare it to. Liu Yunwu's grandfather about Wu Xiaofei even said that his family was very strong. It was rumored that they could pierce through a steel plate with their bare hands, and those who reached the peak stage could dodge bullets. Because of this ability, they were much harder to kill. However, he had heard that here in Jinshui, there was a Master Qin. He was very mysterious, and even a few inner strength warriors couldn't compare to him. Yingling still couldn't figure out which Master Qin was even talking about, but she didn't want to ask. No matter who they talked about, for Yingling, there would be no one stronger than Qin Xuan. To her, he was truly a strong master, and a person worth looking up to. The duel should have already started. Not only Yinling didn't expect to see Chang Hu here, Wu Xiaofei was also surprised to see a master from Haking. He was glad that they had met, and the man wanted to stop talking as soon as possible, and see Linghai's strength. The old man should have written a will, but if he was all Linghai had, then Chang Hu wasn't surprised after all. There were only a bunch of weaklings. The provocation succeeded. Old Xiaofei thought of nothing else but kicking this insolent man's ass. But with this, Wu Xiaofei only piqued Chang Hu's interest. Who will be the stronger of the two? How could this be possible? Wu Xiaofei was still unable to break through his opponent's block, to which the opponent replied that Wu Xiaofei was simply not strong enough to face a foreign martial art. Proving these words, the old man flew off as far as the stairs where his underlings caught him. Had Chang Hu gone too far this time? In fact, he felt he had shown mercy by not killing his grandfather. There was no point in blabbing about it. Chang Hu in turn was already ready to fight again. Who would the manager send to certain death again? The master from the foreign division deserved his title as arrogant and ignorant. Whose words were those? Nervously, Chang Hu looked around for a daredevil. However, the man showed up himself. The man was familiar with Master Chang Hu, wondering how he was doing. And was he the one who sent Chang Hu here? The old man's appearance was very effective. The whole secret was to use qi. Qin Xuan didn't expect such a thing from this man, which was surprising. The first master of Linhai, this was someone who could afford to throw around such provocative phrases. Chen Fuyun is him! The same master who had stirred not only Linhai, but was also famous abroad for his strength and age. Walking on air was a rather defiant way of maintaining one's reputation in Qin Xuan's opinion. It looked mysterious. But it was just a trick and a waste of qi. Oh, and the method could have been simplified. No matter how brash and impudent Chang Hu was, he still respected his elders and to Chen Fuyun first and foremost. But for his own good, Chang Hu would have to repay the insult. Therefore, Chen Fuyun proposed to exchange blows. Before entering the arena, Chang Hu's master had warned about Chen Fuyun, but Chang Hu thought that he had withdrawn and cultivated in seclusion. Chang Hu had just recently entered the inner strength realm and was hoping that Master Chen would give him some advice. And let him not worry, Chang Hu would not be indebted, so he was willing to have a friendly duel with the elder. Master Chen found his friend's disciple rather brash, and yet decided to be lenient just because of his friendship with Master Chang Hu. However, Chen Fuyun hoped that his bald friend would bring certain lessons from this duel. He hoped that Master Chen would forgive him for having such an impudence to start first. So without waiting for a reply, he immediately attacked. The palm strikes seemed strong. Was it the specialty of the style that made it famous? It was rumored that there were 3 directions of this technique, all based on palm strikes. 5 years ago, Chan Hu's master, Lin Gei, traveled to China where he managed to perfect this technique. Many people were hurt by it. Most likely, Chen Fuyun decided to take revenge by maiming his disciple, even not skillfully using the thunder palm. Chang Hu could still feel the powerful aura of the master. It seemed as if it was suppressing qi. But no. It was more likely an array formation. Chang Hu's inner strength was still great. Master Chen could recognize this bald kid's talent. But compared to his master, it was heaven and earth. Chang Hu still had a lot to learn. It was already too late to resist, as the Chen Fuyun technique could not be broken by ordinary attacks. This was Master Chen Fuyun's true strength. 5 years ago, Chen Fuyun could personally witness Lin Gei defeating everyone with a single move. He could catch several dozen bullets. Such scenes could astonish absolutely anyone. But today, Chen Fuyun will show the power of true practice, so that Chang Hu will see the difference between the two. Watching this friendly duel, one could safely say that it was a battle as if between deities. Chen Fuyun has managed to break through to a new level, which he proved right in this fight. Concentrating lightning into sword form. These are 33 elemental lightning swords after all. If they hit Chang Hu directly, there would be nothing left of him. He wouldn't even have a chance to survive. What an offensive old man, after all. Chan Hu's hand was now completely useless to him. Even so, Master Chen was not going to stop there, but only intensified his attack with his second sword. Somehow, his opponent tried to resist the attacks. Luckily for him, at least one sword flew at him. But what would have happened if all 33 swords had flown at him? It would be difficult, if not impossible, to dodge such a thing. Chang Hu was indeed a talented disciple, managing to dodge the sword and afterward even throwing his palm attack. But this attack ended up meeting with Chen's shield. The duel ended. Chang Hu still sincerely admired Master Chen's strength. In addition, he was very grateful for the guidance. The other masters could also see that Chen Fuyun had entered the Dao realm. Furthermore, he was indeed the strongest in Linhai. There were fears that Master Qin was not even an opponent of Qin Fuyun at all. Song Lao felt obliged to warn the young man, for this man was terrifying. The second master was of the same opinion, and he also felt that they should leave the open sea before it was too late. Once the ship started sailing, it would be too late. Now Chen Fuyun was wondering where Master Qin was after all. He demanded his exit immediately, and that he not hide from him. The master's patience was running out. Mentally, Yinling literally prayed to all the gods that Qin Xuan would not go anywhere and stay. After all, these 33 lightning swords looked terrifying. No one would be able to stand against this technique. This girl's excitement seemed to be mentally transmitted to Qin Xuan as well, even though he had spoken differently before. Chen Fuyun was still waiting for Qin Xuan. Laughter had already spread through the hall at the fact that our young man was actually scared. Chang Hu had never heard of Master Qing at all, so how could he compare to Master Chen? Chang Hu had only heard of a young cultivator who excelled in healing. Perhaps if he ran away and didn't show up, he would be better off. Chen Fuyun thought of already undertaking something else, but Qin Xuan was just about to show himself. It would seem like the guy had lost his mind. Liu Yun still didn't realize that Qin Xuan was the famous Qin master who could control lightning and summon dragons from the elements of nature. Because of this, Liu Yun could so easily mock this poor kid as he knew him. He thought that Qin Xuan was trying to impersonate him. Liu Yun didn't even hesitate to mock Qin Xuan's insanity in his voice. He was risking his life to become even a little bit more famous. Qin Xuan himself forced into the tiger's mouth. Thus Liu Yun tried to stop our hero, but he was persistent. He had tried to sneak into the pavilion before, but now he was pretending to be a cultivator. Now Liu Yun wished for his death since he wanted it so badly. Did Qin Xuan not see what the old man could do? Or did he think it was all special effects? Who the hell is that kid? Could it be the real Master Qin? Could it be that the real Master Qin made this poor kid pretend to be him? That brat definitely can't be Master Qin. What kind of prank is this? He must leave the ring or he will be killed. So this is the real Master Qin. Chen Fuyun was not impressed. However, the sympathy between these two was mutual. Master Chen had already assumed that he was being played a joke on, and now he was demanding that Qin Xuan call the real Master Qin, because this kid didn't seem to realize where he was. But what were they even talking about? Qin Xuan was right in front of them, no cheating, but they couldn't seem to believe it, thinking Qin Xuan was some kind of imposter just because he looked young. Especially for this, Qin Xuan had to demonstrate his ability to control the elements. After such an introduction, Chen Fuyun searched for some explanation for this, but there was only one explanation. The person in front of him was indeed Master Qin. After all, it was true that Master Chen had heard before that Master Qin was able to control the elements and transfer form to them, using them as magic. But to truly make sure that Master Qin was in front of him, there was only one way to fight him. This old man had practiced for many years and thus knew some basics. Would Master Qin be able to enlighten him? Qin Xuan didn't quite understand what this old man wanted from him. Was he mocking him or seriously asking him? But still answered. Chen Fuyun simply lacked talent. Even if you explained something to him all day long, he wouldn't understand even a grain of truth. The reply was in Qin Xuan's style, provocative, defiant, and arrogant. Of course, Master Chen was angry, considering himself to be the greatest. Some kid dares to accuse Master Chen so blatantly, so let him show how powerful his technique is. Without any warning, Chen Fuyun began to attack our hero, who as usual did not do anything until now, showing his indifference. This duel evoked different emotions. The girls were of course very excited, especially Yin Ling, who had claimed this guy's attention. Liu Yun, of course, would only be happy to see Qin Xuan's demise, because then Xiao Wu would belong to him. Qin Xuan immediately figured out the secret of the attack. Chen Fuyun had used his ki for such a pathetic spell. How dare he display such a level in front of a true master? But who knows? Maybe he had challenged Qin Xuan to a duel not only to assert himself at his expense, but perhaps to learn his true strength. Chen Fuyun's technique was supposed to pierce through 3 inches thick steel. What about that fool Qin Xuan? After all, only Dao masters could stop these swords with their bare hands. So what will he be able to do? A truly arrogant youngster. No one had yet realized that Qin Xuan was the very same Dao master. Without any trouble, he actually stopped the lightning sword with one hand. The sword in Qin Xuan's hands shattered like glass being swept. Everything happened so fast that Chen felt as if it was some kind of illusion. Still had to admit, Qin Xuan was capable. But would he be able to stop 30 such swords at the same time? Well, let him attack, and Qin Xuan would gladly demonstrate his strength, as well as Master Chen's actual non-talent, thus proving his words. How did this brat manage to stop attacks with both hands at once? As to who Qin Xuan was, Master Chen was not the first to wonder about it. But no one had ever answered this question until now. Chen Fuyun attacked first. Since it was a duel to the death, it was still going on. Now it was Qin Xuan's turn to attack first. Our hero never hid his true identity, but Xiao Wu only realized that Qin Xuan was actually a master, a true cultivator. It seems impossible. How could this ragamuffin be a real Qin master? But compared to him, Chang Hu couldn't even stand up to Chen's 7 swords. And Qin Xuan was able to break them with his bare hands. How could this be possible? Is he a genius of inner strength? A true Tao cultivator? Qin Xuan was quite young but was showing incredible results. However, Chang Hu could judge that he would not defeat Master Chen. His thunder formation possessed unfathomable power and belonged to Dao, not Feng Shui. This technique was comparable to a thunder sword formation. A truly deadly Feng Shui technique. Yet, it was incredible to reach such a level of cultivation at such a young age. It was enough to surpass 90% of the junior masters of this generation. A few more years, and it was conceivable that only a beast from the Lu Northern family, the Jianyang Southern Dragon, and the Sabao people could resist Xuan's strength. But it was only a pity that Qin Xuan still didn't have time to become a master. Perhaps he would have been able to defeat Chen Fuyun in the future, but not today. At this moment, Qin Xuan had no chance at all. Lu Jinyu in the north and He Taishui in the south. Will they be able to resist Qin Xuan with their limited thinking? Well, Chen is a good joker. But it seemed the jokes had stopped, at least for Chen Fuyun himself. This time, he decided to use his full strength. The old man's gone wild. Once again, he assumed his fighting stance, a slight, calm smile appearing on his face. He was ready to continue the demonstration, his body and mind in perfect harmony, ready to show Xuan the true meaning of strength and skill. It was a water spirit. In the cultivation world, it was called a water spirit channel. There were incredibly many of them all over the globe, but some were hidden in mountains and rivers. This one seemed rather shallow, most likely belonging to the latter. Moreover, it was weak compared to the spirit channels in the sea, and it lacked the essence of earth. That was why this old man was so confident, trusting in the great water spirit power, which indeed was not such a thing. To use spirit powers as an anchor with such a low cultivation. Putting out maximum effort, Chen Fuyun would only be able to gather energy comparable to a mid-level condensation and no more. The big snake really scared everyone, and even more so the girls who were worried about Qin Xuan throughout the fight. Chang Hu had already determined the winner for himself. Although what a pity it was, with such talent, Qin Xuan could become a true expert in a few years. He could only blame himself for his failure. Such an inefficient set of formations caused Qin Xuan to feel pity. He even felt sorry for the spirit. Did Chen really enjoy bullying him so much, or was he simply incapable of doing more? Chen Fuyun once again promised Qin Xuan that he would pay for his words. In response, our hero used the Purple Palm technique and the Thunder Jade Palm technique. One man, one palm. Qin Xuan could crush everything in his path. This battle was so trivial, because the techniques Chen Fuyun used could in no way stop Master Qin. The great serpent, which had the spirit of water in it, was torn into small pieces by Master Qin. In the entire fight, our hero wasn't even hurt. Chen Fuyun had no other techniques. All of his skill was just a colorful wrapper for inexperienced fighters. But upon meeting Qin Xuan, all this soapy beauty was shattered in an instant. Truly a clown who had escaped from the circus. That kid won. But what about the famous and invincible Master Chen Fuyun? The spectators were uncomfortable with what they saw. Liu Yun was also extremely surprised that Qin Xuan had defeated Chen Fuyun before his eyes, although he had so hoped for the former's death. If only Hou Yu knew about this and saw this fight, she would definitely be shocked. After all, her brother was incredible. Chen Fuyun, the first master of Lin Hai, was defeated by Qin Xuan, whom he himself had invited to the battle for the sake of his reputation. This is what stupidity leads to. Qin Xuan hoped that this was enough to not show more, and thus not to stain his hands with the old man's blood. Chen Fuyun confessed that he wanted to serve Qin Xuan exactly the same way disciples served senior masters. In addition, half of Chen Fuyun's fortune would now belong completely to Qin Xuan. Whatever Master Qin said, Chen completely agreed, for he had no choice but to submit to the strongest. And it was a very good decision. Even at such an advanced age, old man Chen's mind was not badly working. However, if he refused to obey, he would definitely die. After this battle, it could be said that old Mo had quite a keen eye. But did he really know that this young man was so talented? With Master Qin, the Mo family would prosper more than ever. The second master thought that he was already ready to be the leader of the family. But apparently his father was still better suited for it than he seemed to be. Qin Xuan came out alive and well after the battle. Nothing even happened to him. Lastly, Qin Xuan decided to tell Xiao Wu to tell her and the others to study the treatises. Perhaps after this, there would be someone else who could repeat such a thing. In the meantime, he had other things to do, but for that, he needed Yin Ling's help. Qin Xuan wanted to stay here for another half a month, so he asked for a boat to be sent to pick him up. The Mo family and Yinling were very happy to help the esteemed master in any way and be helpful. Half an hour later, the boat with the two captains was ready. Qin Xuan was on his way to his perfection. If the spiritual channel wasn't already corrupted due to proper use, there was a chance that Xuan could break through. Sensing something, Qin Xuan decided to stop right in the middle of the sea. And after the boat stopped, he stepped through the water like Jesus. Where have you ever seen such a thing? It's a miracle and nothing else, although it's quite common for Shuyang to do this. With his inner ki, Master Qin caused a huge vortex that sucked him into the interior of the sea, straight to the desired location. People could only guess who Master Qin really was. It felt like this guy had become a real demon. Otherwise, how could he have such abilities? Once underwater, he didn't even need to breathe, as if this was a normal habitat for him. Even considering the pressure so far, everything was fine. It was in the exact spot where the strongest concentration of qi was, and the source of the channel was most likely located, from these corals. In that case, in order to test his theory, Qin Xuan had to destroy these corals. If the spiritual water energy was absorbed, there were risks that it would not be enough to form a spiritual sea in Qin Xuan's dantian. The endlessly blossoming secret art needed a spiritual sea to reach extreme conditions. At the same time, it would be used to break through to the next stage, making it doubly difficult for most cultivators. And yet these risks paid off. For this type of breakthrough was the best of both worlds. Meanwhile on the boat, the captains were relaxed at all. Some were sleeping, and some were on their phones. But it was too late for them to notice the Stella Solaris vessel coming toward them. On the ship, a pair of lovers, Lian and Audrey, were watching through binoculars to see who was in the distance and what was happening there. But the situation was not completely clear. Liang may have assumed that if there was someone there, it was just a coincidence, or something had happened. The Rothschild family was related to the Lian family by blood. They were on friendly terms. How could Liang deceive her Audrey? Of course, Audrey trusted dear Lian and didn't doubt her in any way. He was just confused and didn't quite understand. What were they doing there? The servant finally found out, and informed Madame Lian that those two came from the Mo family's ship that Lin Hai. At that place they were waiting for their guests to finish business at that place. Well then, it was good to know that the insignificant Mo family, with so little influence in Lin Hai, was no match for the Lian family. Basically, they could wait a little while for now, about 10 minutes, for these people to leave the place. Otherwise, there would be another shipwreck in this beautiful sea. But there was no joking around. Lian asked her servant for the two of them to leave this area immediately. It wasn't safe here. It was in this place that the descendant of a great monster from the depths of the ocean was discovered. It was only a mythical creature, but extremely dangerous, so no one should have entered these waters. But it seems to be behind this monster Solaris Stella that stopped here, in a place that was bypassed by the 10th road because of its fame. It was not yet known what they wanted to get or find out, but the divers had already started the operation. They could only hope that this time everything would go well. Lian had recently conducted a survey in the area. The sea clearly showed signs of local fauna. However, The snake that the two influential families were looking for was probably sleeping. To afford such expeditions, the family, of course, had great power, as well as influential people. Rhodes, since her last encounter with Leon, as she could notice, had gotten much stronger, which looked quite frightening. Its strength should have been enough to kill an ordinary giant python. And the Leon family guards were not inferior in strength to the snake. Two class of professionals were enough to deal with a mindless beast. It would seem so, but one had to be careful, for this creature had lived for over a century and was still terrorizing these waters. But one detail more didn't change anything, because now they wouldn't back down anyway. All the more Rhodes was willing to give his life and sword, to kill all enemies for the Rothschild family. There didn't seem to be much to worry about with such strong and loyal men on guard. One of the divers had already returned from his mission and was happy to report that he had found the information he needed. Before he even had a chance to come out of the water properly, he immediately gave the computer to his mistress. According to the information, it was necessary to prepare for the sortie and prepare the torpedo. Without wasting a second, Rothschild and Liang immediately gave the order to fire the missiles. Rockets at great speed immediately pierced the seas. It was a very exciting event. What it would lead to. The rocket launch was so huge that the water with its inhabitants went as far as the ship. Meanwhile, Rhodes and the master, after launching the rockets, went to the small boat. And just in time, for they could see the huge serpent they were about to fight. This serpent was not even close to the huge serpent that Rhodes was fighting. It was bigger than the ship itself. Audrey's father would be happy to receive scale armor from such a legendary creature. He could even give it to her grandfather for his birthday. And Audrey and Glory's status in the family would increase, as well as her relationship with her grandfather himself. The serpent finally showed itself. It didn't take them long to accomplish that. But would they regret it? The serpent was extremely enraged and was ready to bite the bow of the boat with his pass. And a small boat would be to the serpent as a fly to an elephant. What to speak about ordinary people with their iron? Confident in his abilities, the master decided to be the first to pounce on the beast in hopes of defeating it in a fight. Chinese art is really incredible. Where else can you see something like this? Lightning fast, the master approached directly towards the mouth of the beast, which seemed to be ready to devour this man. Having found a possible weakness in the beast, Huan drew his dagger and was about to strike. But what would this little knife be able to do against such a great beast? He could literally fly into the jaws of the beast. But something went wrong at one point. The gentleman became agitated, for the matter was not going according to plan, and apparently this serpent was beyond them, even with such masters. The man struck with his sword with all his inner strength, but the same could not penetrate the snake's scales. It was very dense, and iron would not help. The serpent was too strong, and the old man was unable to handle it, so he warned the others to run away. Otherwise, they would be in danger. It would seem that the serpent was about to dive, but it still decided to continue boarding the ship. Rhodes now decided to enter this battle with the hope that his power would be able to do something against this gigantic monster. But the serpent wasn't just famous for its size or strength. It had another ability that made it live out its summers for so long. That piercing serpent gaze began to freeze Rhodes, who was unable to do anything about it. The light frost that was originally there had turned the man into ice. No body was now visible, just solid, thick ice. But the serpent was not going to leave the stiffened figure of a human just like that, and had already used physical force, which shattered the statue of ice into small pieces. Not a trace of the man was left. Rhodes, who served the Rothschild family, died in a fight with a snake. The master of the Lian family asked his mistress to run away from here, and he himself promised to protect her. The black python had an impenetrable defense, and the head was the strongest part of it. Now they were unable to subdue or kill the snakes unless a true practitioner or a master with great inner strength entered the battle. There was not the slightest chance of victory. Master could only gain a few moments before it was too late. Old man Huan asked the lady to leave on the boat, but she was stubborn. Yet, the old man had only recently broken through to the level of a true practitioner. Therefore, he promised that no one from the Lian family would die in front of him. The only thing left to hope for was that the Tao would not let him down. It turned out that the demonic beast was also practicing Tao. The situation was getting more and more interesting. As if summoned by Master Huang, a true cultivator with great inner strength appeared here. Qin Xuan was very happy to meet the sea monster that was sleeping near the water spiritual channel and was constantly absorbing his aura. Well, now he had to deal with it so that no one would steal his possible power. Lian wasn't as frightened by the death of the family as she was by Qin Xuan walking on water. In that instant, she assumed that this young man was actually a true master. Master Huan still hasn't backed down from the battle, and offered our hero to team up with him and go into this fight together. And only together will they be able to defeat this demon. But it was just an ordinary demonic beast. This thing wasn't even worth a drop of Qin Xuan's attention. Not that it would also team up with another master. This 100-meter python could match the level of a grandmaster, and this young man was just a demonic beast. What did this kid think he was? An immortal? The situation was escalating now. Miss Liang was not only trying to steal away Master Huang, but also her lover Audrey. However, now she did not really resist. After 300 years, the snake would become a deity. After 500 years, a flood dragon. After 700 years, a horned dragon. After 1,000 years, the snake would turn into a real dragon. With the help of the water spirit channel, this serpent had transformed from an ordinary python to a half-snake deity in 100+ years. The serpent even managed to utilize the cold yin energy of this water channel. Who would have thought that such a demonic beast would appear on Earth? But no matter how it was, to some, this serpent was an intelligent and strong creature. But Qin Xuan found it to be just a stupid animal. Compared to our cultivator, this serpent was indeed weak and would hardly be able to be a worthy opponent to Xuanwu. Looking at this young man, Old Man Huan might have thought that he was some reckless person who wasn't afraid of death. But it wasn't that important. Old Man Huang's first priority was Miss Lian's safety. And as long as she was safe, then that was enough. Yet even with this danger, everyone could watch Qin Xuan's fierce battle with the 100-year-old serpent that held these waters in fear. The serpent tried to maneuver and wriggle as much as it could. But although it was an aquatic animal, the water obeyed then Qin Xuan. Not only water, but also other natural elements, such as thunder and lightning. From the outside looking in, this young man was fighting a legendary beast, one would think. How could this be possible? But Qin Xuan was proving that it was simple. If the serpent had trained in great level compression, it might have defeated our hero. Yet what a pity it was. The serpent only had an average level. It didn't even have a normal cultivation method, and his brute strength was no match for Qin Xuan. Maybe if the serpent was kinder and didn't cross Qin Xuan's path, it was quite possible that he would have tamed it and written it a normal cultivation method. But in this life, the snake will have to die, but at the hands of what enemy? The serpent still continued to resist and fight to the last. Even though his death was already a foregone conclusion, he dared to show Qin Xuan this pathetic cold Tao that he had also stolen. Qin Xuan was ready to show real power to the little demon. The very real divine power of an immortal. This seal could suppress mountains, rivers, and even the sky. Let this serpent see the power of an immortal. The seal really pressed down on the snake, turning the larger size it was before. The snake's scales began to fall off, and the snake itself forgot me from the pain. Could it withstand such pressure? She wasn't in the best condition now, but surprisingly, her body held up. Qin Xuan made it clear that if the snake escaped, he would have to kill it. In the eyes of the famous masters, Qin Xuan was a true hidden dragon. This kind of strength they had never encountered. Their reaction could be quite understandable. After all, even their masters did not compare to Qin Xuan's strength. Today our hero was in a good mood and decided to still spare the huge beast, but not for free. And for 1 liter of snake blood, and besides Monster was okay with it, it was a bargain for him. Now Qin Xuan had to deal with these people who dared to push his boat away. Miss Lian had to apologize to the immortal, because they didn't even know that this boat belonged to him. She could only hope that the master wasn't angry with her. All right, then so be it. We'll forgive it. All they needed was to give some container filled with water. 1 liter of Qin Xuan's blood was enough. This was Qin Xuan's catch today. Went to cultivate, and now he also fought with an animal and won. The snake was constantly twitching and preventing Qin Xuan from drawing blood properly. He had to hit it. The young man realized that the snake wasn't easy to cultivate, but he needed to stop crying. After all, he owed Qin Xuan. In addition, Xuan decided to compensate the snake by curing him after his wound. This could be said to be his thanks for taking away the water spirit's power. Qin Xuan was very happy that the serpent liked it. Perhaps one day he would also ascend to the heavens in the form of a dragon. Even for a demonic beast, this was a rare kind of cultivation. Now the serpent could leave but obey Qin Xuan's request and no longer hunt humans. Since these guys had driven Qin Xuan's boat away, they didn't mind giving him a lift to the Lingai. Qin Xuan didn't reach the breakthrough this time, but he could cure the wound that Hou Yu was suffering from. Brother had found a solution in the evergreen formula, and the python blood would help it. Snake blood was far more valuable than any century-old ginseng. In addition, the snake had fallen into Qin Xuan's hands just in time. Quite quickly, before evening had even set in, the vessel Stella Solaris arrived at the Linhai Pier. There, Master Qin was already waiting for the entire Mo retinue and Madame Yin Ling as well. His return was greatly welcomed, but the madam was pondering over Qin Xuan's level. Master Huang could believe that the young man was a great grandmaster, but definitely not an immortal. That would be impossible. There's probably only one such in China. A true immortal is an unimaginable phenomenon. It was clear to such an old master that in the eyes of an immortal, ordinary people were the same as small bugs. But this young man. What was the difference between an immortal and Qin Xuan? Huang didn't see any difference, although he didn't dare to admit it out loud. Qin Xuan had already called his sister, who he was very worried about. Her voice was very strange, which gave him even more reason to worry. The girl was at the water pavilion, but promised to be back soon. There she continued to search for a way to heal her meridians. Suyun was also with her, hoping that perhaps this shamaness would help them in some way. But from the look in his eyes, and from Ho Yu's own well-being, it was clear that the methodology wasn't really working. It seems the 300-year-old ginseng wasn't enough to pay for such a procedure. It was too complicated. This ginseng was very rare, and it wasn't enough to cure Ho Yu. The He family had been searching for it for several years, and had only managed to get a couple of specimens. This was supposed to be enough to enter the medicine god hall. The elder was too greedy. Or maybe she just couldn't save the sick in the medicine god hall. Perhaps it would be better for her to go into business, even though it would be good for her to become a rich person in China. But it seems these words hurt the elder's honor. She got very angry. The elder was a grand master whose inner strength reached the astral realm. She was known with her healing skills, but not for her strength. And yet this skill made up for the strength. Master He no longer knew what it would take for the medicine god hall to save his disciple. It turns out the woman needed one thing, the star cauldron of the He family. The price was too high, after all. This was a He family treasure that had been passed down from generation to generation. There were rumors that it was obtained from the Qin immortal dynasty. The old woman offered to just borrow the cauldron, and then promised to pay it back after only 3 years. No one in the He family knew the miraculous benefits of the moon star. To them, it was just an exhibit. Therefore, the old woman hoped that she wouldn't be refused to exchange the trinket for a promising martial practitioner. Master had to agree. Well, the He family is really smart. In that case, the old woman decided to start right away and help with the problem. Sis was still feeling very unwell. But could the old woman help her even at this price? The treatment was also very easy, because what the old woman did was painful. Apparently things were not going well, as the shamaness was quite nervous, but still continued to act according to the plan, and after some passes with her hands gave the girl a pill. But that didn't make it any easier. What the old woman was doing was painful. Even my friend and the master began to realize that something was going wrong, but the shaman, as if nothing had happened, told them not to worry, because it was just an accident. There was still some qi left in Ho Yu's body, but the shamaness decided to banish it, which would definitely harm the girl. She was about to start, but Master He hurriedly stopped her, for he didn't understand what was going on at all. In response, he heard scolding in his direction, and that it was hopeless to treat the girl. The friend was completely frightened, and the master was ready to faint from what he had said. Was there really no hope left? Qin Xuan arrived just in time, and ordered no one to touch his sister. Immediately, he heard on the phone that the girl was anxious, so he rushed over to her. If anyone dared to touch his sister, Qin Xuan would have to slaughter everyone in this room. Of course, Master He and still didn't know who Qin Xuan was, so he tried to chase him away. Suyun's reaction was not clear. She still remembered that the guy was capable of something, but she was still not sure. And yet to pass to his sister, and he could not be prevented by anyone. Little did he ask that no one should interfere here. Qin Xuan snuck over to the shamaness rather quickly. She basically didn't care about how he got here. But she demanded that Qin Xuan not interfere and leave her alone. Yes, only she should have shut up praying that Ho Yu would stay alright. Otherwise, no matter who the old woman was or where she came from, Qin Xuan will slaughter her and all her descendants. But now she will meet her death. Despite the fact that this shamaness had the nerve to call herself a grand master, her resistance power was poor and she couldn't even defend herself. So she slammed into the wall with such force that she left cracks in it. After the old woman stopped her effect on Ho Yu, the girl coughed loudly, thus spitting out the black liquid from herself. She was still alive and conscious. That was already a good thing. But Qin Xuan should have hurried to make sure she didn't get worse. In consequence, Zhuan exerted his own strength so that Ho Yu finally came to her senses and her breathing normalized. To Master He and Su Yun's surprise, Ho Yu finally came to her senses. No more drops of sweat dripped down on her, and she wasn't breathing raggedly. It was clear that Qin Xuan was much more useful than some old woman who only wanted to divvy up artifacts, thus bringing pain to the girl. These people had brought so much pain to Ho Yu, instead of just waiting for Qin Xuan as he had requested. Just 1 month, but now her cultivation base was almost destroyed. Qin Xuan couldn't even figure out if she would manage to survive or not. But he would do his best to keep the girl breathing. Still, the shamaness had survived despite her advanced age, and she was also very angry at the young boy's behavior. But Qin Xuan continued to treat his sister as if nothing happened. After all, this was the most important goal. Granny was still grumbling, as she found Qin Xuan inexperienced in medicine, and even thought that he would kill the girl because he showed a low level of skill. What an idiot. In any case, Granny felt she had to warn Mr. Hibaichen about this. If he allowed Qin Xuan to treat her, she would die. Granny's arguments had worked. Now Mr. He was ordering the young man to stop. And if anything happened to Ho Yu, that boy would pay for it. Before her uncle knitted into a fight, Su Yun stopped him as she realized that Qin Xuan was capable of curing her sister. Did Uncle He really think he could stop Qin Xuan? That woman from the Medicine God Hall almost killed Ho Yu. Su Yun herself didn't know how Qin Xuan would be able to cure her, but she still believed in him. The guy really loved his sister and was willing to give his life for her. If Mr. He took a better look, he could see that the girl's condition had greatly improved, which meant that Qin Xuan knew what he was doing. Su Yun and He Baichun were not cultivators, but they could see that the girl's body had become less shaky than before. The young man could be trusted. This arrangement did not suit the old woman, and yet she continued to insist on her thought that Qin Xuan would kill Ho Yu. And yet even if that happens, the old woman won't rescue the girl. What a sly old woman. If she leaves, no matter the outcome, the Medicine God Hall will hand over all responsibility to Qin Xuan and the He family. Besides, they would no longer be able to bring back the 300-year-old ginseng to use on Ho Yu. That old woman had screwed up and was now trying to escape. Did she really think that Qin Xuan would let her leave? That worthless old woman has made a mess of things and almost killed Ho Yu, and now she wants to get out of here? She had to answer for what she did to the girl, and now no one would be able to leave the water pavilion. Su Yun still couldn't fully understand the whole situation after all. This woman was from the Medicine God Hall. She was an elder here, so she knew what she was doing. But it seems Qin Xuan didn't seem to think it meant anything. After all, to him, this was just some Medicine God Hall. But this place had a high reputation in China. Even the He and Su families couldn't afford to make a mess here. Besides, this old lady was a Grand Master expert, and it seems that people have completely forgotten. Had this world evolved so much that the Hall of the God of Medicine was no longer honored by people? The old woman remarked. New times, can't be helped. This world has definitely changed. Even a shaggy-haired boy dared to insult a prestigious medic. Now the old woman wanted to see how Qin Xuan would make her stay here. Meanwhile, the other side of the Hall of the God of Medicine, inaccessible to the common people. But at one point, the men had to stop enjoying the company of women of easy virtue, as an older woman was calling them. The men immediately rushed to her and noticed that she was injured. Usually there were rarely any accidents here, so the other workers were very surprised by the new event. The people from Linhai were indeed brave, and this kid didn't let the old woman leave the premises at all. He wanted the poor old woman to stay here. The men realized what the matter was, so they asked the elder not to worry and let her punish the insolent man. So what was Qin Xuan trying to do? Although he was the son of Shen Xingshu, but his father only had influence in Jiangnan, and it was incomparable to the authority of the Medicine God Hall. Stupid boy insulted the wrong person. Now he's getting revenge for it. Revenge for being stronger and right. His arrogance would be the death of him, so he was warned not to blame them for this prank. Things were bad. Su Yun asked Mr. He for help, but there was nothing he could do. He said, let Qin Xuan blame himself for not being able to stand up to them. Approximately 5 inner strength masters and 1 grand master. Without proper strength, there was no way Qin Xuan could block all of their attacks. But what saved him was that he had that power. He was 100 times stronger than those scoundrels and deceivers. They were like annoying flies that wouldn't let him do his job. Granny was a bit taken aback. She had expected her men to immediately deal with this rascal. But she was also strong in her own right. But her strength was no good against Qin Xuan. At his feet, the people who dared to call themselves masters were already unconscious, if alive at all. The jade palm was beautiful in all its glory, its effectiveness as good as their attacks, and it was also quite low in energy cost. Having dealt with the masters, Now it was Granny's turn. She was so curious to know how Qin Xuan would make her stay here. But more than that, there was a special bonus for this old woman. Qin Xuan would not only make her stay here, but she would also kneel before him. A war broke out between the masters. Granny, of course, wasn't going to give in to the young man who had sassed her, even if she realized she was wrong. And yet, she found Qin Xuan to be quite a serious opponent because he was not even 20 years old, and he had already reached the realm of a Grand Master. Even after realizing his strength, she continued to fight. Qin Xuan suppressed the old woman's strikes with just one hand, thus leading people into confusion from who he was. It turns out that Qin Xuan really did know how to fight, which meant that he could very well find a way to cure Hou Yu. The medicine god Evil Elder was beaten up. If Qin Xuan continued to beat her up, she would become the enemy of all of China as the old woman had promised. In addition, she promised that if Qin Xuan really killed her, she would never leave this place, but would die right here. The old woman had to say something because her situation was not good. Su Yun was also of this opinion. After all, if he really killed this woman, he would be haunted for the rest of his life, and he would become an enemy of the Medicine God Hall. There were 7 elders in this hall, each of them being a grand martial artist. Auntie thought that the young man wouldn't be able to fight against all of them at the same time. But despite these words, he still made his decision. Qin Xuan decided to kill the old woman who was asking for her own death by trying to threaten her. It was obvious that the guy wasn't afraid of death the more he wondered what he was. The old woman heard that old Mo had found a young master. If he was a great grandmaster, he would still fall when faced with the full power of the Medicine God Hall. Could it be that someone was supporting him? She finally realized that if she did nothing, she would surely die at the hands of the young man. So she gave up and asked for forgiveness and promised to give him everything she had. The shamaness had a few medicinal items, also very precious, and now they could belong to Qin Xuan. The insects dared to look up into the sky. Did this old woman really think that she was untouchable? In Qin Xuan's eyes, she was just dust. She originally wanted to kill Qin Xuan and also harmed Hou Yu. Destroying this hall wouldn't make up for any of her mistakes. Hou Yu tried to dissuade her brother from killing her, but he ordered her to stay where she was and not interfere. However, she didn't have the strength to do anything against it. The Hall of Medicine God had to get what he deserved and his head had to die. However, that was what happened. The elder was killed. No matter how hard she tried to bribe or threaten Qin Xuan, it was too late. Her arrogance had ruined her. He was well aware that he would be wanted afterwards, and the He and Su family would not be able to withstand the onslaught. Uncle didn't know what to do now, and yet now our hero could safely heal his sister. Hardly anyone would interfere with him. While he was treating Sis, he ordered these two to get away, or else he threatened to kill Su Yun and Mr. He. At this moment, there had already been progress in the treatment. Qin Xuan had managed to restore the vitality of Hou Yu's body. So for now, she could lie down and rest. And in the meantime, Qin Xuan promised to deal with the others. The girl didn't need to worry about anything since her brother would protect her. The 7 remaining masters still hadn't thought of running away and had been here the entire time. But when Qin Xuan returned to them, they begged for mercy. Which of course it won't be. Everyone was going to get what they deserved today. Such was the retribution. What they saw shocked Hou Yu's family members. The room was filled with the screams and anguish of the perpetrators, and these two couldn't say a word, whether it was objection or fear. Their emotions could be seen on their faces. Noticing that they had not yet left this place, Qin Xuan already ordered them in a stricter voice to leave if it was not clear to them originally, or else they would have to repeat the fate of these monks. But before leaving, Su Yun's mind froze with questions. What was the young man going to do next? The answer was simple. He would continue to treat Hou Yu. She still had a lot of things to treat. This was just the beginning. There was nothing left for them to do but to obediently walk out. But both of them were confused. This was the first time He had seen this young man. Su Yun had to explain who he even was. Even after realizing the former power of his parents and the Qin family, Qin Xuan was much more terrifying than them. It seemed like it couldn't be possible. After all, the entire family had been exiled and killed, and this guy was so mature. There were rumors that the younger generation of the Qin family would kill the elder of the Medicine God Hall. The Qin family was strong, but it was only a notch above the Su and He families. It was one of the major families in China. Its status remained somewhat special, that's all. But what did Uncle He plan to do if Qin Xuan still managed to cure Hou Yu's meridians? This question caught him off guard. And yet he firmly decided to himself that he would not say anything. Even if people asked him, he would never reveal what had happened. The death of an elder was enough to cause a stir all over China. How many Grand Masters are there in China? Every Grand Master and Master was in the spotlight. The elder of the Medicine God Hall had a special position. It was too late to play dumb. The boys were already knitted into this disaster. The fury of the 6 remaining elders would be enough to wipe out any family. You can't hide for long. You have to be realistic. At best, you can hide for a few months, at worst one. Relations among the elders are not the best. They were constantly competing with each other. The news could go on for quite a while, because the guy killed all the witnesses. The elders won't raise a panic unless they suspect something. Sooner or later, the elders would still strike. And while there was still time, the Su and He families had to prepare for it. It wasn't worth thinking about it too much. The Su family had nothing to do with it. But the He family was unlikely to be able to avoid it. Mr. He promised that he would not pull the Su family to the bottom. But even with everyone thinking like this, Qin Xuan was a true disaster. After being in this hospital all the time, Yu only now dared to find out what had happened? Oh yeah, turns out the girl just almost got killed. That's what happened. But why didn't she wait for Qin Xuan? The key energy was about to destroy Yu. It turned out that Qin Xuan had also saved her. But she still didn't understand. When did her brother learn medical skills? The question would be hard to turn away from. He had to tell a dubious story and lie about meeting an old man when he was a kid. But his sister is already very good. When he lied, he always moved his eyebrows unintentionally, a habit he had as a child, but has not yet eradicated. Nothing from his sister. You can't hide it. For thousands of years, no one had noticed the Azure Emperor's peculiarity. Yu had seen him for less than 2 years, but she had already found such vulnerability. Eh? But the jokes had gone sideways. Qin Xuan had killed the elder after all. How could he even kill anyone? Did he realize the disaster he had caused? Qin Xuan still replied just as arrogantly that these people were nothing to him, and Sis shouldn't have thought so much about it. And after all, even Mother, being a powerful person once upon a time, didn't dare to ignore the Medicine God Hall. Brother should have been realistic. He stood up against the Grand Masters of the Hall and now thought that they were nothing to him. But recalling the pictures of the battle, it was really like this. Qin Xuan had killed the elder and her underlings without even blinking an eye, and they were so weak and insignificant against him. Before this news spread everywhere, Qin Xuan planned to visit the Medicine God Hall again and wipe them out. Besides, if they wanted revenge, he would do it in a heartbeat. Just go and destroy everything. There was nothing to worry about. What the hell is he talking about? In the whole of China, no one allowed themselves to talk like this. Did Qin Xuan think he was on par with a Grand Master? Maybe an immortal? There was no point in guessing. After all, what's done is done. Nothing can be undone now. Later on, Yu will realize some things and realize that his brother was right after all. Even if Qin Xuan tried to explain some things, she still wouldn't believe him. The girl didn't recognize Qin Xuan at all, and doubted whether it was him at all, what had happened to him. The conversation was difficult. Even an immortal like Qin Xuan found it difficult, so he hurriedly continued to treat Yu. The next stage of treatment was a bath mixed with snake venom. The girl saw that Qin Xuan had put some slurry in there, and now he was asking her to get in there. It was making her feel disgusted. Nurse needed to take off her clothes as soon as possible so Qin Xuan could continue his treatment. He looked pretty convincing, but that didn't make it any easier. Yu was very shy, although he understood very well that it was really necessary. But did he understand his sister's feelings at this moment? Such a picture was created. A shy girl who was afraid to undress for treatment to enter the bathtub. And Qin Xuan completely didn't care about anything. He didn't care about anything at all. If this guy was killing so easily, then of course he didn't care. After tens of thousands of years, he had lost his understanding of human boundaries. The bloodbath was ready. But if his sister didn't get into it, Qin Xuan wouldn't be able to continue the treatment. Using the power of evergreen qi and acupuncture technique together with its inner strength, meridian restoration will not be a problem. Just why was the sick woman herself stalling like this? Qin Xuan couldn't understand it. Because he was an impatient emperor who had lived for entire millennia. Of course, he didn't care at all about the girl's naked body. But Yu was just an ordinary shy girl. I had to continue my treatment after all, because Qin Xuan saw a really shy girl in the mind of a normal man. Qin Xuan stared at her the whole time, and couldn't even look away, So in order for Ho Yu to undress normally, he had to shout. At this moment, our hero suddenly realized that he was just an ordinary teenager, not an emperor. After millennia, Qin Xuan finally thought about the relationship between a man and a woman. It had certainly been a long time since the emperor had been embarrassed. But he couldn't stand aside either. The girl asked for help. How could the shy emperor help her? You couldn't stare for so long. Ho Yu still couldn't walk. So Qin Xuan had to carry her to the bathroom. Could it be that he, a great cultivator who had gone through so many adventures, was still being influenced by the naked sight of Ho Yu? Qin Xuan had to breathe deeply to not give away his excitement. Finally gathering all his will into a fist, making a stony face, he managed to take control of himself. On the other hand, Ho Yu still continued to be embarrassed even though it was just a treatment. Everything was going more or less normally. In that time, even the bathtub hadn't had time to cool down yet. Now she was to lie flat and not move, and it was important to concentrate. It was a very exciting moment for Ho Yu, who would have thought that her big brother would treat her the same. And most importantly, he was excellent at it. He had an excellent knowledge of acupuncture techniques and also understood when and what elements were needed. It was exciting for him too to do all these procedures, as it was a first experience for him. But now he noticed that what he had provided was not enough. Therefore, an element of luck had to be added. It should have been enough to recover almost the entire body. Qin Xuan had once inherited this technique from a medical sect quite by accident. Right now, he could use 1/10,000th of a fraction of the full effect. But even that was enough to restore Ho Yu's meridians. Su Yun and He still continued to wait under the doors, and didn't even think of leaving. But suddenly, Shinza came running in, almost searching all over the city for her sister. Learning that her sister was still being treated gave her hope that the squalor of medicine would really help her. But Su Yun had to admit that it wasn't the shamans who were treating her right now, but Qin Xuan. You'd think these people would be out of their minds to give their loved one to this teenager? Before, they would have never let this guy near Ho Yu, but now they even put her life in his hands. But it would seem, what claim could they have against him? These people could not even oppose him, not to speak against him. Shinzi was furious and very displeased, but to prevent this little girl from embarrassing herself, Ho Yu stopped her. It would seem that uncle had lost his mind. Qin Xuan was just an ordinary fool who pretended to be a big fish. After all, he didn't even have the qualifications of a doctor. If something happened to her sister, she would never forgive anyone for it. After a few minutes, Qin Xuan still came out to Shinzi's shouts and looked at her in bewilderment. She started accusing Qin Xuan of everything like she had escaped from a mental hospital. Anything at all. She also started threatening even though Su Yun calmed her down. Before listening to more tantrums, Qin Xuan hurriedly said that Ho Yu was fine and sleeping. Over the next 3 days, he would restore her inner strength. There was no need to worry. Ho Yu needed calm. Her meridians had just recovered, and she was weak right now. It was best not to disturb Ho Yu, but if sister was so worried, she could quietly go and watch her. The girl was really fine. She was alive and well, but asleep. You could feel that her meridians were really fine now. Although the feeling was faint, but one could still feel her qi. Qi had indeed returned to her meridians. Ho Yu was already healthy. An injury that even an elder couldn't cure. Qin Xuan had cured her. What kind of secrets was he keeping? After using the life and death needle technique and fighting with an elder. Even Qin Xuan, the Azure Emperor, had limited cultivation levels. The condensation center of his qi was still weak, and these events had pushed his body to the limit. Even seeing what the guy was cultivating, Shinza still dared to distract him, after all. Curiosity came first. Even knowing that the guy had really cured Ho Yu, she still didn't believe him. No matter what Qin Xuan tried to do, this maiden had always found something to reproach him for. Now she was blaming him for not doing it sooner and waiting so long. He might have deceived the others, but he wouldn't fool Shinzi. But she seemed to have completely forgotten that Qin Xuan didn't need her trust. And why was he so angry with her, even after he had cured Ho Yu? Ho Yu's injury wasn't that important anymore. What was more important was that her meridians had been restored, and she would be able to become a Grand Master. A little later, Qin Xuan would restore her meridians. Then the road to Grand Master would open up for her. Wasn't that her dream? Shinzi should have been happy for her like a sister. Were medical skills so important? Despite all the good done to her and her sister, Shinzi still didn't trust Qin Xuan and wanted proof. She hoped that the guy wasn't lying to her. Meanwhile, on the Lingai Pier, The important bigwigs were discussing that Zhou Guqin had paid a lot of money to hire their uncle master. To think how the master had agreed to this. But still, it wasn't their fault that they couldn't handle Master Qin. The original plan was to just teach Qin Xuan, but he turned out to be stronger than them. This young man had even defeated Chen Fuyun. Even if they teamed up, it was unlikely that they would be able to defeat Qin Xuan. It was hard to imagine that a 20-year-old guy had reached the Grand Master level. It was still hard to believe that such guys even existed, especially Linhei. This dragon was really good at hiding his abilities. Finally, the ship arrived, where the disciples were waiting for one of the 8 Haiken masters, the Qinling Faces. In accordance with their status, disciples Han Feng and Chang Hu greeted Master Liu Yu. Before his arrival, Liu Qin had discussed the two of them with their master, and he was extremely surprised by Lin Gei's 2 disciples. They were certainly fine with Liu Qin passing on some of his knowledge to them. This time, Liu Qing had come here to see Master Qin, so he wanted to know where he was now. After the incident on the ship, he went into hiding, and now his whereabouts were unknown to many people. But in any case, Liu Qin was in no hurry, as he had not been to China for a long time, so he wanted to see what this wonderful country had to offer. The old man was extremely curious if his old friends would recognize that he had come here again. Grand Master turned out to be a frost flood dragon, and he seemed to be demonstrating astral qi. Uncle Liu's strength was impressive. Master Qin, although he was a talent of his generation, but in front of a true master, he didn't stand a chance. Finally, after all the adventures that had happened, Qin Xuan could rest at his place on the Moon Sea Pearl. But Su Yun decided to visit him. She didn't just walk in, she came to ask a favor from our hero. I wonder how she planned to pay for this. Did Su Yun really want to bargain with him? Qin Xuan's qi would soon be transformed by the Azure Emperor technique. He would be able to either elevate anyone he wanted, making them immortal, or destroy them without leaving a trace. Even if one were to take the entire fortune of the Su family, would it be comparable to Qin Xuan's personal technique? But the guy didn't have to worry about it. Su Yun didn't plan to humiliate herself, after all. She had prepared herself quite well when she decided to ask for this favor. Still, the boy was becoming more and more interested in the matter. In return, the girl could offer him information about his mother's company. Of course, such information was worth its weight in gold to him. He wanted to hear more about it as soon as possible. Su Yun chose the right tactic, as she knew beforehand that he would definitely be interested in this. Just recently, his mother's company had encountered some difficulties. The power structure in Jiangnan was ambiguous, but Qin Xuan was already familiar with it. The Su family, Hai family, and of course Song. Did these 3 great families really want to cause trouble for her? Still, Qin Xuan's mother could rightfully be called a legendary businesswoman. People of her level were still beyond the reach of the great families. Su Yun hurriedly made up for the awkward pause. After all, she had not downplayed Qin Xuan's mother's capabilities in the slightest. But he understood all of that already, so he asked to get closer to the point. Although the great families are quite powerful in Jiangnan, but these aristocrats were rarely shown in public. In addition to the 3 families, there were 2 other leaders in Jiangnan. Qin Xuan was also aware of. Zhang Weilong, the head of the underground syndicate, and Chu Yunhao, a major financial shark with a dubious past. Many different underground establishments were quietly operating in Jiangnan, all with their permission. They were the ones who ran this city. And on the other side, a financial consultant with his own intelligence network. All the illegal activities of any company in Jiangnan were their doing. In Qin Xuan's past life, there was a rumor that at the wave of Chu Yunhao's hand, most bosses of large corporations were eager to do his bidding. Unlike the aristocratic families, the 2 of them were just ordinary people, but they had managed to become legends in Jiangnan. These 2 were actually working for the Chen family, and these big shots could turn Jiangnan upside down. They were actually just lackeys of the Chen family. It appeared that Zhang Weilong and Chu Yunhao were causing trouble for Qin Xuan's mom. Generally, Su Yun didn't understand the whole situation. But before she left her home, she had heard a rumor that the company under Chu Yunhao's leadership was doing something. There was some sort of connection between them, but Xuan's mother had finally canceled the deal. Apparently, 4 out of 5 companies would commit a crime to do business with Xuan's mom's company. When some companies developed too fast, there were bound to be people who were driven by greed. Lack of funds and weak foundations made it difficult to fight other companies in times of crisis. Quite possibly because of this, the mom's company has been besieged. Leveling the damage will take months, if not a year. That meant money was needed to help this company recover. At least 100 million was needed as a buffer cushion to fight this. To begin with, their goal was only to issue a warning, not to destroy the company. There was no need to go to Jiangnan now. Enemies from his past life, those who had humiliated his parents. Soon, Qin Xuan would hunt them down and pay them back in full. So, Su Yun had already told Qin Xuan this news and helped him with the countermeasures. For Su Yun, it was first and foremost important for Qin Xuan to continue treating Hou Yu. As for the money, the He family would help Qin Xuan get the 100 million to survive the crisis. As a result, Chu Yunhao's dogs wouldn't dare to think of going against the Qin family. Besides, the three great families of Jiangnan still had some influence. But Qin Xuan refused such a generous offer. He gave Su Yun a check of 300 million and asked him to put it in Qin Changqi's name and invest it in his mother's company. Qin Xuan's mom had to struggle for 3 years to create her own empire. And this guy just gave Su Yun 300 million as if it was nothing to him. But where this money came from was none of this woman's business. Now Qin Xuan wanted to know why this auntie had come to him, and what did she truly want from him. It was embarrassing to admit it or even talk about it, but Su Yun had no one else to turn to. Su Yun was here because she ran away from her home. More specifically, she ran away from a marriage of convenience. What was this woman even thinking, running away from the wedding? Daughters from aristocratic families were too capricious and soulless in Qin Xuan's opinion. Did she now really want Qin Xuan to protect her from her own family? And about the continuation, did she have the prevention of this marriage? When her uncle returned to the family, he would definitely find out about Su Yun. But still, why did she go to Qin Xuan for help? Would they send someone from the Su family to bring her back? Maybe they'll send a Grand Master or several at once. Did Qin Xuan really think that Grand Masters appeared as often as Chinese cabbages in the beds? There were only 3 of them in the Su family. And what kind of Grand Master would go to bring back a weak girl? Even someone at the level of inner strength, which was already an achievement, would be too much. So the great Su family's young lady's relationship with her relatives wasn't as good as one would expect. No one would send an expert after Su Yun, but it still didn't rule out that a Grand Master might still show up. Su Yun wasn't sure, but there was a chance that the Song family would send a Grand Master here. It was an interesting situation, so Su Yun's fiancé was from the Song family, I see. Only the word fiancé had already made the girl angry. What kind of nonsense was Qin Xuan saying? Who could dare to be Su Yun's man, and the Song family's man was not worthy of it at all? He was a disgusting piece of shit. What did Su Yun do to deserve this? That noisy woman. She was one noisy woman. If she needed anything, she could call Qin Xuan. He would do her a favor. Now he was asking her to leave him alone. Qin Xuan is a bloody kid. That old famous hottie in Jiangnan knocked on his door. She had tons of men chasing after her, and this little guy kicked her out the door. She didn't even pay attention to those men, they were like flies to her. And she'll deal with that bastard later and tell his mother everything. But it was time to go back to school. The days out of school flew by as if they had never happened. Qin Xuan still had the reputation of a star in the school, and the rumors about him never stopped. The old friends were happy to finally meet each other. Xiao Wu must have missed Qin Xuan. But it wasn't just her who had to admit it, but also his favorite friend Meng Day, who had been eagerly awaiting his arrival here. Meng Day had already thought that Qin Xuan had actually disappeared somewhere or something, but he was just busy. In addition, there was new news at school. Lu Yunfang had just recently transferred to another school. Now no one would bother Xiao Wu and take her away from Qin Xuan. The girl was completely embarrassed at the words she said, though she tried not to give it away. But you could see it in her rosy cheeks. And Mina Day had to somehow extricate himself from this situation, which he himself had created. That same night, a luxurious car that belonged to Yin Ling arrived at the school. She still waited for Qin Xuan on the way out, but he was with Xiao Wu, which made the girl somewhat jealous, though she tried not to show it. The guys behind continued to gossip. No one could believe that such a beautiful and rich girl knew Qin Xuan. This guy was definitely something with something. It seemed like he seemed to be dating Xiao Wu. But who was this goddess then another girl of his? Totally lost his shame. Yinling in turn was very worried that she had disturbed Qin Xuan so suddenly. She wanted to invite him to a fancy banquet in Lingshuili, and thought that it might interest Mr. Qin. He was really interested in it. He wanted to know more details. It was like a relief to the girl, for she would hate to see him angry. But it seems that he was quite loyal to Yinling and would hardly allow himself to be rude to her. Back to the banquet, This banquet was where all the influential people of the Lingshui Li family were going to gather. In addition, a very important person was going to appear there. The main purpose of this banquet was to welcome this VIP. Qin Xuan saw many important people being talked about accurately, similarly distinguished personages. Those who fit Mo Qinglian's criteria. They were definitely no ordinary people, at least not by Linhai's standards. This VIP customer's last name was Xiao. Was Yinling really talking about Xiao Ruijun? It was Xiao Wu's father. Mr. Qin's knowledge was very impressive to Yinling. He was quite knowledgeable about powerful people. In his past life, he knew Xiao Ruijun's name as the third young master of the Xiao family. The man that left his wife and even let his Xiao Wu join the Buddhist temple. Lord of the South, the next in the bloodline to take the place of the Xiao family's patriarchy. His ambition knew no bounds, however. From his own experience, Qin Xuan could tell that there were even more ambitious people than him. In that case, Qin Xuan would be happy to attend this event. The festivities had already begun at the mansion, and the guests were beginning to arrive. There was a light atmosphere of festivity and socializing, with everyone trying to outshine each other in their outfits. The guests were extremely surprised to see that the Mo family had arrived after all. Qin Xuan supported his companion by the hand like a true gentleman, showing his status and manners. Yinling, in turn, was happy to go out with such a companion. Liu Yunfang, in turn, did not expect to see Qin Xuan, who had too much in his life in the past few days. At this moment, he was racked with envy and incomprehension as to how this person was sneaking into such events. Liu Yunfang had been quite relaxed before, but in an instant, his mood changed to one of fright, which did not go unnoticed by his friends. Amidst all this formal bustle, Qin Xuan found a place for himself near the wall with a glass of wine. He had no one to talk to or about here. He was like an outside observer, although he had once been at the pinnacle of such festivities. But it wouldn't be long before this era would return. Yinling felt like a fish in water in such places, but still glanced behind Qin Xuan, who was not at all interested in what was happening. But here she is, who will lighten his boredom, untouched by this dirty, rotten world, Princess Xiao Wu. People had a lot of admiration for her, even though she was an illegitimate child. But if one obtained her favor, with her father's support, one could soar to the heavens in the blink of an eye. She found her company very quickly and joined Qin Xuan, who seemed to have woken up from her appearance. Her appearance was unexpected, but it was only natural for her. If her father was here, she would come here too. Who the hell is this kid? And what's his relationship with Xiao Wu anyway? These questions were now pestering not only the school, but also tonight's holiday party. Noticing this, Yinling actually suggested that someone like Xiao Wu was quite possibly more suited to be with Qin Xuan. What was she even thinking after all? She was someone who couldn't even reach the level of inner strength, so how could she even stand behind Qin Xuan? Even feeling something like this, Yinling still kept her brand and did not seek to show her jealousy. It turns out that Xiao Wu was indeed from the Xiao family. Was she still the one Qin Xuan knew? There was only one Xiao Wu, and of course, it was her. And yet at such festivities she was a rare guest. Was it really her father who was the cause? In fact, she showed up here because karma told her to. Xiao Ruijun's karma? Xiao Wu was very naive. If she cultivated techniques, it could be her obstacle in the future for several years. In that case, when she got rid of this flaw, she would be able to comprehend enlightenment much sooner. But Qin Xuan suspected that it would be too difficult to overcome this obstacle. And here in fact is the culprit himself with his entourage, Master Han Lao. The daughter's reaction was ambiguous, as if she was afraid of him, but also respected him at the same time. And Qin Xuan saw him for the first time in this life. The party was just starting. The situation in the hall between father and daughter was ambiguous. But our hero still didn't understand how karma could affect her like that. He had always liked that Xiao Wu had diligently followed the Buddha's teachings so far. What about karma? What was wrong with it? Qin Xuan hoped to help his girlfriend in some way with this gesture, but she stopped trembling anyway. But meeting her father was simply inevitable. It was her he wanted to talk to first. Xiao Wu had expected to see her father here and perhaps even talk to him, but this meeting was extremely exciting for her. It was even difficult to dignify him with her attention. And not because she held her grudge strongly, but if only because she was afraid. The only support for her right now was Qin Xuan. Just as she had once supported him in the past, he tried to be by her side and as if to comfort her with his presence, with his touch of his hand. They had invented a special bond between them that passed through time. This bond had a special calming effect on the girl. Now she was ready to face her father. It turns out that it was that famous Xiao Ruijun. Xiao Ruijun must have expected a warmer welcome, and was extremely surprised that his daughter greeted him as if she was some left-handed uncle. He was her biological father. How dare she call him by his first name? How unfortunate. But Mr. Xiao didn't find it her fault. After all, he was aware of why this attitude towards him, so he asked Han Lao to be quiet. Xiao Rujin realized that his daughter still hated him, but he was still her father after all. He didn't expect her to forgive him, but she was now his daughter. Xiao Wu belonged to him. If anyone dares to deceive her or harm her, it would directly mean that Xiao Ruijin had done so as well. If ordinary girls heard this phrase, they would probably hesitate. This Xiao Rujin was pursuing his own goals, and unfortunately, he was dealing with a girl like Xiao Wu. Xiao Wu hurriedly warned that it was all right because the fact that they met here like this was for Xiao Wu's peace of mind. The girl decided that after this day, they would have nothing in common. After all, she hadn't come here to be recognized by her father. She didn't need that. This moment was like a flashback for Xiao Zhuzhen, because his wife had once said the same thing to him when he divorced her. A silent scene hung between them. What would Xiao Ruijin do now? Would he try to keep bringing Xiao Wu back, or would he leave again like he once did? He was completely confused, but nevertheless, noticing the way his daughter was holding the hand of some boy, he had some questions for Qin Xuan. As expected, Qin Xuan gave his name, but in response, Xiao Ruijin reminded him who Xiao Wu was. Accordingly, Qin Xuan made it clear that he knew Xiao Wu and was aware of what her name was. But father put a huge emphasis on the fact that Xiao Wu is just some girl to me, but his daughter. In response to which Qin Xuan had to recall the past conversation, where Xiao Wu had refused to patronize Xiao Ruijun, and also made it clear that she no longer wanted to have any dealings with him. It would seem that this youngster was completely crazy. Didn't he realize who he was talking to? This guy definitely had the balls to talk to Xiao Zhuozhen himself like that. This is the Mo family's young generation. Even the patriarch himself wouldn't dare to speak in such a manner as the young man with the surname Qin did. No one knew the aristocratic family with the surname Qin in Linhai. This guy still dared to hold Xiao Wu's hand in front of her father. It was as if it didn't mean anything. Xiao Ruijin didn't care which Qin Xuan was even from which family. In his eyes, these aristocratic families were no more than ants under his feet. If Xiao Ruijin wanted to, he would make Qin Xuan a wild stray dog, a stray and a beggar. He would roam the streets, but no one would care about him. That's how it is. The Xiao family had completely lost all their manners and prestige. And all those reckless words in front of their daughter were said. How shameless. Was this old man really trying to shame someone else? Was this all that famous Xiao Ruijin was capable of? How pathetic it looked. Han Lao was furious because his lord's honor was at stake, and nothing was more important to him than that. The young man had forgotten the vastness of heaven and earth, but Xiao Zhuzhen hurriedly stopped him. The master shouldn't have gotten involved in this conflict. Xiao Zhuzhen didn't know who Qin Xuan was, or if there was someone more influential behind him. But in any case, he suggested that he would only be able to say such things to him when he became equal to him in official status. And when Qin Xuan was equal to Xiao Zhuzhen, he would be worthy of standing next to Xiao Wu. Whatever Qin Xuan said, it would be completely unimportant to Mr. Xiao and would not affect anything. Such underpowered conditions, Qin Xuan could barely hold back from laughing. Very soon, Xiao Zhuzhen would be able to observe this. Even the Mo family didn't dare to be so bold with Xiao Zhuzhen. The younger generation needs to be at least the head of the family just to talk to Xiao Zhuzhen, and that would require at least 10 years. Qin Xuan must have been exceeding his capabilities, Xiao thought. Sooner or later, Xiao Wu will also realize that this man is not worthy of her at all, and not good enough. No matter what her father said, Xiao Wu was very grateful to Qin Xuan, for he had given her a very strong support. But I shouldn't have thanked her. They were friends after all. And friends don't thank each other. This evening was arranged for a reason. This time, Xiao Zhuzhen had come with an important purpose for him. Recently, Master Qin's name had become very famous, so much so that there were even legends about him. In fact, Mr. Xiao was here to meet the very same Master Qin. Hinting at Miss Mo, Xiao didn't even know if there was anyone in this hall who was kind enough to introduce him to such an esteemed Master Qin. Luckily for him, Master Qin was already here, and their meeting was quite possible. Xiao Zhuzhen would be very grateful to Miss Yin Ling if she could introduce them to each other. Meanwhile, Master Qin himself was chatting with his daughter, Yin Ling, and didn't know what would be the best thing to do in this situation at all. In principle, Yin Ling didn't mind helping Master Xiao. She just needed to know when he wanted to meet with Master Qin. The sooner the better, of course. It turns out Mr. Xiao is a lucky man. Master Qin has been here since the beginning of the banquet. This news excited not only Mr. Xiao himself, but also the people who were standing nearby. In anticipation of the long-awaited meeting, the gentlemen began to look around, as if trying to find Master Qin on their own. But was Ms. Mo really sure of that? Until this moment, old man Han Lao hadn't sensed any aura or Grand Master's breath at all. Therefore, the gentlemen weren't completely sure of Yin Ling's words. Similar, Master Qin was too proud. In ancient times, Liu Bei would stand and wait on the street outside Zhuge Liang's house, and today, Xiao Ruijin was losing his face because he was unworthy of meeting Master Qin. In order not to waste any more time or his reputation, which had already been lost slightly, Xiao Ruijin decided to personally invite Master Qin to meet. To do so, he shrieked loudly, forgetting all the rules of etiquette. I wonder what Master Qin himself has to say to that. Perhaps this Master Qin was not here at all. So why didn't he want to meet Xiao Ruijin? Had something happened to him? Xiao Ruijin personally invited Master Qin to meet him, even forgetting about his reputation. Not everyone could do that. Han Lao had actually assumed that this Master Qin was raising his profile in this way. So why was the master so concerned about him? What a nonsense. But what kind of rudeness did the old man say? How dare he think that Qin Xuan was here to raise his own importance? Was it really that important to the young man? Or was he the one who was that Master Qin? Master Qin. Quite a few people had called him that before. If this was indeed the case, then old man Han Lao would like to exchange and compare his skills with Master Qin. Before the battle began, Xiao Ruijin asked to be careful. After all, Qin Xuan was just an ordinary person. Well, Qin Xuan couldn't deny such important gentlemen such a prank, even if it was a waste of energy. Would he really want to break Qin Xuan's arm with such techniques? Master Qin had seen through his opponent. Han Lao had once heard that Master Qin of Linhai possessed the element of lightning. Looks like this guy was indeed Master Qin. But how could that be possible? Qin Xuan was proving all his abilities with the current fight. It was unlikely that anyone would be able to doubt him now. It would seem that these were legends about him. But no, this was the real truth. Such a master really existed and continues to develop further. This fight was just a friendly fight, and one could say it was just an aptitude test. But nevertheless around him, he was spraying an invisible aura that seemed like wind. The fight was truly exemplary. One could personally witness Qin Xuan's superior strength, who, in order to fight and repel attacks, used only one hand. It seemed that this kid, who was only about 80 years old at most, was indeed Master Qin. At such a young age, he had managed to reach the level of a grand master in martial arts. Even the two masters from China couldn't stand up to him. Well, was Qin Xuan now famous enough to socialize with the famous Xiao Ruijin? Maybe now they would finally believe that he was really Master Qin. Indeed, Qin Xuan kept his word like a real man. Mr. Xiao didn't even have any doubts anymore. Xiao Ruijin, although he was the third master of the Xiao family, however, from now on, no one in Linhai would dare to mess with Qin Xuan. Things will be different now. The Mo family will finally get their chance, and behind them will be a true master. Master Qin, Xiao Ruijin, from the Xiao family. That was all he was capable of. Qin Xuan did not hesitate to say these words to his face at all, for it was the pure truth, no matter how bitter it was. Qin Xuan was already about to leave with Xiao Wu. There was nothing more for them to do here. It was now clear to everyone why he, such a young boy, was so insolent towards Xiao Ruijin. Master Qin was only a young boy, but what a young boy! The strongest person in Linhai. The guests finally dispersed, so Xiao Ruijin could now discuss the past with Han Lao. The old man still didn't understand why Mr. Xiao cared about this Qin Xuan. Was he as strong as him? Still, Xiao Ruijin couldn't stop thinking about him, and wondered about Han Lao's opinion. The old man only said two words: dangerous and inscrutable. That said a lot about the personality. An 18-year-old grandmaster that could fight old Han Lao with just one palm. What an incredible talent one had to have to do that. I wonder if the two of them had met in a real fight. Would Han Lao have been able to defeat Master Qin? Without any hesitation, the old man gave the honest answer that he did not, for it would have ended in his defeat. Han Lao had practiced martial arts for over 50 years. He had been at the master level for 10 years, and meeting a teenager who wasn't even 20. Could this really be considered a complete defeat? Right now, Qin Xuan was quite young, but what would happen to him in 10 years? Would anyone be able to match him in China in the future? He Tai Sui from Jiangnan and Liu Jinwei from the north were quite famous in China. But it wouldn't be long before Qin Xuan's name would spread everywhere and overwhelm the two of them, which would shake the mountains and turn the rivers back. Although Master Qin was talented, however, if he wanted to break through to the next level, his inner strength had to increase to an incredible size. And this was not something that could be done easily. Master Qin. Even if it was him, Xiao Wu wouldn't get him so easily. At least her mother would never agree to it. What about Grandmaster status? In Ninger's eyes, he would be no different from an ordinary person. To realize this, Qin Xuan must have been a monk for more than 15 years. Perhaps it was time for Xiao Ruijin to seek her out. At Fairview Company in Jiangnan, work was in full swing. The budget was not enough. At least 100 million needed to be put into circulation. If this kind of money was not found, this company would suffer great losses in the coming days. If the chairman could sell a few plots of land on the coast, perhaps it wasn't enough, but it would help a lot. The secretary had long ago ordered about it, but at this moment, no one dared to go against Yun Hao. Many companies also obeyed Yun Hao, for he was like a prince without a crown. No one could stand up to him except the three great families of Jiangnan. What a shame. The secretary wanted to suggest to the chairman to contact Mr. Qin, but she was adamantly against it and asked me not to say anything to him. This day was very busy. People did not stop visiting Sister Shui. Something important seemed to have happened, as this man visited her rather infrequently. At the same time, the girl brought a letter from the Su family. They said that someone had decided to invest 300 million into Fairview. It was just in time and just in the nick of time. Thanks to this money, all problems could be solved. But who was the investor? And this was something no one really knew. But the Su family said that the owner of the bank card was Qin Changqing. Our heroes were already getting home, but it was a rather dark night. The roads were empty, so Yinling could afford to drive at high speed. It was a highway after all. But through the distant light, 3 people could be seen brazenly occupying the roadway. Everything happened too fast. Even as a master, Yinling didn't dare to react properly to the situation that had been created. But still she survived, thanks to the airbag. It was Master Liu Qin who had finally waited to meet Qin Xuan. The rumors about Master Qing spread very quickly. Liu Qing had already heard about him. Qin Xuan's reputation was growing faster than him. From Master Liu's companions, it wasn't hard to guess that he was the one sent by the Zhao family. A master from Haikin, Liu Qingling is one of the 8 Grand Masters of Haikin. Liu Qin was a Flood Ice Dragon. 20 years ago, this master had reached the Grand Master level and wiped out 3 families of the north. Since then, his name had become the embodiment of fear for most of the great families in China. Many people had heard of him, but not Qin Xuan. His disciples didn't even try to explain who he was. They only scoffed, saying that Qin Xuan was ignorant and very arrogant. Apparently, it was true that there were still uncut talents in the younger generation, and in China, Qin Xuan was one of them. What a pity. It was indeed a misfortune, because tonight there will be one less Grand Master in the world. How embarrassing. Well, our hero didn't mind seeing the strength of one of the Grand Masters of Haikin to see what he was capable of. Checking out the master from Haikin himself, and this guy was good and bold. But upstarts like him won't even be enough to kill. Apparently, the kid didn't know how high the sky was. Chang Hu suggested waiting until Qin Xuan himself kneeled down to beg Uncle Liu. That's when we could see if Qin Xuan would still be as bold. All the chatter is over. Now the men are getting down to business. I wonder if this fight will last less than 1 minute or more. There was no fun to be had at the soiree, so how could Qin Xuan have fun here? But no matter how strong the guy was, Yinling was still very worried about him. Could it be that Master Liu was afraid of him because he stood there like that? It was Master Liu himself in front of him. Of course Qin Xuan was scared. He was just another trash that boasted about his strength until he stood in front of his true strength. But why would Qin Xuan even bother to dodge or run away? It was enough to just dodge in time, thus leaving the opponents stunned. The old man could safely tell Qin Xuan that he was doomed, and could only blame himself for making the last wrong choice of his miserable life. Qin Xuan, no longer hesitating for a moment, launched an attack. His movements were like a whirlwind, swift and elusive. With a wave of his hand, a powerful gust of wind rushed towards Liu Qingyu. The old master raised his hand, creating a barrier of energy, but the force of the blow threw him back a few steps, not even giving him a chance to stop. How was this possible? He was just a small, inexperienced youth. But somehow, the tempering and cultivation that Liu Qing had achieved for many years was so much weaker than Qin Xuan. Even if a guy started cultivating when he was a kid, how long would it take for him to accumulate all that inner qi? What is he? The men attacked each other at the same time, but the one who was pushed away and forced to retreat was Liu Qingling. Unfortunately, there was very poor visibility at night, and the girls could watch the fight from afar. Uncle Liu was kicked away by some kid. There was definitely something wrong here. What was going on here? Was that really the best foreman in Heitzen? Shame on you. Liu Qin decided not to give up after all, and rushed over again, and surprised the young man with a new attack as well as a death threat. It seemed to the old man that Qin Xuan is in a hurry to meet the forefathers, so he decided to fulfill the wish of our hero. The 8 trigrams blood fist was known to many for its powerful attack. The students hoped that this time their teacher would still win. From Qin Xuan's side, it looked quite funny, how an infirm old man was still trying to defeat a great master. But the girls were still very worried about Qin Xuan, clearly not realizing all of his capabilities. This time he decided to use the seal he once took away from the serpent. It must be powerful. The dragon seal had the properties of breaking into many pieces, as well as fulfilling the will of its master. Its power directly depended on the strength of its owner. Therefore, Old Man Liu didn't even have time to block the attack. It hit him right in the stomach. The attack was indeed powerful, as the old man was once again thrown back some distance. It seems someone is quicker to meet their ancestors. But at an advanced age, it seems that Qin Xuan has really won. Not just anyone, but one of the most famous Grand Masters of Haiking. Yinling was already a fan of Qin Xuan, being in love with him as it was. Surprisingly, the old man didn't die. He was still conscious. But even so, Qin Xuan was once again ready to attack if need be. It seemed impossible, or it couldn't have happened at all. But the fact was in front of the faces of the students. Their uncle had lost. Liu Qin could only talk with his tongue. This time he had already sworn in front of the sky that he would kill Qin Xuan. But one could not worry Xuan would remember these words well. To think that the honor of a great master had been hurt. After all, some teenager wanted to defeat him. It was simply impossible, and the old man himself would not allow it to happen. He had a pill for that. But Xiao Wu, after all, it wasn't just a pill. It was a blood dan. Xiao Wu was concerned, and asked her to stop this grandfather before he used the blood dan. But Qin Xuan either didn't understand what the girl meant, or he didn't care as usual. Because of that, she hurriedly explained that it was an elixir that was created by an alchemist about 200 years ago. The blood of hundreds of people was used to create it. This pill transformed the life energy, increasing the strength of the person who took it. But wasn't that stupid? Wasting your life to increase your power. The blood dan acted very quickly. The old man had already started to transform and become more and more furious, wanting to quickly massacre some teenager. The energy from his body was like a restless bonfire. Qin Xuan was curious to see how it would turn out, but by doing so, he was making the girls nervous. No one could change Qin Xuan's essence as a player who was always willing to go to the bank. But this time, because of him going to the bank, the old man had to take a pill, then he refused miserably. All for the sake of Qin Xuan's death. Qin Xuan was once a disciple of a powerful master and had the opportunity to learn various styles. The style he would demonstrate now was called Heaven's Grip. All the power of heaven was gathered in his hand. So what would an infirm old man taking pills be able to answer? The old man suddenly fidgeted as if he had an epiphany. It seemed that he no longer had the desire to kill the teenager. The power of the heavens was actually a frightening force, and it was no match for a pill. But it was too late to stop, for the mechanism had already been started. What would happen to Grandmaster Liu Qing now? Compared to the power he felt, he was just a small mosquito. Surprisingly, he was still alive but very traumatized. In order not to die today, he begged for mercy from that very teenager, Qin Xuan. It was difficult to speak, but he had no other choice. Either die or beg for mercy. Uncle Liu himself, unwilling to die, asked for mercy. He asked for his miserable life, and then this Liu Qin would definitely be of use to Qin Xuan in the future. Yes, he realized that his act was unforgivable, but if Qin Xuan killed him, then Qingdao would never stop pursuing him. Even if Qin Xuan possessed such incredible strength, he would still not be able to stand up to the rest of the Grandmaster families. Allegedly, a certain Lord Qingdao was considered one of the most respectful Grandmasters, and Master Qin was very young and possessed unbridled talent. Would he kill an old man who already had one foot in the coffin? He wasn't getting any younger, so he asked for mercy. In the eyes of the world, cultivators are the true rulers. In their hands, everything could turn to ashes. However, this was only the opinion of the world. Like a frog at the bottom of a well, they could look up and wonder. How could Liu know how vast the heavens were? 8 masters, some esteemed master there? Did Liu really think Qin Xuan cared much about this? Maybe the others were also favored in front of them. But Qin Xuan only cared about his family and friends, and nothing else in this world. No one else could kill him. 7 grandmasters? They were nothing more than insects to Qin Xuan. What was the point of Liu Qing? He was too weak. How many people in this world could say something like that? He's the only one, Qin Xuan. The masters were not spared. But could Master Qin still take pity on the young disciples who were so precious in their lives? Qin Xuan had a very hard time deciding, should they live or die? And let them say for themselves, were they worthy of living? His thoughts were fast, but his stupidity was even faster. Chang Hu, knowing that he would lose, begged Master Qin to fight him. He literally jumped into the fray. Why? He wasn't stronger than the previous master, so what was his logic? If he didn't know he couldn't do anything, why bother? The first had met his own death, but the second tried to run away, abandoning his comrade in arms. But he didn't seem to understand one thing. If Qin Xuan the Azure Emperor wanted to kill him, did he really think he could escape so easily? There was no escape from certain death. Few people could escape from Qin Xuan at all. His strength was truly breathtaking. Only Master Qin could deal with 2 inner strength experts and 1 Grand Master in less than half an hour. Yingling assumed that he would want to return back to the villa, but he decided to head to Shenyang City. It was surprising that at this hour, Qin Xuan wanted to go to the city. But the puzzles were adding up, and it was clear that Qin Xuan wanted to go to the Zhou family. Meanwhile in the mansion, Zhou Gu was expecting some news from the Grand Master. Even this Master Zong was hired to deal with Qin Xuan. Was there really anything to worry about? Zhou Gu had to hire a Grand Master, but they still hadn't heard from him, which was very alarming. Even if this young man had incredible talent, it shouldn't have taken this long. The son hurriedly reassured his father. For did he think that this underdog Qin dared to escape from Master Lu? Master Lu killed his peers. He's the Frost Flood Dragon. Who hasn't heard of him? In essence, Sunny was right. How could a mere child defeat someone with such experience? Especially if that someone was someone like Liu Qinglin. It was quite late, but someone had already dared to come to the mansion. The son and his father's first thought immediately flew through that Master Lu had finally pulled it off. But their expectations were not met. The last person they expected to see had arrived, but they wanted to know all the news about him. But wouldn't it be better to see him in person? How is that possible? But what happened to Master Lu, and why is this little guy still alive? Yinling stood hand in hand with Master Qin, something she was incredibly proud of. His strength, confidence, and honor continued to fascinate the girl more and more. After the guys paid a visit to the Zhou mansion, all the servants immediately woke up and ran over to the noise. Who was it that dared to invade Zhao's territory? But okay, Qin Xuan is here. But what's Mo Yingling's business? Did the Mo family really plan to rob them of everything? Qin Xuan immediately called everyone to silence and ordered Zhao Guqing to get out of his doghouse. But he did not listen. Qin Xuan began to be attacked by his associates for how dare he treat Mr. Zhao so disrespectfully. So they decided to just teach him a lesson, and what to do. The guy had asked for it. Ignorant pig. But all these threats will turn out to be nothing more than lip service. Meanwhile in the car, Xiao Wu was cultivating as if she had detached herself from the entire outside world, and Qin Xuan had killed all of his enemies so far. But one was enough to start with to make the others think about whether or not they should continue fighting. Yinling, though she had seen Qin Xuan kill before, but it was more like a square kick. Right now, however, it was a targeted strike. What was he trying to do? The more Yinling was around him, the less she understood him. It was too noisy around, so Qin Xuan continued to kill one by one until they accepted what was happening. Finally, someone had already gotten wind of the fact that the person in front of them was the real Master Qin, but it was too late to think about it. Zhao Gu didn't even dare to show his face, which wasn't very flattering towards the guest. Qin Xuan will have to find him and kill him. But before he did so, he had to deal with the fleeing enemies who were trying to hide from him. But let everyone know, there was no hiding from Qin Xuan. Qin Xuan had destroyed everyone here. He wanted to wipe everyone to dust, completely eradicating the Zhao family. This family was left corpse by corpse, and Mr. Zhao was unable to do anything about it. If there was a Grand Master in their family, Zhao Gu thought that this wouldn't have happened. Things were very bad. They realized the full power of the enemy, and so the father decided to run away with his son. He planned to descend to the secret tunnel, and then leave. But what about their people? All their relatives were either wounded or killed. But them, were these two even able to escape? Their family had made a mess of things, and now they were paying for it with their own blood without even realizing it. In the end, Qin Xuan and Yinling advanced to the inside of the house, where they also destroyed everyone who got in their way. But before that time, Zhao Gu had already escaped. Yinling on the way out couldn't believe that they had actually, or rather Qin Xuan had wiped out everyone in the mansion. But that wasn't all. Qin Xuan suddenly created a peculiarly red lightning bolt that seemed to be blazing with fire, and then he squeezed her in his hand as hard as he could. After that, the entire Zhao family mansion went up in flames. Well, now we could go. Qin Xuan had destroyed more than 10 people, but even that wasn't enough for him. He also had to burn down the mansion. His cruelty and vindictiveness caused different emotions in the girl. The mansion was on fire. Everything else near it was on fire too. The people who were left there. It was unknown whether they would be able to escape or not, but they were walking back to their car as if nothing had happened. This time, Qin Xuan decided to drive. Perhaps he planned to catch up with the runaways. And indeed, he had caught up. They noticed it immediately as soon as they pulled out. Zhao Gu and his son had escaped the blazing mansion in time. Their entire estate was now destroyed. The Zhou family was finished. Master Qin had too much dirt in him, according to Zhao Gu, who himself had ignited a war between them. But no matter how he was, the Zhao family was truly over, and it would serve as a lesson to everyone. They shouldn't have attacked before their teeth grew. Master Qin had also managed to find out Zhou's secret route after all. The game was over. If there was nowhere else to go, Zhou Gu decided to take down Qin Xuan altogether, thus avenging his family. It was even kind of sad. Qin Xuan had expected something more interesting than such trivial solutions. Zhao Gu was stupid and really bad at cultivation. He didn't even realize that a master like Qin Xuan would simply be impossible to be hit by a machine. Rather, the machine would fly off than him. Through the pain and pressure of the machine, Chen shouted Qin Xuan's name. Zhou Gu managed to crawl out from under the car and was still alive, although in critical condition. The most important thing for him now was the condition of his child. Fortunately, he seemed to be fine, but his father didn't have time to help him get out, as he had to face Qin Xuan. Zhou Gu couldn't just leave him alone. But to be honest, Qin Xuan wanted to spare his family before this. But since Zhao Gu had decided to stay away from Qin Xuan, there was only one way out. This is death. Fortunately for Zhou Gu and his son Chen, it was quick and painless. There was a hole left in his forehead that went all the way through his head. This old man, in a fit of his greed for power, decided to attack the wrong person. What was he trying to prove? Whatever it was, he proved only that he was weak and stupid. Well, for the rest, so that his body wouldn't go to waste, Qin Xuan took a drop of blood from him. This was done for a reason. Qin Xuan was beginning to curse this bloodline, thus eradicating it. May this bloodline accept his curse. Qin Xuan slowly and leisurely began to whisper the curse text itself. There were many secrets in the cultivation world, and there were also curses that use blood to cast some spells. However, this kind of magic is too expensive. But if the spell is successful, it can instantly kill a person, even if they are as far away as the starry sky to the distant stars. Thus, the entire race will be destroyed. One of the Zhou family descendants was just having fun in a bar with some girl, but in an instant, the curse made itself known. The same curse fire that Qin Xuan had sent at him was appearing on his body. In a moment, the Zhou family's descendant was burned alive. No one knew what was the cause. He just suddenly caught fire. The same thing was happening to other Zhou natives, and no one could save them. No water would help them. Qin Xuan's cultivation base was not high enough, but it was enough to put a blood curse on the Linhai region. The target of the curse was a few people. From this moment on, the Zhou family in Linhai no longer existed and would no longer exist. Maybe Qin Xuan was cruel and vindictive, but on the other hand, if he didn't, they would have started destroying him sooner or later. Xiao Wu still didn't understand this and wondered why the entire clan. But the answer was the same, because this family wanted to kill Qin Xuan. Whoever dares to lay claim to Qin Xuan's life or his family's lives would surely be destroyed, along with his entire family. But why not let the innocents live? Xiao Wu really wanted to understand Qin Xuan's logic. Therefore, she tried to get to the bottom of it. If Zhou Gu had been killed alone, what would happen then? Qin Xuan also has a mother and other loved ones he cared for. If they didn't kill Qin Xuan, then his family members would be killed. The Zhou family could easily hire masters to threaten Qin Xuan to kill his relatives. The point here was not cruelty, but the safety of one's family. Hence, the enemy family was wiped out to the last man. This reason was quite sufficient, besides it was justified. Mom, relatives, friends, their safety was Qin Xuan's first priority. But then the question arose, if everyone in this world wanted to kill Qin Xuan and his family, what would he do then? Without any hesitation, he replied that he would kill everyone in the world. Yinling, who heard these words, suddenly stammered and couldn't continue driving. Master Qin's words made an impression not only on her, but also on Xiao Wu, although she didn't show her emotions. And yet, Yin Ling didn't want to develop this topic, even though it was rolling around in her mind. Apologizing, she decided to continue on her way. Was it really Master Qin? The family's lineage, its life and death was just a matter of thought process? This world was full of strife. Xiao Wu's friend could destroy the entire world for the sake of his family and loved ones. It was quite possible that he could have done so. The sudden silence made it clear what the girls were thinking about. Qin Xuan guessed they were really thinking about the fact that he was doing everything ruthlessly. Or Xiao Wu actually thought that he was as scary as Mo Yingling. She completely agreed with those words, because she thought that the Zhou family members might not have retaliated and killed his family members. Qin Xuan didn't know this, and yet he acted ruthlessly, wiping out an entire clan just for the sake of responsibility alone. But hadn't you heard this phrase? The heavenly Tao is merciless, everything is irrevocable. Ordinary people could only bow to the heavens, but revenge was impossible, because the heavens are too big. The world could not destroy it. When the common people faced natural disasters, they could only survive. It was not revenge for a calamity that was destined. But there was also another reason why the Zhou family was destroyed today. Qin Xuan once told Xiao Wu that he knew nothing about Shakyamuni Buddha, but he knew about divinity. From this moment in Linhai, Qin Xuan had decided to become a paradise. The emperor was regaining his former power as he planned. The next day, all the important gentlemen were discussing what had happened during the night, namely, the death of the Zhou family. The Zhou family had fought the Mo family before and even managed to overtake them, but now the Zhou family had been annihilated. Without any exaggeration, the mansion was reduced to ashes. Even the Zhou family's relatives who were far outside the country were also destroyed as if they had never existed. There was only one person who could do this sort of thing, and that was Master Qin. Furthermore, as for Master Qin, when Master saw him in the arena against Chen Fuyun, back then he was too strong. Everyone knew the relationship between the Mo family and Master Qin. This gave more topics for discussion. In addition, many people knew that Helen's master Liu Jingling had come to Linhai. But Mo Zhengdu had already managed to report that he was now dead. He died along with the entire Zhou family after failing to protect it. It would seem that how could this be possible? Master Qin Xuan was too terrifying. To kill everyone from the Zhou family and deal with a Grand Master at the same time. This is a whole other level. Old Lao Li and Yuan Yu also wanted to discuss the situation with Master Qin. Yuan Yu in turn thought it was genocide, which was taboo in China. Even a battle between different families, most people could not make such a terrible decision. But there were also good opinions, for the guy was only 20, and at such a young age to become a Grand Master was very commendable. It wasn't that he had killed the entire Zhou family. Wouldn't it be interesting to know how he even managed to kill Grand Master Liu Qinglin? Liu Qin was a very strong person, at least for 20 years. It seemed as if he had been practicing his entire life. Yuan Yu could now understand the entire situation and appreciate such a monstrous talent of Qin Xuan. At first, Liu Qingling traveled to the south, aiming to improve his reputation as a southern Grand Master. But there was also Tyson, the Three Swordsman. He defeated China, and since then China could no longer block his sword art. And now Master Qin, who was only 20 years old, had appeared. But he had managed to kill a 20-year veteran, Grand Master Jinlin. Such monsters are pure evil, for they will take control of everything they can, filling the world with their dictatorship. But what could old Li even do against this? Yuan Yu could at least inform, and Li would do his best. These people had nothing to do with them. Accordingly, Yuan Yu did not want to create a new conflict. Because of this, Yuan Yu strictly instructed him not to touch these monsters. If Yuan Yu wanted to win, he would hardly be able to save his face. And if he loses, he would lose everything. Yuan Yu was a cunning old fox after all. But his buddy didn't get far from him. For Chinese warriors like them, victory or defeat is all about saving face for the country. Lao Li must be careful. Meanwhile, Qin Xuan was in his Moon Sea Pearl mansion and was taking a snake bloodbath. He was still continuing to cultivate, but the level he had reached was not satisfactory to him, for he was still a step behind. Besides, he noticed that this mansion was too sparse. Only with the help of the python's blood could he work here to the limit of his last step before the breakthrough. The last step was usually always very difficult, and in addition, it was also the most important on the path to breakthrough. But no matter how difficult it was, Qin Xuan was not going to retreat from cultivation. But there was a positive side to this, as it seemed to Qin Xuan. This city had become completely subservient to him. He became the Lord of Linhai. But did it mean anything to him? No. This world was nothing to him. Reborn in this life, Qin Xuan felt obligated to forge himself, not be lazy, and continue on his path without looking at any obstacles. Only then could he rise to the top and be a true Azure Emperor.